Chapter 1381. Hearing that, in an instant the whole Qin mansion fell into grief. The mournful cries caused all the onlookers to shed tears uncontrollably. Right at this moment, a gray-robed old madam with a head full of white hair shakily walked out from the depths of the Qin estate with the support of two young servant girls. Wei Jing, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui were also standing in the yard with a serious face. The old man walked and said in a trembling voice, "Where is my grandson? Where is my son? Where is my grandson?" She asked everyone she saw, but who dared to tell her? The old man seemed to be about 80 years old and all her teeth had fallen out. At this moment, seeing Zhang Feng at the door, she seemed to see the last hope. She touched Zhang Feng's arm with trembling hands and asked with a strange face, "Young man, have you seen my grandson?" "They said that my grandson has left." "Are they trying to deceive an old woman like me?" The old woman was still choosing a granddaughter-in-law for him yesterday, and he even came to see me yesterday. How could this be? The more she said, the louder the cries and whimpers of the crowd. Zhang Feng's body was also trembling uncontrollably. In that world he also had a father, a mother, and a grandfather. He didn't even know if they had felt the same way when they saw him disappear back then. Zhang Feng's eyes were also wet. He hugged the old woman and wanted to say something, but he couldn't say anything. How could he dare to break this dream? "Grandma, I am your grandson. Look at me, I'm your grandson." In the end, Zhang Feng still shouted out. In an instant, the old woman heard that and touched Zhang Feng's cheeks, hair bun, arms, and even chest with trembling hands. Originally, Zhang Feng and Qian Wanli's figures were similar. At this time, the old woman's eyes were blurred. Although their voices were a little different, their figures were somewhat similar. The old woman touched Zhang Feng's cheeks, frowning from time to time and pleasantly surprised. Seeing this, the crowd couldn't help but cover their mouths and cry. The old woman touched Zhang Feng's cheek and said, "That's not right, grandson, why do you have a beard? Did your brother mistreat you? Or is the work in the paper mill too heavy? Why didn't you dress up after coming home? What if some girl takes a fancy to you? With your appearance, why? Don't be like your father. I get angry every time I see him. Come, come, come. Granny will comb your hair. Let me tell you, yesterday Granny personally picked a girl for you. That family. Mother. He is not your grandson, he is. Chen Tong broke down and burst into tears. The old woman glared at him and shielded Zhang Feng behind her, scolding, "Nonsense. When your grandson went to the academy, you locked him in his room, don't think I don't know. Now what, you don't even recognize your own son." When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help crying, hugging the old woman and saying, "Grandma, I am your grandson. From now on, I am your most beloved grandson. I will listen to everything you say, okay?" When the old woman heard this, her eyes instantly narrowed into crescents and she rubbed Zhang Feng's cheek affectionately. "My grandson is the best. Come, 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 do we have guests? Why are they all dressed so white? Come, 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 Tong, these may be my precious grandson's classmates, why don't you quickly entertain them? Wait until I dress my grandson up nicely and then..." "Grandma, grandson still has important things to do today. Sir Dean, the 4 great scholars, and the divine Dr. Old Son are all coming to our house. Can you go back first and wait for grandson to personally entertain them?" When the old woman heard this, her face instantly changed. "Which Zhang Feng are you talking about, that brother of yours? There is also Divine Dr. Sun. Divine Dr. Sun is a very good person. When Grandma was young, she saw him with her own eyes. Right, the 4 great scholars. Grandma." Zhang Feng held back his tears and interrupted the old woman. Seeing this, Chen Tong's housekeeper hurriedly said, "Old man, please go back to the inner room. If old son sees you, he will not be happy." The old woman heard this and hurriedly used her crutches to urge the maidservants to return, not forgetting to order more firecrackers as she walked. This was a time for them to hold their heads high and bring glory to their ancestors. However, at this time, this would only increase the sadness of everyone in Qian Mansion. After sending the old woman away, Zhang Feng came to Zhang Feng and respectfully said, "Master Qian, it is Zhang Feng's fault for not taking care of Wanli, please forgive me." This sentence completely shattered Qian Tong's last hope. At this time he looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "How did he die?" Long before Zhang Feng came, 3 people had come with secret orders from the Ministry of Works, the general meaning of which was to give him an idle job. But if he knew that this job was exchanged for with his son's life, he would rather not have it. He refused, because he still had a glimmer of hope. He hoped that in the end all of this was a lie from his son. Although he had never seen Zhang Feng before, for him to appear here at this time, his identity was self-evident. This also meant that his son was really gone. In an instant Qian Tong collapsed and burst into tears. After crying for a while, Qian Tong grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and asked, "President Zhang, where's Jia Wanli? Where is he?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he waved his hand and said, "Let Brother Wanli's coffin return to the mansion." Chapter 1382. At this time, almost half of the people in Chang and city came to the Qin mansion. With the Qin mansion as the center, the whole Chang and city from here to the east city was densely packed with people. They didn't come to pay homage to Qian Wanli's death. They weren't that kind. They came to see how Zhang Feng would deal with it. Would Zhang Feng start a massacre for the sake of a student today? Among these people, there were groups of Jianghu guards in plain clothes, as well as the imperial guards and the Chang'an garrison. There were so many of them that it made people's hair stand on end. They only had one purpose. That was to find out the mastermind behind all this. For this matter, Li Shimin even sent out all the spies in Chang and city at all costs. At this time, pairs of eagle-like eyes were coldly searching for something in the crowd. Even the places that people couldn't see, as long as there were suspicious places before, were basically cleaned up. Although the sun was weakly shining on Chang and city at this time, the air was as cold as winter. The air was also filled with a thick smell of blood that could not be dispersed. In the courtyard, Qian Wanli's coffin finally fell to the ground. In front of his coffin, there were not 3 sacrificial animals, but 3 human heads. They were the murderer who killed Qian Wanli, the long-tongued woman, and the hooligan who jumped the most fiercely and acted the most ruthlessly. These 3 heads instantly made everyone's hair stand on end from head to toe. Everyone suddenly came to a realization. At this moment, behind the seemingly calm and tranquil scene, there seemed to be a turbulent wave brewing. After paying homage to Qian Wanli, Zhang Feng again said to Zhang Feng and Mrs. Qian, "Master Qian, Mrs. Qian, I Zhang Feng have wronged Wanli. Although I have killed the murderer, today I will personally go to the Bai, Gao, Mi and Tang family to seek justice for Brother Wanli. After that, Zhang Feng will personally come to ask for forgiveness." President Zhang. The moment Zhang Feng stood up and prepared to leave, Madame Qian grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and said hoarsely, "My Qian family only has Wanli, this one and only child. Although I, as his mother, was soft-hearted and allowed him to go up the mountain, after that Wanli, this child, is more excited and happy than he has been in the past 10 years. Furthermore, we have witnessed his growth. If it weren't for your approval, I'm afraid our Qin family wouldn't have been able to run Paper Blank's business. And every time he comes back, Wanli will always tell us about what happened on the mountain. Every time this happens, Wanli will be the happiest. Today you have done enough. If Wanli were still alive, he would definitely not want to see the person he respected the most risk his life for him. Prince Zhang, I know you are a person who values friendship and righteousness, but doing this is not worth it. Today, people from the palace also came, and these families are already being investigated by the Ministry of Justice. Moreover, you have personally avenged Wanli. This, we are content." Qian Tong let out a long sigh. "Prince Zhang, if Wanli were still alive, he would definitely not let you do this. Since he chose to do this, it was because he didn't want you to do anything stupid. I won't ask him how he died. I don't want to add to his sins, and I don't want his good brother to kill people for him. I am content with all of this. Now we just want to accompany Wanli. I hope Prince Zhang can help us. We can't afford to be tossed around anymore. We just want to live a peaceful life." Qian Tong was able to open a pawn shop in Chang and city for so many years, so he was already familiar with many things. At this time, how could he not see that this wasn't a simple matter? Behind this matter there must be a shocking conspiracy. Everything that happened in Chang and city today he naturally knew. In addition, the people from the palace just now made him understand even more. If he got involved again, he wouldn't even know how he died. Now he even lost his son, so he didn't want to be tossed around anymore. Losing his son was like losing all hope. What was the point of everything he had done in the past? Even if he was given a high position at this time, what use would it be? Although he was extremely strict with Qian Wanli, all of this was for the good of Qian Wanli. But now, if back then, if he hardened his heart and didn't let Wanli go to White Deer College, perhaps, today even if his son still hated him, he could still be alive. But now, what was left of him, Qian Tong? Zhang Feng naturally understood the meaning of the two's words, but he didn't say anything. Most importantly, what could he say? Taking a deep breath, Zhang Feng said loudly, "Everyone in White Deer College kneel." Kneel? But just as Zhang Feng was about to kneel down, Qian Tong grabbed him tightly, refusing to let him kneel even if he had to die. "President Zhang, you are Wanli's teacher and the dean of the academy, you can't kneel. Moreover, Wanli can't accept it. When Zhang Feng heard this, he opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He could only bow to Chen Wanli's coffin, then to Mrs. Chen and Chen Tong. He waved his hand and said, "Tainyo, Gao Ken, follow this dean to work." Chapter 1383. The moment Zhang Feng turned around, the grief and indignation on his face instantly turned into anger. He strode away without even taking off his mourning clothes. Wei Jing, Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui sighed when they saw this. They hurriedly followed Zhang Feng and chased after him. Their purpose for coming here was to guard against Zhang Feng. If Zhang Feng went crazy, they would stop him immediately. But things were just as the emperor thought. He really wanted to kill someone. "Fengzi, wait!" Wei Jing shouted as he lifted his robe. But Zhang Feng still ignored the two of them and continued to walk towards the Gao residence. Wei Shuyu and Fang Yai were the ones leading the way. Zhang Feng was not a reckless man. On the contrary, he was not reckless. Today he knew that the pair of big hands would definitely be watching in the dark. Today's incident was just the beginning. He knew that the pair of hands could not wait any longer and wanted to make a move. If he really retreated today, then everything he did in the future would definitely fall into a passive position. In fact, things like today would only continue endlessly. Today what he wanted to do was to intimidate. Only by scaring these people out of their wits would they stop. Or else, these people would definitely not let this matter rest. And there was another reason why he did this. That was to give everyone a sense of security. No one could bully the people who entered White Deer College. If anyone dared to bully them, Zhang Feng would make them wish they were dead. Only such a strong sense of security and dominance would make those who wanted to cause trouble realize the reality. Previously, Zhang Feng had been too kind. Everyone mistakenly thought that he was timid and afraid of trouble. That was why today's outcome was like this. In the end, the heir of the merchant family whom he valued the most had died in vain. What if the one who died today was not Chen Wanli but Li Gan, Chen Tiniu or one of the others? What would happen to him? If he let go today, what would happen to Zhang Yuyao, Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao's family? And what would happen to Yu? How would the world view Zhang Feng? Therefore, Zhang Feng paid special attention today. To protect one's family, kindness, compassion and generosity were necessary. However, these had to be built on a foundation. He had thought it was too simple. He thought that this was like the modern world where everyone was bound by strict laws, but he forgot that this was the Tang dynasty. This was in the Tang dynasty, where feudal superstition was the most serious, and where the slavery system was the most serious. This led to today's tragedy. Even though he wasn't an unpardonable villain, but in order to protect the people he wanted to protect, he, Zhang Feng, would transform into that villain today. He was an evil man who made all those who dared to plot against him tremble in fear. It was also from this moment on that Zhang Feng transformed. At this moment, Wei Jing, Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui saw that Zhang Feng was ignoring them and hurriedly shouted, "Zhang Feng! Stop right there, old man. Do you know what you're doing right now? Fengzi, did you hear that?" Zhang Feng naturally heard their words. Seeing the three of them acting like this, Li Qingqian and Du Go couldn't hold back anymore. "Fengzi, why don't we listen to what they have to say?" "Fengzi," Zhang Feng sighed slightly and stopped in his tracks. When Wei Zhang and the others saw this, they hurriedly ran forward and grabbed Zhang Feng's hand, pulling him behind them. Wei Zhang asked with a serious expression, "Fengzi, the emperor has already intervened in this matter. Do you know what this means?" How could Zhang Feng not know? He said, "The emperor just doesn't want me to make a move in Chang'an City, right?" Wei Zhang nodded and said, "Since you already know, why are you still so reckless? Do you know how many people are watching in the dark today? In the 2 hours that we were in the Qian mansion, we heard that the Imperial Guard spies killed at least 100 people and captured more than 300 people. These people are all from unknown forces. Think about it, so many people have been captured. How many people have not been captured? Fengzi, don't be so obsessed. It's not good for you." Zhang Feng nodded and took out the Mitsubishi bayonet from his arms. He said, "You're all right. But have you ever thought that the hands hidden in the dark also think the same? Today is just a test. If I, Zhang Feng, shrink back today, what will I do in the future? If I encounter today's situation again, will I still choose to back down? After the first test, there will definitely be a second and third time in the future. Have you ever thought about how many brothers I, Zhang Feng, have? How many students I, White Deer College, have? If this continues, how will the world view me, Zhang Feng? How will they view my White Deer College? Are they saying that I, Zhang Feng, don't even have the ability to protect my own students? Are they saying that I, Zhang Feng, don't even have the right to protect my brother's women? Do you really want to see this kind of ending? Wei Zhang and the others couldn't help but have a serious expression. They had already thought about this, and the emperor was also worried about this. But now that they saw Zhang Feng acting recklessly, wasn't this also a trap set by the mastermind? Chapter 1384. Qian Wanli's death. It made Zhang Feng think of a lot of things. At first, Zhang Feng really didn't think so much. But as soon as he arrived in Chang'an City, Zhang Feng knew that he was thinking too simply. Although it seemed that the emperor ordered the arrest today to protect him, wasn't this what the mastermind wanted to see? They were waiting to see how Zhang Feng would end up. Once he flinched, it would only bring him endless trouble in the future. It would be a seed of disappointment for all those who were optimistic about him. The seed of disappointment was the most terrible. When you chose to flinch for the first time, if you chose him, then he would imprint this seed in everyone's mind. No matter what you did in the future. In the eyes of others, you were choosing to flinch. This seed was what Zhang Feng didn't want to see the most, but it was what the mastermind wanted to see the most. Someone was forcing him to make a choice behind his back. How could Wei Zhang and the other two not think of this? At this time, when they heard Zhang Feng's question, they didn't know what to say. After all, this choice also depended on Zhang Feng's choice. But they really didn't want to see Zhang Feng kill with their own eyes. Wei Zhang patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said with some sincerity, "We'll pretend that we didn't see this. You can handle everything by yourself. Even if you poke a hole in Chang'an City, Lao Li said that he will help you deal with it." Okay. Zhang Feng nodded and then hurried to the Gao family. Wei Zhang and the others hurriedly stopped Li Qingqian and said, "Remember, your father said that no matter what happens you must protect Zhang Feng and yourself. Now don't let Fengzi go to the Tang family. Remember." The Gao family. The Gao family was also a famous family. But it was not in this era. At its most glorious time, almost half of the land in the entire Guangzhou region belonged to the Gao family. But that was the past. The current Gao family was just a country gentleman. However, he was still more well-off than the average large clan. After all, he still had a noble title in the imperial court and some of his clansmen who worked in the imperial court. This ensured that the Gao family could continue to survive in Guangzhou. But that was only enough for them to survive. Just like the Bai clan, the Mi clan, and the Tang clan, their focus was all on this land. In Chang'an, he was considered a local tycoon. A few days ago, they had learned that there was something on the mountain that could double the amount of food. In addition, they also learned that Zhang Feng was a kind and easy person to talk to. Thus, they had been thinking about this. After all, the Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan had benefited from it first, so they couldn't help but harbor evil intentions. But who would have thought that the means they were originally proud of would be taken advantage of today? If they had known that Zhang Feng was the master of scheming and manipulating public opinion, they would never have done this. But everything was just an if. Early this morning, all the clansmen of the Gao family returned to their clan in high spirits, waiting for their share of the phosphate fertilizer. But what awaited them were the people from the Ministry of Justice and the Imperial Guards. At this moment, in the Gao residence, everyone was kneeling neatly in the courtyard. Around their necks hung a large, ice-cold blade. Their eyes were filled with fear and vexation. All of the clan's belongings were carefully taken away by the Imperial Guards. Not a single brick or tile was spared. Everything was moved out of the mansion. In the Gao family, except for a few high-ranking people, all the servants and their family members were taken away by the Ministry of Justice. No one knew what fate awaited them. But this was no longer important. What was important was that as the remaining people watched the last bit of their belongings slowly disappear, their hearts began to tighten. The emperor was furious. Their belongings were confiscated and everyone was sent to the Ministry of Justice's prison. These were all small matters, but why were they not taken away? Could it be that they wanted to kill them? They all knew that things were not that simple. Most importantly, they all knew what was going on. After all, they were the ones who personally mobilized and came up with the plan. But the more it was so, the more terrified they felt. At this moment, after the last bit of their belongings were confiscated, an official from the Ministry of Justice slowly walked forward and sat in front of the Gao family head and the other related personnel. He asked, "Tell me what happened today. Do you want to talk about it here or in the Ministry of Justice's prison?" "There's no need." At this moment, Zhang Feng walked in with Li Qingqian and the others. In Li Qingqian's hands, he personally held the imperial edict that Li Shaogong had just announced in the market. And when he saw the imperial edict, the eyes of the Ministry of Justice instantly widened. Those who were about to step forward to stop Zhang Feng and the others also fell to their knees in an instant. And what shocked the Ministry of Justice even more was that, behind this young man, the crown prince and the heir to the duke had all appeared. This meant that the person leading them was Zhang Feng? Although not many people could recognize Li Qingqian, there were at least 3 of them. At this moment, Zhang Feng looked at the crowd and said, "The Emperor's imperial edict has already stated that I will handle this matter. You all can leave now." The Ministry of Justice's people wanted to say something, but the Ministry of Justice official sitting in front of the Gao family head immediately smiled and said, "Then I will leave now." Chapter 1385. There were only 7 people left in the Gao family. Apart from the head of the family who didn't look like he was in his 40s, the rest were between 50 and 80 years old. Seeing that the people from the Ministry of Justice had left, they cautiously raised their heads. However, their expressions changed the moment they saw Zhang Feng. His white linen clothes were extremely eye-catching. They didn't know what happened on Shao Mountain today, but since the people from the Ministry of Justice were here, it meant that the plan had failed. They never expected that these people would come in mourning clothes. What was the meaning of this? This was especially true for the Gao family head. He had thought about what he would have to face if he failed. However, when he saw Zhang Feng and the others in white, he knew that things were going to get serious. Who could come with the Emperor's imperial edict? Zhang Feng sat opposite them and looked at them. He played with the Mitsubishi army knife in his hand and said, "Tell me, who is the mastermind behind this?" The head of the Gao family saw that Zhang Feng's tone was very calm, so he mustered up his courage and asked, "May I know who this young master is?" Zhang Feng. Hearing this, the head of the Gao family and the higher-ups of the Gao family were instantly shocked. The mastermind came personally. It seemed that, seeing this, the head of the Gao family put away the smile on his face and said, "It's the original President Zhang Feng. Since you already know about this, then kill us if you want. We have nothing to say." "Alright." Zhang Feng didn't hesitate at all. He waved his hand. Gao Can immediately attacked. He took the Modeo from the Imperial Guard and cleanly cut off the head of the person next to the head of the Gao family. In an instant, as the head fell, a mist of blood gushed out like rain. The head of the Gao family was so frightened that his face changed drastically. "Zhang Feng, what are you trying to do? We were wrong in this matter, but His Majesty also knows about this matter and has already handed it over to the Ministry of Justice to investigate. You dare to kill people in broad daylight? Do you have any respect for the law? This is an imperial edict. Do you want to see it for yourself? His Majesty said that this matter is for me to handle. All the power of life and death is temporarily in my hands. I, Zhang Feng Yu, am not an unreasonable person. Your people indiscriminately killed my brothers and injured tens of my people in Ji Mountain Square and my, Zhang Feng Yu's people. You should settle this account by yourself before deciding whether this guy should be killed or not." While speaking, Li Qingqian opened the imperial edict in his hand and placed it in front of Patriarch Gao and the others. "Take a good look, this is the Emperor's imperial edict. If you tell me the truth about the mastermind behind this, perhaps your Gao clan won't be wiped out today. If you dare to lie, he will be your example." This was also the first time Li Qingqian had seen someone killed with his own eyes. At this moment, his face was frighteningly pale. At this moment, seeing that Zhang Feng seemed to really want to kill someone to establish his prestige, he hurriedly said. The remaining people of the Gao clan were also instantly terrified. Patriarch Gao's forehead was dripping with bean-like cold sweat. Looking at Zhang Feng's calm eyes, he said, "Prince Zhang, all of this is the Tang clan." "Yes, it's the Tang clan. 3 days ago, after Kong Yingda came back from Ji Mountain, he took the phosphate fertilizer you made and spread it everywhere, saying that it was poisonous and would kill people if they ate it. Then Dr. Sun Simiao personally went down the mountain and confirmed that it was not poisonous and could really increase the food supply." Patriarch Gao was really scared. She explained everything clearly without missing a single word. She even excluded the Gao family from the story. But no one was a fool. Zhang Feng was even less of a fool. At this time, after he finished, Zhang Feng asked, "So, your Gao clan was also forced by the Tang clan?" Yes. All of this was forced by them. Otherwise, how could we have the guts to do such a despicable thing? Moreover, the Tang family also said that if we were to participate, we only need to stand behind them. When the time comes, they will definitely share the phosphate fertilizer with us. But if we didn't agree, they would join forces with the Mi clan and the Bai clan to destroy our Gao clan. And they also said that it was all ordered by Kong Yingda, so we... Hearing this, Zhang Feng stared into Patriarch Gao's eyes and said, "But why did I hear that all of this was led by the Gao clan and the Tang clan? And do you think that I, Zhang Feng, don't know anything? Your Gao clan has always been related to the Zheng clan in Xinjiang, and has always been the Zheng clan's pawn. This time is the Zheng clan behind this matter? Hearing this, Patriarch Gao's face changed instantly. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and said, "Prince Jiang, all of this was really done by the Tang clan. And they have the Wang clan behind them. The Wang clan has a grudge with Prince Jiang before, and this time the Wang clan personally came with the Tang clan. That's why I foolishly agreed to this matter. Young master, please investigate this matter thoroughly." At this moment, all the dignity and arrogance that he usually had were all bullshit. In a matter of life and death, Patriarch Gao still chose to live an ignoble life. And he was also secretly shocked. How did Zhang Feng know all of this? After all, the relationship between the Gao clan and the Zheng clan in Xinjiang was basically unknown. They had always been in contact with each other through letters, and if there was nothing serious, they would not contact each other. Recently, he was sure that he had not contacted the Zheng clan. Such a secretive matter, even the people at the bottom of the Gao clan did not know, so how did Zhang Feng know? Seeing this, Zhang Feng sighed, "Stubborn. Tainyo, I'll let you interrogate them. This house, if you want it, you can keep it. If you don't want it, burn it and let it be buried with Brother Wanli." Chapter 1386. Zhang Feng didn't know any of this. Even in the old and new Tang dynasty books, there were very few records of these four families. He had unintentionally read a novel about the Tang dynasty written by a lousy author. That was why he took it out to test this person out of curiosity. But he didn't expect it to be true. Was the Gao family really a pawn of the Zheng family in Xinjiang? Then, could it be that the Bai and Mi families were related to these noble families? Now he had confirmed too. The Gao family seemed to be in the dark. As for the Tang family, they were the biggest suspects. He mentioned the Wang clan. Moreover, the Wang family's people had also come with the Tang family. The Tang family wasn't simple. In history they had been in Chang, and since the Qin dynasty. It wasn't until the Wei, Jin, and northern and southern dynasties that the Tang family started to decline. When Yang Jian came to power, the Tang family had no chance of recovery. Until now. It seemed that the Tang family wasn't simple. Li Qingqian saw that Zhang Feng was silent and couldn't help but ask, "Fengzi, do you think this incident was really done by the Wang clan's people? If that's the case, the mastermind is also the Wang clan's people?" Zhang Feng shook his head and looked tiredly at the worried and fearful people in front of him. He said, "It's a little impossible. The Wang clan alone can't do this. Now, I suspect that this incident wasn't done by the Wang clan at all. On the contrary, the Wang clan's people were used by others." What? Li Qingqian couldn't help but be shocked. He thought for a while and said, "Fengzi, how is that possible? The Wang clan has been against us since Lantian. And the iron mine was broken by the Wang clan, isn't that right? Now you're saying that it wasn't done by him?" At this moment, Shiva, Wei Shuyu, Du Go, and the others couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng. Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun, and the others also revealed confused and curious expressions. Although they knew a little about some things, they didn't know much after all. In addition, they didn't understand the various relationships between these big clans, which made them even more confused. Zhang Feng nodded. "They used too much force. Think about it. If even we can think of this, then do you think that the people of the Wang clan are all fools? No one who can become a member of a big clan is a fool. On the contrary, these large clans have always prioritized their own interests. It's because of this that they don't dare to stand up against us easily. After all, they haven't swallowed us whole. So, if you were the head of the Wang clan, would you be so impatient to step out?" In an instant, Li Qingqian understood everything. Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun, Guishou Yi, and the others were puzzled and had no idea what he was talking about. How could these large clans be something that they could look up to normally? However, at this moment, from the conversation between Zhang Feng and Li Gan, they understood some things. Moreover, they were even more shocked by Zhang Feng's current understanding. In the subconscious mind of an ordinary person, they would be impulsive. In a fit of rage, one would often be unusually impulsive. However, Zhang Feng was different. He was actually able to hide everything under this appearance of rage. How could they not be impressed? As they spoke, the group arrived outside the Mi clan's residence. At this moment, the people of the Ministry of Justice seemed to have known that Zhang Feng was coming. Other than the head of the Mi clan and the important members, all the treasures and people were taken away. Only a few guards were left. When these guards saw Zhang Feng and the others arrive, they hurriedly handed over their belongings and slipped away. This time, Zhang Feng only spent the time of a meal to get something useful out of the Mi clan. That was the Lanling Shao clan behind the Mi clan. People from Shandong. How could they have dealings with the Mi clan? This caused Zhang Feng to become even more perplexed. As usual, he left the people to Qintinyu. This time on the way Zhang Feng did not say a word. He hurriedly led the group into the Bai clan's residence. The Bai clan practiced medicine for generations. It was a well-known family of physicians. In the Sui dynasty, Yang Guang's era was also his most glorious era. However, when he was treating Yang Guang's beloved concubine, he accidentally touched the arm of the imperial concubine and was almost exterminated by Yang Guang. These descendants of the Mi family were also the scattered members of the Mi family. Finally, after the founding of the Tang dynasty, they were able to recover some of their ancestral properties. However, they could no longer take back the things they had bought from the merchants. At that time, the land was the most worthless thing in the world. When Zhang Feng entered the Mi clan's residence, of the Mi clan only an old lady was left. She was sitting at the entrance of the residence, seemingly waiting for Zhang Feng's arrival. This made Zhang Feng a little surprised. Behind the old lady, the remaining members of the Mi clan were lying on the ground. Their faces were purplish-black. It was obvious that they had committed suicide by taking poison. Seeing Zhang Feng's arrival, the old lady smiled faintly and said, "Prince Zhang, you're here." Zhang Feng did not beat around the bush and asked directly, "Tell me, who is the mastermind behind you?" Chapter 1387. The woman from the Mi clan faintly smiled and said, "Listen to this old woman's nagging first. When I'm done you'll know everything about my Mi clan." The Mi family was originally a prominent family. Prince Zhang should have heard about this from the Bai family and the Gao family before coming here, right? This old woman knew quite a lot. Zhang Feng couldn't help but understand why everyone behind her had died. She was afraid that her clansmen would suffer the pain of being imprisoned. Besides, this was the prison of the Ministry of Justice. Moreover, this matter had alarmed the emperor. How could they come out after entering? Moreover, the old woman also knew about the Chen family. Since she came from the Chen family, she must have passed by these places. Since she could come here, it meant that Zhang Feng knew everything he could. There was no point in struggling at this point. The old woman continued, "But in the Sui dynasty, my ancestor touched the arm of the imperial concubine and was exterminated. We were only able to return to our ancestral home from the bitter cold when the retired emperor ascended the throne and pardoned the world. But the glory of the past was long gone. So, the Mi family had no choice but to find a big tree. Prince Zhang, do you know why the Mi family can continue to exist in Chang'an? Usually, when people who are exiled come back, they may not be able to buy these properties even if they have money, let alone these properties." Zhang Feng was not in the mood to guess. However, at this moment, there was a chance that he could catch the mastermind behind the scenes. Zhang Feng could only listen to her patiently. "Tell me." The old woman chuckled and said, "Back in Liangzhou, which was also the border of the Tang dynasty, the Mi family inadvertently saved a businessman. This businessman lived in Zhaojun." At this point the old woman stopped talking. Li Qingqian was shocked and said, "You mean the Li family of Zhaojun?" The old woman nodded. "Yes. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't have any hope of returning to Chang'an. But it's also because of this that we're connected to Zhaojun. But this matter really has nothing to do with us. My Mi family didn't want to get involved with anyone or any force. After all, there's a precedent. But when my Mi family came back, we owed a lot of favors and this Tang family took the biggest share. So this time, it's also the people of the Tang family who asked us to come forward with the favor." Zhang Feng didn't know how much of this was true and how much was false. But since things had come to this point, all the spearheads pointed to the Tang family and the Wang clan. Zhang Feng no longer hesitated and got up to leave. But the old lady asked in surprise, "Prince Zhang, this is—" Zhang Feng didn't say anything. Instead he hurried out. His intuition was right. Moreover, she was just an old woman. What did he have to fear? As soon as he went out, Li Qingqian hurriedly grabbed Zhang Feng. "Fengzi, do you know who that old woman is?" "I don't know and I don't want to know now. I just want to go to the Tang family." Li Qingqian grabbed Zhang Feng and said solemnly, "Do you know the name of Granny Miji?" Zhang Feng was stunned for a moment. He had heard of Granny Miji and Granny Miji, but what did they have to do with this old woman? Seeing this, Li Qingqian said, "The Mi family was originally close to becoming the 9th clan, but later on they offended Yang Guang, which led to this. But do you really think what she said was true? The Li family only agreed to help them because I accidentally saved a Li family member?" Zhang Feng frowned slightly. "Are you saying that the old woman is lying?" Li Qingqian nodded. However, Wei Shiyu continued, "She is Granny Miji. When they were in Liangzhou, the Mi family was gathering their connections and preparing to return to Chang'an. They also wanted to restore their former glory. The mastermind behind all this was Granny Miji. Don't underestimate this old woman. She almost alerted the emperor. During the Wei River Alliance, Granny Miji brought hundreds of kilograms of poison and offered it to the emperor. She was prepared to poison the Turks. However, the emperor didn't have the heart to do so, so he didn't choose such a vicious plan. At the same time, the emperor ordered people to suppress the Mi family after the incident. Think about it. A family that can produce such a huge amount of poison. How can the emperor not be afraid? How can the history of Zhaojun not be afraid? That was also why the Li family of Zhao County chose to help him. However, the price was that all the Mi family's properties in Liangzhou would belong to the Li family of Zhao County. Do you know what the Li family of Zhao County found when they took over? Half of the entire Liangzhou basically belonged to the Mi family. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be secretly shocked. He didn't expect that such a benevolent old woman would be so ruthless. At this moment, he finally understood why Li Qingqian and the others' expressions changed when Granny Miji was mentioned. However, what did this have to do with him? After hearing this, Zhang Feng only uttered an "oh," and then headed for the Tang family again. He was blocked by Li Qingqian again. Fengzi, although she is just an old woman, think about it. How terrifying is someone who can even abandon her own family at a critical moment. Everything today is caused by you. If you don't completely destroy her hope today in the future. Zhang Feng was also annoyed. He waved his hand and said, "If you want to go, go. I'll leave this matter to you. The rest of you quickly follow me to the Tang family." Chapter 1388. The Tang family. It was a family with the same name as the Tang dynasty. It was impossible to say that he had nothing to do with the royal family. In the past, Tang Jin had been very high profile and he had always been proud of this. Therefore in Chang'an City, most people did not dare to offend him. But this was also the reason why the Tang family was so arrogant. The land of Shirley Slope and the land under Mount Longsho all belonged to the Tang family. What kind of place was Mount Longsho? It was the imperial plantation. It was the place of the emperor. This gave the Tang family another reason to be arrogant. Usually, as long as it was not a big deal, even the county government would not want to have anything to do with the Tang family. They were afraid that the Tang family would settle accounts with them in the future. But today, the Tang family, who used to be so arrogant and domineering, had set off a huge wave in Chang'an City. The emperor had personally issued a decree to confiscate all the Tang family's belongings and put all the members of the Tang family in jail. At first, no one knew what was going on. Moreover, the people from the Tang family had a group of hired thugs and even injured dozens of bailiffs. In the end, when the imperial guards and the Ministry of Justice appeared, the Tang family finally behaved themselves. But that was only obedience. They did not admit to their crimes. It was not until Zhang Feng led the funeral procession into Chang'an City that what happened in the marketplace of Shao Mountain caused an uproar among the people. The Tang family was so bold that they dared to send a group of hooligans and gossips from Chang'an City and the surrounding areas to make trouble for White Deer College. Where was White Deer College? It was a sacred institution that was appointed by the emperor to be on the same level as the Imperial College. Moreover, it was founded by Zhang Feng, the youngest Confucian scholar in the Tang dynasty in history. Zhang Feng's status in the hearts of the people of Chang'an City was no different from that of a god. But the Tang family actually dared to attack Zhang Feng? Moreover, he had violently forced Zhang Feng to hand over the phosphate fertilizer formula in his hands. He had even beaten to death the son of Chang'an's manager Qian, who was also the direct disciple of Dean Zhang Feng. In an instant, everyone in Chang'an City was furious. What is this? They were simply a bunch of bandits. As for the people from the Ministry of Justice, they grew even more furious. With a single order, they joined forces with the common people who had been oppressed by the Tang family and smashed the Tang family's estate into smithereens. Even the Tang family's businesses in Chang'an were completely destroyed by the angry common people. Faced with so many commoners and officials from the Ministry of Justice, the people from the Tang family were still unwilling to leave the matter at that. They continued to evade the important matters and dwell on the trivial matters as they questioned the Ministry of Justice on how to punish the commoners. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the Tang family's residence, the patriarch of the Qian family, Tang Hao, sat boldly at the entrance of the residence, drinking tea while looking at the angry commoners. He said to the officials from the Ministry of Justice, "Old man has said that you can enter the Tang family's residence today, but if you don't hand over this group of unruly commoners to the old man will definitely accuse the Ministry of Justice of corruption and conniving with the murderer." The person who came to the Tang family's residence this time was the second in command of the Ministry of Justice, Feng Ang. He was well aware of these matters as well as the relationship between the emperor and Zhang Feng. Coupled with what had happened in Shao Mountain as well as the high-profile style of the Tang family, Feng Ang could not help but feel extremely angry. Tang Hao, do you know that everything that the Tang family has done on Shao Mountain today has already infuriated the emperor? We will act according to the law. If you continue to be obsessed and obstruct us, it won't be us who will come later. It will be the imperial guards, the emperor's personal guards. Do you want to be executed by the emperor on the spot or plead guilty? Plead guilty? Tang Hao laughed. The Tang family has always been above board. How can we plead guilty just because you say so? You said that you were acting according to the imperial edict. Fine, I won't make things difficult for you. First, tell me, how are you going to deal with these rioters? If you deal with these rioters first, we'll talk about our business. Feng Ang gritted his teeth and said, the people of the Chang and local government will investigate these people. Ha. Tang Hao laughed out loud. So you're saying that the Tang family is so easy to bully? First, you came to our door to falsely accuse the Tang family of causing trouble on Shao Mountain. Can you produce evidence? If you can, that old man will definitely plead guilty. Even if the emperor comes in person today, if you don't have evidence, I, Tang Hao, will definitely not allow you to frame me unjustly. Moreover, the Tang family is a contributor to the founding of the country. Is this how you treat a contributor to the founding of the country? Feng Ang was so angry that his face turned red and he could not say anything. At this moment, Niu Jinda and Yu Qigong's voices slowly appeared at the gate of the Tang family's residence. Tang Hao, your mouth is still as foul as before. Hearing that, in an instant, Feng Ang hurriedly bowed to them. However, he was stopped by Yu Qigong and Niu Jinda's attire. Tang Hao looked at the two of them in surprise. He had a feeling of déjà vu, but he could not tell if he knew them or not. At this moment, Yu Qigong said coldly, your Tang family's young master is now in the military camp and has confessed everything. Why are you still standing here? Do you really want to see your Tang family go to ruin? And let me tell you, those people you found have all confessed. I advise you to plead guilty quickly. At this moment, Niu Jijie and General Qing Yaojin are personally escorting the interrogation results and the situation here back to the palace. If you persist in going about things the wrong way, do you know the consequences? Tang Hao got up in horror and looked at the two of them in horror. Who are you? Why do you know so much? Chapter 1389. Tang Hao was the head of the Tang family. When the people from the Ministry of Justice arrived, he had thought of many things. But he never expected that his unfilial son would confess everything. They had agreed that no matter what happened, as long as the people on the mountain refused to give in, he would be able to settle the matter even if the emperor himself came. After all, he had someone in court. Plus, the Wang family had promised him. But now, that unfilial son had confessed? How was that possible? Yu Qigong didn't expect it either. The young master of the Tang family actually confessed as soon as he saw the pool of dung in the military prison that had been there for who knew how many years. He thought that the brat was so arrogant that he would have to go through torture before he would confess, so Yu Qigong rushed down as fast as he could. His goal was to make Tang Hao confess before Zhang Feng arrived at the Tang residence. Otherwise, once Zhang Feng arrived, there would be no turning back. Before he arrived, the spy had already informed him of Zhang Feng's every move. At this moment, Zhang Feng's eyes were bloodshot. On the one hand, he wanted to avenge Chen Wanli, but on the other hand, he wanted to establish his authority. This brat urgently needed to establish his authority so that White Deer College's prestige could rise to another level. It was understandable why Zhang Feng would be so impulsive. Moreover, if Zhang Feng really dared to kill the Tang family, the Wang family would be furious. This was also the reason why the emperor was so concerned about this matter. Tang Hao was also one of Huang's horses. When he saw that Yu Qigong didn't say anything, he panicked even more. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Feng Ang, broke out in cold sweat. Now that Yu Qigong was here, things would be difficult. Moreover, Yu Qigong was in disguise. Did that mean that Zhang Feng was coming? When he thought of this, Feng Ang hurriedly stepped forward to block Yu Qigong's path. Lord Yu, why have you come? Yu Qigong pushed Feng Ang to the side and looked at Tang Hao. You don't need to know who Lao Tzu is. When you don't die tonight, you will know who Lao Tzu is. But when that time comes, you won't be able to die even if you want to. That's why I'm here. I'm here for the sake of your Tang family. I don't want your Tang family to be wiped out. Tang Hao smiled faintly. Then should an old man thank you? Yu Qigong clenched his fists and stood in front of Tang Hao with his hands clasped behind his back. That won't be necessary. However, you only have one meal. If you miss this opportunity, I'm afraid your Tang family won't have another chance to speak. Speaking of which, President Zhang Feng has probably cleaned up the Mi family, right? Hearing this, Tang Hao's eyelids twitched. What did you say? Does Zhang Feng dare to kill someone? Does he dare to wipe out an entire family? This is Chang and City, right under the emperor's nose. Does he dare to kill someone so brazenly? Feng Ang, as the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, why aren't you involved in this matter? Yu Qigong waved his hand. He can't do anything about it. Tang Hao's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly asked, why? President Zhang Feng has His Majesty's imperial edict. His Majesty has already decreed that this is Zhang Feng's personal matter and he should deal with it himself. Moreover, Mount Shao is Lord Zhang's fief. Not only did you cause trouble at Mount Shao, but you also killed a student from White Deer College in public. This student was President Zhang's personal disciple. Tang Hao, we're here because His Majesty doesn't want to cause any more bloodshed. So, you better think this through. Moreover, Old Yu is Zhang Feng's brother. He's the only one who can persuade Zhang Feng. Tang Hao, you better think this through. Once Prince Zhang comes, it'll be too late. Tang Hao was even more certain that these two were putting on an act. He smiled faintly. So, you're doing this for my own good? At this moment he was even more certain of the Wang family's words. The closer they got to this point, the more they had to persevere. As long as they didn't relent, even if His Majesty came, he wouldn't be able to convict them. Moreover, would His Majesty personally speak up for a dead person? Yu Qigong's expression gradually turned cold. He stared coldly at Tang Hao and said, Lao Tzu, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to confess or not? Or are you going to move aside? If you don't move aside, old man won't care about your life or death. For the sake of Lao Tzu's Tang Fort, I'll ask you one more time. This is also His Majesty's intention. His Majesty has some friendship with Lao Tzu. Don't think that Lao Tzu doesn't know about this. To tell you the truth, I originally didn't want to get involved this time. However, Lord Zhang's son personally sent a secret order to Lao Tzu to protect the Tang family. If you don't confess, Lao Tzu will leave immediately. Old Yu, you really came at the right time. However, this old thing's intelligence is lacking. I think it's better for me to do it. At this moment, Zhang Feng's voice slowly rang out from behind everyone. The moment he heard this voice, Yu Qigong knew that he couldn't stop this even if he wanted to. The moment Zhang Feng's voice rang out, everyone immediately turned to look at the source of the voice. At the same time, they instinctively moved aside to make a path. Tang Hao also saw Zhang Feng and the others who were dressed in mourning clothes. Zhang Feng ignored Tang Hao. Instead, he patted Yu Qigong's shoulder and said, Old Yu, what's the point of saying so much to this kind of person who has a problem with his intelligence? As he spoke, Zhang Feng sighed and said, This also shows that your intelligence is lacking. Chapter 1390. Reporting. Your Majesty, Prince Zhang Feng has already arrived at Tang Manor, in the imperial study. At this time Xiao Gizi reported with a pale face. On the dragon throne, Li Yuan and Li Shimin looked at the secret memorials placed on the table. They looked at each other. Li Shimin lightly waved his hand. Only then did Xiao Gizi say, Your Majesty, General Yuqi and Assistant Minister Feng still haven't executed Tang Hao. Hearing this, Li Yuan asked, Then did Yu Qigong say anything about his Lao Tzu and Tang Hongbao? He did, but... Tang Hao said. Li Yuan slapped the table and said, What did he say? He said, Even if your Majesty personally came it would be useless. Li Shimin's face was very gloomy. Did he really think that just because his ancestor had some relationship with me, he could disregard the law? Xiao Gizi, did you find anything unusual about Tang Manor recently? Xiao Gizi hurriedly took out a gilded booklet from his bosom and handed it to Li Shimin, saying, This is all of the Tang family's abnormal behavior in the past month that the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Rights and Ministry of Works have gathered today. While speaking, Xiao Gizi said again, Just now news came from the military camp, saying that Tang Jingtian has been executed. In the past month, the Tang family privately sold large amounts of firearms to the Turks with the Tang family's descendants from the Ministry of Works. Moreover, most of the Tang family's properties in Longyu Road have been transferred. However, as to where exactly they have been transferred, this is unknown. Li Shimin's eyes narrowed slightly. This we know. In the past month in Chang'an, there hasn't been the slightest bit of news about the arrival of a large amount of family property. Then, Father Emperor, do you know if this Tang family has any other properties in other places? Li Tang, why was it called Tang and not Li? There was still a lot of explanation for this. At the time when Taiyuan started the war, this title of the country was controversial. It was only until Li Yuan proclaimed himself emperor that it was decided to use the name Tang. However, what this had to do with the Tang family, Li Shimin really didn't know. At that time, the Tang family had the closest relationship with the Li family. It could also be considered a family supported by Li Yuan who wanted to contend against those large families, but it seemed that even after so many years, the Tang family could only be considered a local second-rate power. If it weren't for the huge incident today, Li Shimin would have almost forgotten about the Tang family. Moreover, he had just received news from Li Qingqian that the Gao, Bai, and Mi clans were all related to those large clans. What about the Tang clan? He actually had dealings with the Wang clan. It was no wonder that even when he had been cracking down on the encroachment of these great clans and forces on Chang, and these forces were still able to infiltrate without a sound. He had originally thought that these local forces of Guangzhong were truly united, and these families had always kept a low profile, so he had never thought of this matter. If it wasn't for today, he really wouldn't have known that the four great clans had actually caused so many things in silence. Li Yuan also did not expect that this tiny Tang family that could not be helped up would actually cause so many things under his eyelids. Today, after learning about the incident at Shao Mountain, he was also unusually angry. Seeing this, he said somewhat angrily, "Back then when I established Liangzhou Prefecture, I had sent a secret order for their people to infiltrate other clans. However, this Tang Hongbao had not made any progress, so I did not take it seriously. After that, when I saw the results of the Tang family these years, I was bitterly disappointed and chose to give up on them. However, this Tang Hongbao really made a good move." Li Shimin instantly said in surprise, "In that case, the internal strife between Tubo and Tuyuhun has been unable to be pacified all this time because of the Tang family? At this time, Tang Hao has been holding on all this time because of this matter?" Although Li Shimin was only guessing, the more he thought about it, the more scared he felt. This Tang family usually did not show off and did not leak anything. This time it did not seem to be a big wave. Originally he wanted to protect the Tang family. After all, if he suppressed the local forces too much, it would make the people of Chang uneasy. However, now that Zhang Feng had caused such a ruckus, he investigated and really found many problems. This Tang family, they really did not stop in the past few years. Back then, when the retired emperor allowed them to develop in other clans, it seemed like he had opened a door for them. It was a door that allowed their ambitions to swell. Hearing this, Li Yuan nodded. "That's what I guessed too. Otherwise this matter would not make sense. A small phosphate fertilizer, if it was produced, would naturally benefit the people of the world. They would naturally obtain enough benefits, but they would also feel some fear towards those landowning clans. However, this is not the most serious matter. I feel that they seem to have other motives." Hearing this, Li Shimin instantly looked at Li Yuan, who was watching him, and said, "Father, do you mean that the Tang family wants to annex White Deer College?" Li Yuan nodded. However, he shook his head and said with a smile, "Who asked this kid not to show off and to have such a sloppy appearance? Last time, I guess that they saw some signs in the agreement between the people of Guanlong and Zhang Feng. In addition, Zhang Feng has always been carefree, so this time they are probing." Probing? Li Shimin was shocked and instantly understood. His expression suddenly turned cold. Zhang Feng is naturally easy to talk to and has a good temper. However, if you think that Zhang Feng is easy to deal with, hee. Thinking of this, Li Shimin's heart instantly calmed down. After exchanging glances with Li Yuan, he waved his hand and said, "Pass down the imperial edict. I will pretend that I don't know about this matter. Since Zhang Feng has the imperial edict, do as he wishes. In addition, tell those who are watching to retract their eyeballs. Otherwise, I don't mind gouging their eyeballs out." Chapter 1391. In the Crown Prince residence, Ho Junji should have left long ago. After all, his fief was in Luozhou, but because the Crown Prince had been ill and the Crown Princess had caught a cold while taking care of Li Qingqian, Ho Junji had found an excuse to stay. Until now. In the garden of the Crown Prince residence's eastern palace, a series of spies, like butterflies flitting through flowers, appeared beside him in an endless stream, and then hurriedly left again. Ho Junji's face gradually turned grave. At this moment, the Crown Princess, dressed in a pink robe embroidered with golden threads, calmly looked at Ho Junji. Only after the servants had left did she ask, "Lord Father, is the Crown Prince all right?" "The Crown Prince is fine, but after today's disturbance, the officials will probably change their view of the Crown Prince." The Crown Princess grimaced, the teacup in her hand trembling as she hastily asked, "What do you mean? Didn't you say that a student was killed in Shao Mountain Market?" Was this Zhang Feng's personal matter? Why would the crown prince? Hou Junji shook his head and stood up to look at the osmanthus trees blooming with orange flowers. Although this is Zhang Feng's doing, don't forget that this academy is spread out in the name of the crown prince. Although everyone knows that this is a pretense, the crown prince can still be considered a student, and the crown prince truly did participate in today's matter. Thus, while the crown prince's prestige will rise a little, the landowning clans will definitely be wary of the crown prince. The crown princess's expression changed. Although she had never left the Eastern Palace, she placed great importance on these matters. Every day an endless stream of people would come to visit, hoping to curry favor with the crown prince. Thus, there were some matters that she knew even better than the crown prince. Hearing this, she asked, "Lord Father, everything today was carried out by Zhang Feng with an imperial decree. What does it have to do with the crown prince? Moreover, the crown prince is also a student who listens to Zhang Feng's orders." You're right, but these are all superficial things. Even if Zhang Feng massacred Chang and city today, no one would care. What people care more about is how Zhang Feng will deal with the Tang family. Also, how should we deal with this phosphate fertilizer? In other words, Zhang Feng's decision today will directly affect the crown prince and his future path. Once he makes a decision, he will basically be labeled by all the major forces in the future. The crown prince consort was slightly shocked. Although Zhang Feng and the crown prince called each other brothers, there was still the relationship between the monarch and the minister. It was inevitable that people who knew him would recognize him. Moreover, this matter was already clear in front of some of the senior officials in the imperial court. Everyone was just afraid of the emperor's orders. However, if Zhang Feng were to act rashly and wipe out the entire Tang family, then the power behind the Tang family would be extremely dissatisfied. Thus, the crown prince would also be affected. However, if Zhang Feng were to soften his heart and let the Tang family go, then the consequences would only be more unfavorable. The crown prince consort couldn't help but become nervous. But Hou Junji was an old fox and he was in no rush. He began to leisurely admire the osmanthus flowers as if they were some sort of extraordinary object. The crown prince consort asked in surprise, "Father doesn't seem to be worried at all? Did you already make a decision?" Hou Junji plucked a bouquet of osmanthus flowers and handed it to the crown prince consort. "At this time, His Imperial Majesty has decreed that we can only sit and wait for the result. It all depends on what Tubo and Tuyuhun think." "What? How could this matter have anything to do with Tubo and Tuyuhun?" The crown prince consort was alarmed. Hou Junji smiled. "Do you still remember the several thousand craftsmen that His Imperial Majesty sent to Tubo and Tuyuhun to deal with the drought and locust plague? In truth, these people are called craftsmen, but they are actually spies of my great Tang. But not even His Majesty knows of this. It was because of their infiltration that the Tang clan's foreign faction, which was on the verge of death, was revived. This is the Tang clan's trump card. But it seems like old Tang House plan is about to fail." The crown prince consort was even more confused. What's going on here? Could it be that His Imperial Majesty sent someone from the Tang clan? Hou Junji said nothing. Instead, he looked up at the setting sun and said, "If my guess is correct, His Imperial Majesty should have received a memorial by now, right?" At the same time, the Secretariat had also received an urgent memorial. The moment they received the memorial, they were alarmed and hastily sent someone to invite Fang Xianling back to the Secretariat. As soon as Fang Xianling entered the Secretariat, everyone in the Secretariat gathered outside his office. Fang Xianling frowned and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" "Master Fang, you should first take a look at this urgent memorial from the Longyu Circuit." Fang Xianling was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly took the memorial from the man's hand and read it carefully. Fang Xuanling's face suddenly changed. He hastily shouted, "Quickly prepare a sedan chair. Old man wants to enter the palace to meet His Imperial Majesty." Chapter 1392. At the Tang residence near the Gate of Golden Light in Chang and West City. At the Tang residence. Because of Zhang Feng's arrival, all the people in Chang and quickly gathered around. Tang House seemed to be in no hurry at all. Along with hundreds of servants, he surrounded the residence and confronted Zhang Feng. Cheng Chumo and the others let loose, pointing at Tang Hao's nose and cursing him. How could the Tang family members take it? They started cursing at each other as well. They looked like shrews cursing on the street. However, Tang Hao still ignored him. Zhang Feng also ignored them. Zhang Feng could vaguely sense that Tang Hao was too calm. He frowned and asked, "Old Yu Ligan, do you know if the Wang clan will stand up at this time?" Yu Qigong thought for a moment and said, "I don't think so." As long as the Wang family has a brain and doesn't want to make an enemy of the emperor, he won't stand up. Zhang Feng nodded and pointed at Tang Hao. Then tell me, who is he waiting for? Yuchi Gong, Li Gan, and the others immediately realized where the problem lay. However, even though they knew a lot of secrets, they did not know what other methods the Tang family possessed. If there were any, it would be because of their friendship with the retired emperor. However, at this time, the retired emperor did not say anything. In other words, what their Tang family had done this time around had indeed caused the retired emperor to be furious. Otherwise, the retired emperor's men would have sent a secret memorial to him by now. At this moment, two people hurriedly squeezed through the crowd. The person in the lead was Li Shimin's eunuch, Xiao Gizi. Xiao Gizi and Zhang Feng bowed, then looked at Yuchi Gong and Li Qingqian. Young Master Li, Old Master Yu, Second Master has something to tell you. He wants you to hurry back. The three of them were shocked when they heard that. Something to tell them at this time? What could it be? Zhang Feng didn't think much of it. In his opinion, the two of them were called back because the emperor had something important to tell them. Could it be that the emperor and the retired emperor wanted to protect the Tang family? After all, in his opinion, if the emperor didn't want to protect the Tang family, then there was no need for him to send people to investigate the Tang family before he came. Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask, "Hey, did Lao Li mention anything about this place?" When Xiao Gizi heard this, he looked at Zhang Feng strangely and then looked at Li Qingqian. He then said, "Prince Zhang, Second Master said before that you have full authority to handle the matters here. However, this is just the beginning." Later on, he suddenly received something and hurriedly had Elder Yu and young Master Li return. "As for the matters here, you should wait first." "Alright, I'll wait." When Zhang Feng heard this, he instantly understood most of the situation. Something had happened to the emperor. In other words, the emperor wanted to protect the Tang family? After they left, Zhang Feng glanced around and saw that Feng Ong from the Ministry of Justice was still standing to the side. He couldn't help but ask, "Lord Feng, you heard what they said just now. Then what about the matters here?" As he spoke, Zhang Feng glanced behind Feng Ong. How could Feng Ong not understand Zhang Feng's meaning? He gritted his teeth and said, "Prince Zhang, after all, this official still has some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. I hope Prince Zhang won't be impatient. We'll be back soon." As he spoke, Feng Ong hurriedly led the people from the Ministry of Justice away. What a joke. The emperor's favorite, Xiao Gizi, had already spoken. At this time, Zhang Feng also spoke. It was obvious that he wanted to make a move. At this time, the emperor called the two of them away. It was clear that he didn't want to get involved in this matter. Then what was he doing here? If he didn't leave now, when would he leave? After everyone had left, the crowd's discussion grew even louder, and Tang Hao's gaze gradually turned cold. He didn't expect that they would leave at this time. What was the meaning of this? At this time, Zhang Feng called out to Cheng Chumo and the others, who were blushing with anger. Cheng Chumo was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. "Fengzi, that brat's mouth is too cheap. He actually dared to call you a motherless bastard. Wait for Lao Tzu to tear him apart alive." "Who said that?" Before Zhang Feng could speak, Gao Can shouted angrily. This shout startled Cheng Chumo. He looked at the red-eyed Gao Can with a trembling voice and swallowed with difficulty. He avoided Gao Can's gaze and pointed at a thin-lipped middle-aged man from the Tang family. "It's him. If you have the guts, go find him. Don't shout at me." Gao Can heard this and clenched his fists. Zhang Feng didn't stop him. Instead, he looked at Cheng Chumo and said, "Lao Li just sent a message. He said that he has something important to discuss. You guys should go and listen." Hearing this, Wei Shuyu and the others instantly noticed that Li Qingqian and Yu Qigong were gone. They hurriedly said, "But if you leave, won't you be at a disadvantage?" Zhang Feng pointed at Old Ma and the others behind him and said, "Don't tell me you think that Old Ma and the others can't crush this group of ants? Go." Cheng Chumo and the others weren't willing to. However, Zhang Feng's face instantly turned cold and he shouted, "Get lost." Hearing this, the few of them walked away, turning their heads back every few steps. After they left, Zhang Feng waved his hand and called Old Ma and the others over. He asked, "Are Jia Daoren and the others here?" "Old Master, we've been here for a long time." At this moment, Zhang Feng finally noticed that Jia Daoren was holding a kitchen knife, and Zheng Tufu had been standing behind him for a long time. This gave Zhang Feng a big fright. No wonder he felt a chill down his spine. So that's what happened. Zhang Feng touched Tufu Zheng's bloody knife and said speechlessly, "Don't point this thing at me." "President Zhang, what do you mean by this? Do you really want to kill the entire Tang family in front of all the people of Chang'an?" Chapter 1393. In an instant, all the onlookers were in an uproar. What did that mean? Did they slaughter the whole Tang family? And in front of all the people in Chang'an City? Could it be, in an instant? All the onlookers were in an uproar. Damn it. It seems that the people of the Ministry of Justice were sent away just now. Could it be that Prince Jiang and President Jiang really want to kill people on the street? I think it's possible. President Jiang is kind-hearted, but what the Tang family did was really a bit too much. You didn't see the situation in Mount Shao today. The whole place is in chaos. You should know that group of hooligans, but they beat up everyone they saw in Mount Shao today. And anyone who dares to say a good word about President Jiang will be beaten up by them. What? That's outrageous. They are so arrogant. Are the runners sent to Mount Shao by the Chang and local government just for show? For show? You don't know. Where are the people of the local government? They were all kidnapped by them. This terrifying? Are they so arrogant? Do you think you all know Chen Wanli, the son of Chen Tong, the manager of Hengtong Money House? Yes, I know. Didn't that guy do a paper business with Hengtong Money House? I heard that it was very popular and made a lot of money. But, I know. Today, Chen Wanli is holding a funeral in his mansion. Now President Jiang is wearing mourning clothes in person. Is Chen Wanli gone? In an instant, all the people knew the cause and effect of the matter, and the people of the Tang family also heard the discussion. In an instant, some of the people of the Tang family panicked, and more of them wanted to leave. At this time, Tang Hao's face became a little gloomy. EFO raised his sleeve and said, "Shut up, all of you. What does the death of Chen Tong's son have to do with old man? Didn't I transmigrate from Mount E some time ago and someone died of poisoning because he was tinkering with that phosphate fertilizer? Is this also because of me? This matter wasn't done by that brat of yours." Zhang Feng interrupted Tang Hao. Instantly, Tang Hao's expression changed drastically. Before he spoke, Zhang Feng did not speak. At such a crucial moment, Zhang Feng interrupted him. What was the meaning of this? Instantly, all the citizens began to discuss again. Zhang Feng shouted, "Everyone! I'm sure everyone knows about the mask that has been circulating recently, right?" "That's right. That thing was indeed created by me, but do you know what it is used for? That thing is used to isolate poisonous things. Only when the poisonous things are broken down will the remaining things be non-poisonous and useful to the Zhuang family." Tang Hao laughed and said, "What a glib tongue. What's poisonous is poisonous. How can this thing be decomposed? Brat, if you want to impose a crime, just say it. Why do you have to do this?" Zhang Feng already knew that he would say this. He smiled coldly and said, "I'm sure everyone knows about latrines? And they're latrines that are always closed. The smell of the phosphate fertilizer is similar to that thing. I'd like to ask everyone, what will happen if we spend too much time in the latrines? What will happen if one of you spend a night in the latrines? Will you feel dizzy and nauseous? Dare I ask if anyone here has poured night incense in the imperial palace? If there is, please tell us if this Zhang is right or wrong." In an instant, everyone was shocked. There really were a few people who had been involved in this matter who spoke of this matter. In an instant, Tang Hao's face gradually darkened. He looked at Zhang Feng and said, "Even if your phosphate fertilizer really doesn't poison people, how can you prove that the grain grown from your phosphate fertilizer isn't poisonous?" Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "I'd like to ask if Patriarch Tang has ever used farm fertilizer on your crops? In other words, night incense fertilizer? If you have used it, is Patriarch Tang well? If you haven't used it, have you ever used the latrines? Has that place ever poisoned Patriarch Tang?" In an instant, everyone was in an uproar. After all, they were all farmers who dealt with the Zhuang family. How could they not know about this matter? The matter of Dr. Sun eating yellow ginger on the street and Zhang Feng's statement on the street today instantly made everyone understand the truth of the matter. However, they also instantly realized that there seemed to be something wrong with this matter. That was, did this matter have anything to do with the Tang family? If it had nothing to do with the Tang family, what was President Zhang doing? But it was impossible to say that it had nothing to do with the Tang family. The emperor and the people from the Ministry of Justice couldn't just ignore it. Moreover, they had handed the matter over to Zhang Feng. Most importantly, the four great Confucian scholars and Dr. Sun were all on Zhang Feng's side. On one side were the emperor, the Ministry of Justice, the Chang and local government, the four great Confucian scholars and Dr. Sun, and on the other side was the unruly and domineering Tang family. For a moment, the truth of this matter had been revealed to the world. Moreover, the young master of the Tang family was an existence that everyone in Chang and city wanted to beat up. If you were to say that he was capable of doing such a thing, it would really be his style. After all, every autumn after the harvest, the tenant farmers of the Tang family would often receive such treatment from the Tang family. For a moment, all the people on the street who had been persecuted by the Tang family hid far away and criticized the Tang family for their persecution over the years. The people of the Tang family and the servants finally retreated slowly at this time. Seeing this, Tang Hao's eyes became a little cold. He looked at Zhang Feng and asked coldly, "Zhang Feng, do you really want to commit murder on the street?" Zhang Feng spread his hands and said, "In comparison, I, Zhang Feng, am not interested in killing people. I'm just here for revenge." Chapter 1394. Tang Hao heard this. Tang Hao narrowed his eyes. "Revenge? Aren't you afraid of the authorities? Are you going to defy the law like this? How can someone like you be called a great scholar? How can you be the director of a hospital?" Zhang Feng ignored Tang Hao. He patted Gao Ken on the shoulder and said, "Gao Ken, who did Tainyo say was scolding me?" "It's him." Gao Ken angrily pointed at the middle-aged man and roared. Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Then go." "How dare you? Zhang Feng, this is the Tang family. How can you kill people here?" "Guards, if anyone dares to take a step forward, kill them." Hearing this, old Ma directly raised his arm and shouted, "Protect the director. If anyone dares to come close, kill them." Kill. In an instant, more than 60 people wearing white shirts with the words "White Deer Security" embroidered on their chests stood in front of Zhang Feng, surrounding him behind them. How could these random guards compare to that aura? When the commoners saw this, they quickly retreated in shock. Gao Ken was like an iron tower. Naturally, he was taller than ordinary people. At this time, the burly men of the Tang family were like strong lambs in front of Gao Kansas. How could they stop Gao Ken? In addition, Gao Ken had trained in the army for a month. At this time, although he was not good at weapons, he still gave people a very oppressive feeling even if he was barehanded. "Zhang Feng, you bastard, what do you want to do?" The middle-aged man and Tang Hao almost shouted in anger at the same time. However, Zhang Feng acted as if he didn't hear anything. He turned around and cupped his fists towards the people behind him. "Everyone, today Zhang Feng is here to seek justice for my brother and also to take revenge. Moreover, I came here with the Emperor's imperial edict. However, the Tang family refused to cooperate and even insulted me. That's fine, but just a moment ago, I heard that the people accused the Tang family of taking bribes and bending the law. Not only that, they also committed many crimes over the years. I, Zhang Feng, as the Viscount of Xingshan, should share the Emperor's burden. Today I, Zhang Feng, am here to investigate. You have also seen that the Tang family not only did they block the Ministry of Justice's Assistant Minister Feng Ong from investigating, they also tried to use force to intimidate us. What is this? This is a crime of treason." As he spoke, Zhang Feng unfolded the imperial edict. In an instant, the crowd of people all knelt down. Zhang Feng raised the imperial edict and said, "Today the emperor has issued an imperial edict. He wants me, Zhang Feng, to handle this matter impartially. The people who have been bullied by the Tang family in the past can report to me. Today I, Zhang Feng, will redress the grievances of the people." Wow. In an instant, all the people were shocked. Although everyone witnessed it with their own eyes, the Tang family was said to be related to the imperial family. Therefore, up until now, when people criticized them, they only dared to say it in the crowd. They did not dare to do it openly because they were afraid that the Tang family would seek revenge at this time. If that happened, people would really die. But now, at this moment, along with a shrill scream, the crowd was shocked. Everyone was shocked and turned to look at the place where the scream came from. They saw that the thin-mouthed middle-aged man of the Tang family who had insulted Zhang Feng before was now raised high by the man. His neck was bent to the side unnaturally. At this moment, the crowd could still hear the sound of bones breaking and the torso being stretched continuously. For a moment, a chill suddenly spread in the hearts of the Tang family and the people. Seeing this, Tang Hao instantly asked in a shrill voice, "Zhang Feng, the Tang family and you have no grievances in the past. Why do you have to kill all of us?" "Kill all of us?" Zhang Feng sneered and said, "Recently, if it weren't for Qian Wanli's name, the people who killed all of us were your people, right?" Tang Hao's face changed and he hurriedly said, "Old man said that today's matter has nothing to do with the Tang family. Why are you being so overbearing?" "I'm aggressive?" Zhang Feng pointed in the direction of the academy and said, "I, Zhang Feng, have never offended anyone and I don't want to offend anyone. On Shao Mountain, which is far away from trouble, I just want to set up an academy to educate people and live a peaceful life. But what did the Tang family do today? I Zhang Feng have never held back anything that I have made. I have used all of it on the people. I want to ask the Tang family, isn't the purpose of today's event the phosphate fertilizer? Isn't it because you know the method to double the output and want to take it for yourself? Don't be in a hurry to deny it because there are many people on Shao Mountain today and that little bastard of the Tang family has already told me the truth. Humph. How can the crime of rape be without a pretext? Does the Tang family need to do this? This is just the result of your torture. You can say whatever you want now. Why do you need to explain to us? Don't be hypocritical, Zhang Feng. Tell me, how do you want to take revenge? Do you want to kill everyone in the Tang family before you're willing to stop? I Tang Hao also told you that this matter was indeed ordered by me. How can these lowly people deserve such things? Do they deserve it? To tell you the truth, it's not just this matter. In fact, the Tang family has been plotting against you for a long time. This time it's just a test. Do you think that only the Tang family is involved in this matter? Let me tell you. You think too simply. You can't afford to offend people who want your life. Chapter 1395. At the same time, in the Imperial Study, Li Shimin looked at the reports one by one, his face so gloomy that it was about to drip water. Tubo, Hari City's Tang dynasty informants were exposed. Lesa City, the stronghold, was destroyed, all of the informants were killed. Chilin's spies were burned by a mysterious person. All of the important documents in the past few years disappeared. Many of our colleagues in Tuyuhung Girmu, Domar, and other places have been annihilated, and it all happened in one night. Li Shimin heard this and angrily slammed the table, shouting, "When did this happen? Why did the news only come out today?" Seeing this, those small yellow doors were instantly scared half to death. They hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, this all happened 5 days ago, and it all happened overnight." Overnight, all the important secret memorials and other things in these places disappeared, and the remaining things were all burned down. Even the method was the same. Hearing this, Wei Zheng, Li Qingqian, and the others' hearts sank. In one night, the method was the same, and all of the important and confidential documents disappeared. They had come prepared. Who could it be? Li Shimin lit a cigarette and asked with trembling hands, "Did you find out who did it?" Replying to Your Majesty, there were no clues left in the places where the families were destroyed, but there was a strange thing. There was a businessman surnamed Tang who would open his business in a high-profile manner the next day, and it was all grain at half price. Tang family. Tang family again. I should have thought it was the Tang family. Li Shimin's face was instantly filled with killing intent. "All of you leave." After everyone left, Li Shimin once again wandered around the Imperial Study. After a while he asked, "Everyone, have you ever thought about whether this Tang family is this Tang family?" Previously, if Li Yuan hadn't told Li Shimin some of the secrets of the Tang family, Li Shimin really wouldn't have guessed. But now, combined with what he was doing and what Yu Qigong had said, this Tang family seemed to be waiting for something, not afraid of Zhang Feng and not even afraid of the Imperial Edict. He had a guess. Now the truth was out. Thinking of this, Li Shimin asked, "Do Ruhui quickly investigate from the drought to the plague of locusts? How many spies were sent to Tubo and Tuyuhun, and how many of them were from the Tang family?" Hearing this, Du Ruhui hurriedly went to investigate. A moment later, Du Ruhui entered the Imperial Study with a list of names and said, "Your Majesty, in total, more than 3,000 people have been sent out. Most of them are from the local factions of Guanzhong and people loyal to Your Majesty, but this Tang family seems to have less than 100 people. 100. This time, Li Shimin finally understood. Although there were only 100 people, it seemed that these 100 people had linked the plan together. Moreover, if they were to interact with these people, it wouldn't be difficult to find out who was sent this time. As long as there was someone who wanted to do something, then, in addition, he had just received a secret report that the Tang family had been selling firearms in recent years, so there was no need to think about it. "Your Majesty, this subject has something to say." Zhang Sun Wuji stood up and said. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Speak." This subject thinks that the Tang family might be the ones who destroyed the secret outposts in Tubo and Tuyuhun. This subject agrees. This subject also agrees. Hearing this, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and the others all stood up and said. Li Shimin frowned slightly. Such a big matter couldn't be a coincidence, but more like someone was planning something. Cheng Yaojin saw this and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, I don't think this is Kong Yingda's doing. Although he is usually a little arrogant, he wouldn't be able to do something like this." But under Li Shimin's glare, he hurriedly took back his words. Li Shimin nodded. "You're right. As long as Kong Yingda isn't crazy, he wouldn't do something like this. Reporting. At this moment, a Jianghu guard rushed into the imperial study. Seeing that the officials were hesitating, Li Shimin said unhappily, "Speak. We just received news from the Tang residence. The head of the Tang family, Tang Hao, said in public that the Tang family wasn't the only one who dealt with Prince Jiang. Moreover, the head of the Tang family admitted his guilt in public." Li Shimin was shocked when he heard this and hurriedly asked, "Jinwu guard, did you find any strange or suspicious people outside the Tang residence?" The Jinwu guard cupped his fists and said, "We haven't found anything yet." This matter was a little strange. What exactly was Tang Hao thinking? Why was he so sure? Where did his courage come from? Li Shimin couldn't suppress his killing intent anymore. He said indifferently, "What did Zhang Feng say?" Prince Zhang said that he was just following the law and investigating Qian Wanli's murderer and the real culprit. Moreover, that person called Gao Can has already killed the person who insulted Prince Zhang. Prince Zhang is now seeking justice for the people and seems to want to. Li Shimin heard this and asked, "Everyone, what do you think should be done? Should we stop them?" Wei Zhang and the others were in a difficult position. It was reasonable to stop this matter and hand it over to Marble for interrogation. But if they left it alone, the academy wouldn't have a moment of peace in the future. They would fall into the Tang family's trap again. After thinking for a long time, Li Qingqian said, "Imperial Father, I think that this matter can't be delayed." Chapter 1396. In fact, when Li Shimin discussed this matter with Li Yuan, he had thought about the possibility of this. However, he never expected that such a thing would happen at this time. The matter of the Tibetan spies was something that he had planned for a long time. Furthermore, it was related to his grand plan of unifying Tibet in the future. If he really killed the people of the Tang clan, then the people of the Tang clan in Tibet would definitely reveal even more spies of the Great Tang. If that was the case, it was not good for the current situation. If the Tibetans were enraged and mobilized their troops, the Great Tang would be in an even greater predicament. But if he did not do anything about it, not only would Zhang Feng's academy be unable to maintain, but there would be endless such things in the future. Once such a precedent was set, the mastermind behind this would be more unscrupulous. Who was the mastermind behind this? Li Shimin slammed his fist on the table, scaring Wei Zhang and the others. They hurriedly got up, bowed and stood in place, not daring to move. Moreover, this matter was extremely troublesome even for them. They did not dare to make a decision lightly, let alone the emperor. Yuqigong, tell me your thoughts. Also, what exactly happened in the military camp? Yuqigong hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, this is the confession of the Tangs and those scoundrels." As he spoke, he handed over a blood-stained memorial. Li Shimin frowned slightly and said, "Did you torture them?" "Well, the Tangs didn't torture them. They were just a few scoundrels who made the most noise." Hearing this, Li Shimin nodded and read it 3 times without missing a word. The more he read, the more he could not suppress the anger in his heart. After a while, Li Shimin was furious and said, "Guards, check all the properties of the Tangs. Anyone surnamed Tang in Chang, and should be handed over to the Ministry of Justice for strict interrogation. Everyone related to this matter should be investigated. Anyone who dares to stop me should be killed. As for the Tangs, let Fengzi deal with them himself." When Wei Zhang heard this, he hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, you can't. The Tang family is involved in a lot of things, and there must be a mastermind behind all this. It will only make things worse. Moreover, the Tang family members who are scattered outside are even more numerous. Your Majesty, please reconsider. How many can there be? Catch as many as you can." Li Shimin waved his sleeve and said, "Zhen has decided. Hurry up and do it." Wei Zhang sighed bitterly. Fang Xianling hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, Kong Yingda was wrongly accused in this matter." "Did Kong Yingda?" Speaking of Kong Yingda, Li Shimin felt a headache coming on. If you want to kill him, then so be it. He really couldn't kill him. Let's not kill him, right? This old fellow really likes to jump around. After thinking for a while, Li Shimin said, "Pass down the decree. Let Kong Yingda write a memorial and hand it over. Go back to your hometown. No one from the Kong family is allowed to step into Chang, and for the rest of their lives. Anyone who dares to plead for mercy will end up like this." At the Tang mansion, everyone was in a state of panic. People kept coming to Zhang Feng's place to denounce the Tang family for doing all kinds of evil things to them. Niu Weili also came in a hurry. As long as he could prove it, he would investigate on the spot. Then he would chain up no less than 10 people. The gate of the Tang mansion was still blocked by people. However, there were very few people behind Tang Hao. Tang Hao didn't seem to care too much about this. Instead he looked straight at Zhang Feng. After the last person in charge of the Tang family behind him was taken away, Niu Weili stood in front of him and scolded, "Tang Hao, someone accused you of killing Tu Laosan and his family of 3 years ago at the 10-mile slope. How do you explain this? And just now the Yamen runners dug up 9 skeletons there. How do you explain this?" Tang Hao looked at Niu Weili with disdain and said, "I did it. What are you going to do about it? As a slave you should have the consciousness of a slave. You dared to dirty old man's clothes. It's normal to want the lives of his family. Lord Niu, what do you want to do? Do you want the old man to pay with his life for those 9 bastards? Why don't you ask them if they deserve it?" Niu Weili was in a dilemma. Although he did want to arrest Tang Hao, and what Tang Hao did today was witnessed by everyone, it was reasonable for him to be detained. However, Zhang Feng was here and he was the one in charge. Niu Weili couldn't overstep his authority. He quickly asked, "Prince Zhang, what do you think we should do about this?" Zhang Feng stared into Tang Hao's eyes and said, "A debt must be paid with money. A life must be paid with a life. This is an iron law since ancient times. Do you still need to ask me about this?" Niu Weili was in a dilemma. But what? I was ordered to come here today to kill him. If you don't have the heart to do it, I'll do it." Hearing this, Niu Weili was sweating profusely. Seeing this, Zhang Feng glanced at Niu Weili and said, "Old Ma, come on, kill him." Old Ma had wanted to do this for a long time. However, he didn't dare to act rashly without Zhang Feng's permission. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng shouting, many people shouted and wanted to kill Tang Hao with their own hands. Among them, Gao Can made the most noise. However, he was stopped by Zhang Feng. At this time, Tang Hao finally panicked. He hurriedly shouted, "Zhang Feng, do you dare to kill me? Believe it or not, in another hour, the emperor will definitely withdraw the order." At this time Li Xiaogong, who still came late, said indifferently, "You can't wait. Zhang Feng boy, the emperor said that everything is up to you." Chapter 1397. Hiss. When everyone heard this they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. No one expected that Li Xiaogong would give such an order. When the commoners heard this, most of them cheered wildly for the emperor. Tang Hao, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. He looked at Li Xiaogong and shouted, "That's impossible. The emperor would never say that. Li Xiaogong, how dare you falsify the imperial edict? How should you be punished?" "I don't accept this. I want to see the emperor." "Zhang Feng, you dare to kill me today. Do you know that I know that you will kill me today? But do you know that if you kill me today, many things about the Tujue and the Tuyuhun will be exposed to the world? Can you bear the responsibility if the world is in turmoil?" "Zhang Feng, you said that you are doing this for the benefit of the people. You are simply putting the people of the Tang dynasty in a terrible situation. Zhang, you let go of the old man. The old man has something to say." Zhang Fengli couldn't be bothered with him. He bowed respectfully to Li Xiao and said, "Lord Li, is what he said true?" Li Xiaogong gave him a brief summary of what the emperor had said and the information he had received today. When Zhang Feng heard this, he instantly understood what Tang Hao was using as a shield. He was simply courting death. He thought that Tang Hao would have something powerful to rely on. It turned out that he was testing the waters on the verge of death. Since the emperor could think of the same things as Zhang Feng, this matter was equivalent to Zhang Feng's scheme. How could he not have a backup plan if he could think of so many things? Did he really think that he could use the small clues that his Tang family had discovered as a means to threaten the emperor? This was simply, what an idiot. Li Xiaogong seemed to know about Zhang Feng's plan. He could not help but ask, "I heard that this plan is exactly as you guessed? If that's the case, what do you plan to do?" Zhang Feng rubbed his forehead. "Today I came here for my brother. As for the rest, even if it's a big matter, let's talk about it another day." Hearing this, Li Xiaogong didn't know what else to say. He cupped his fists and left in a hurry. He seemed to have gone to report on his mission. As for Zhang Feng, he never liked killing people, but if they dared to provoke him, there was nothing he could say. At this moment, Gao Can led his men and charged in. Niu Weili also led a large group of bailiffs and White Deer College's security guards and charged in. Only Jing Tufu and Shiva were left behind, glaring at Zhang Feng like tigers watching their prey. As for the commoners, they surrounded Tang Hao and sent him to the canal by the roadside. Before Old Ma could do anything, Tang Hao was already on the verge of death. Old Ma was also injured. Old Ma was so angry that he tied Tang Hao to a willow tree by the canal and stood aside, ignoring him. At this moment, how could the furious commoners wait any longer? They all went forward, punching and kicking. As they beat, they cried and shouted. Some even went up to Tang Hao and bit him. In an instant Tang Hao, who had fainted from the pain, woke up and screamed miserably, "Zhang Feng, you son of a b*****. If you have the ability, give Lao Tzu a quick death. Please let my wife and children go. I'll tell you everything." Ah. Just as Zhang Feng was about to agree, Zhang Feng turned his head and saw an old woman ruthlessly piercing Tang Hao's eye socket with her walking stick. In an instant, Tang Hao struggled for a moment and stopped moving. Zhang Feng was depressed. He vented his anger. He hurriedly shouted, "Don't smash his head. We still have to pay respects to Wanli later." At Tang Mansion, everything went smoothly. Moreover, the main culprit had been executed. Zhang Feng did not want to continue the killing. Anyway, the Tang family was not clean. He would leave it to Niu Weili and the Ministry of Justice to deal with. Tang Hao's head was placed in a broken gunny sack by old Ma and handed to Zhang Feng. Blood was still dripping from the head. Zhang Feng carried the head without hesitation. Once again he led the pale-faced Ma Zhou and the rest to Qian Wanli's mansion. Zhang Feng glanced at Ma Zhou and asked, "Do you think I went overboard?" Ma Zhou and the rest looked at the head that was still dripping with blood and the commoners who were excitedly cheering with firecrackers. They nodded their heads. "Teacher, I think it's best to leave this matter to the authorities." Zhang Feng glanced at Hao Chujun and the rest. Seeing that they had the same thoughts as Ma Zhou, he could not help but sigh. "You haven't learned enough. This matter can indeed be left to the authorities. However, do you know that the one who died was your brother? You and Wanli are all my brothers. If I don't personally deal with this matter today, do you think the Academy will be able to live peacefully in the future? It won't. Because those with ulterior motives will think that the people of the Academy are easy to bully. What happened today will happen again. As for who will be next, I don't know. However, I don't want to lose any of you. This is the main reason why I took action today. Firstly, it is to seek justice for Wanli. Secondly, it is to tell the world that White Deer College is under the protection of me, Zhang Feng. Whoever dares to cause trouble will have to go through me, Zhang Feng. Chapter 1398. Master, someone just said that President Zhang killed Wanli personally. Now the Tang family has been massacred by President Zhang and Zhang Feng. Tang Hao was also beaten to death by the people. At this moment, Zhang Feng is rushing here. Should we? No. My nephew can't die in vain. This is all because of that bastard Zhang Feng. If it weren't for him, how could Wanli be in such a mess? Beat Zhang Feng to death to avenge my brother. After the butler told them about what had happened to Zhang Feng, the Qian family who heard the news were instantly furious. Basically, they didn't allow Zhang Feng to come. After all, before Qian Wanli was just an ordinary person. But now, Qian Wanli was equivalent to the hope of the Qian family's rise. Moreover, Qian Wanli's business was not limited to just this little bit. One had to know that although the higher-ups had already given him the title of Baron of County, compared to the glorious road that Wanli could bring to the family in the future, this title was nothing. Qian Tong listened to the angry voices, looked at the crying madam and then looked at the coffin. He sighed and said, "Because of Prince Zhang's care, the Qian family can be said to have risen to the clouds. If it weren't for Prince Zhang's approval for Wanli's sake, do you think that the Qian family would be qualified to touch the sales of white paper?" He had stayed in Chang, and for a long time. Naturally, he knew some of the secrets. Although he didn't know who was selling white paper in the other shops, those shops were all owned by the royal family and the dukes. One could only imagine who would be able to buy these shops. If Zhang Feng could give him the right to sell white paper, how could he, a small businessman, do that? This matter is Wanli's bad luck. Prince Zhang is always Wanli's teacher. Today, Prince Zhang can cause havoc in Chang and city for Wanli. Our Qian family is satisfied. But, big brother, Wanli is the hope of our Qian family. At this time, a man who looked quite similar to Qian Tong, but was slightly thin and dark, said with some anger. At this moment, two other men and women who looked similar to Qian Tong also gathered around. Although our Qian family isn't a big family or a famous official, we still have some influence in Chang and the surrounding areas. Today, Wanli's nephew and disciple met with such an accident. We really can't take this lying down. And big brother, you only have Wanli, alas. Qian Tong at this time, when he thought of this matter. Let's not talk about this anymore. Besides, even if my Wanli is no longer around, don't we still have the skewers? Hearing this, everyone's eyes couldn't help but burst into a burst of bitterness. That was right. Qian Wanli did Wanli. He was only 3 years away from Wanli. Wanli was a child Qian Tong had when he was away, but this child had some problems with his IQ. Although he was brought back to Chang, and in his early years, he had been unable to enter the family tree. This was also a person the Qian family didn't dare to mention. They were afraid of losing face. At this time, Qian Wanli was so outstanding that no one dared to mention the Qian family. But now Qian Tong took the initiative to mention it. How could everyone not be sad? Brother, why do you have to do this? Alas. Qian Tong waved his hand and sighed. Okay, everything is fine. Zhang Feng is the benefactor of our Qian family. He was, is, and will be. I don't want today's matter to happen again. If anyone dares to mention this in the future, I, Qian Tong, will definitely cut off all ties with them. Also, after Wanli's matter is over, we sisters should talk about the county baron title first. It is more appropriate to give it to our nephew. The county baron title. This was the main purpose of the Qian family today. Their purpose. It was for this. As for paying homage to Qian Wanli, that was just an excuse. They wanted to take the opportunity to fish for some benefits from Zhang Feng. After all, they were all businessmen, and they had already enjoyed the benefits of this white paper business. Wanli's death was bound to cut off this business. This was something they didn't dare to think about. If they missed out on this money tree, what could be more profitable than this? Furthermore, Zhang Feng had more than these things in his hands. He also had the even more attractive phosphate fertilizer. This was also the culprit that caused Qian Wanli's death. Once they got their hands on this thing, they would be rich. But even though they had good intentions, Qian Tong wasn't a fool. Zhang Feng could kill so many people in Chang'an today, and the imperial palace didn't care. What did this mean? This meant that the people in the imperial palace were paying attention to this matter, and it was the imperial palace who had blocked all of this. Otherwise, who would dare act so presumptuously in front of the Son of Heaven? Moreover, how could he, Qian Tong, not know what these relatives who had never met for 8 lifetimes were thinking? Qian Tong burned the paper in his hand and said, Today's matter, I, Qian Tong, will make it clear in front of Wanli. What Prince Zhang gave me I will keep, and what I can't take I won't take a single word. If anyone dares to ask Prince Zhang for anything in front of me or behind my back, even if I have to risk my life, I will settle accounts with them. Chapter 1399. Qian Tong's words instantly caused an uproar. No one knew what Qian Tong was thinking. After all, at this time, his son had died because of Zhang Feng. At this time, it was not excessive to ask for his son's death. But why would Qian Tong give up? This was very unreasonable. Moreover, the purpose of everyone coming here today was for this matter. Now that Qian Tong said this, didn't it mean that their plans had fallen through? In an instant, everyone's thoughts couldn't help but become lively. Some people even began to feel angry and anxious because of this matter. Big brother, you're confused. Think about it, this is what Zhang Feng owes our Qian family. If it weren't for him, how could Wanli have died? We're all doing this for you. Big brother, if you don't want to think about yourself, then think about it. What if, after 100 years, you become a traitor? Would? Impudence. Qian Tong roared furiously. In an instant, there was no more sound in the entire Qian house. Even Madame Qian, who was crying and burning joss paper for Qian Wanli, stopped crying. What are you shouting for? You sisters quarrel as soon as you meet, haven't you quarreled enough for several decades? Today Wanli's classmate has come to our Qian family as a guest, so how can you elders be so ridiculous? At this moment, old Madame Qian's angry voice sounded from the backyard. In an instant the expressions of Qian Tong and the others changed slightly. Qian Tong hurried over to the old lady and said, Mother, what are you doing here? It's windy here, quickly help the old lady back. The old lady was a little dizzy, as if there was a layer of mist covering her eyes, but at this time she stubbornly hit Qian Tong's hand and asked in confusion, Tong, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you all wearing white? Isn't this nonsense? Today is Wanli's. Mother, Wanli is dead. A woman who looked very similar to Qian Tong couldn't help crying. Qian Tong heard this and hurriedly scolded, Qian Xiua, if you dare to talk nonsense in front of old madam again, do you believe I won't kick you out of the house today? Wait. When the old lady saw this, she hurriedly interrupted Qian Tong's words, staring at Qian Tong with her turbid eyes as she asked, Little goose, tell me what happened to Wanli? The old lady's eyes were blurred. But she was not confused. At this moment she was puzzled. Why did they all come back when it wasn't the New Year or any holiday? Moreover, they were all wearing mourning clothes. What was this for? Qian Tong glared at everyone, then hurriedly said, Mother, you heard wrong. That child Wanli is going to worship his ancestors. He said that the emperor bestowed upon him the title of baron, so I called all of them back and prepared to worship our ancestors. Qian Tong spouted some nonsense. Finally the old lady calmed down. However, the old lady wasn't muddle-headed. When she heard this, she asked even more suspiciously, Wanli? Where is Wanli? Where's Wanli? I want to hear from Wanli. That child Wanli wouldn't lie. Wanli, where are you? Come to Granny. Qian Tong heard this and tears poured out of his eyes. Mrs. Qian directly lay in front of Qian Wanli's coffin and cried silently. The Qian family finally realized that something was wrong at this time. They hurriedly tried to dissuade the old lady. The more they tried to dissuade her, the more suspicious the old lady became. Regardless of everyone's attempts to stop her, the old lady waved her crutches and let two young maidservants help her to the front of the hall. Just when everyone mistakenly thought that things couldn't be concealed anymore, Zhang Feng's voice sounded in a timely manner. Granny. After hearing this voice, the old lady finally calmed down. She followed the voice in surprise and walked towards Zhang Feng. Everyone in the Qian family looked at the bloody sack in Zhang Feng's hand and were shocked. Qian Tong hurriedly stepped forward, wanting to say something, but was stopped by Zhang Feng. This is the sacrifice I just asked for from the Tang family. While speaking, the old lady had already arrived in front of Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng grabbed the old lady and said, Granny, let's go to the backyard and talk. No. The old lady refused and shook her head again and again. I heard that you were rewarded by the emperor? Zhang Feng nodded and said, Yes. Our Qin family is now rich. I'm also a person with a noble title. Good. Let's go and pay respects to the ancestors of the Qin family. Without the blessings of our ancestors, how could our Qin family have such a good seedling like you? Let's go and pay respects to the ancestors. Qian Tong's tears never dried. If it was really his son standing here at this time, how good would that be? But, mother, there are guests in the front yard. Wanli should go to the front yard. With this reminder, the old lady remembered something important. She quickly pushed Zhang Feng and said, Oh right, our Qin family owes a lot to your dean. You have to go and take care of him. Don't leave him out in the cold. By the way, Tong, for such a big matter, we must be willing to spend money. We have to invite all the neighbors over to join in the fun. Zhang Feng suddenly saw the old lady's words and actions when he was admitted to the university. His heart ached and he said, Grandma, grandson wants to talk with you. Oh, there are so many guests. Zhang Feng took the old lady's hand and said, It's okay, the dean said that filial piety is the most important. If we are filial to Grandma, the dean will only praise us. Moreover, I also miss Grandma. Hearing this, the old lady smiled and her wrinkled face opened up. She hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng to her backyard. At this time, Qian Tong and the others looked at the direction Zhang Feng and the old lady went and then looked at the sack in their hands that was still dripping blood. They didn't need to think to know that it was a head. Being brought here by Zhang Feng, who else could it be but Tang Hao's head of the Tang family? Qian Tong sighed and looked at Zhang Feng's back as he left. What should come will come in the end. Chapter 1400. To put it bluntly, the backyard of the Qian family was just a small farmyard. There were 3 thatched cottages. Although the thatched cottages were incompatible with the splendor of the front yard, the interior was quite comfortable and elegant. The old lady sat on the bed and kept telling Zhang Feng about Qian Wanli's childhood, as well as listening to Zhang Feng's anecdotes about the academy on the mountain. Zhang Feng even personally made a dessert for the old lady. This time, the old lady was so happy that she kissed Zhang Feng's face again and again. After a while, the old lady said, Wanli, why do I feel that you have something on your mind? Zhang Feng was shocked and hurriedly said, Grandma, I don't. You can't hide it from me. Besides, you are a little different today, but I can't tell what is different. Maybe you are thinking about the teacher and students in the front yard? The old lady sighed with some annoyance and said, That's right. How can an old lady like me let you accompany me all the time? It is more important for you to accompany the guests. In the future, come back to see me more often. By the way, this dessert, when did you learn how to make it? Zhang Feng was shocked when he heard this. He didn't think about this matter, so he had to talk nonsense. Grandma, this is what the dean made for me when I was on the mountain. I memorized it and made it for the first time today. Hehe, my grandson has made a name for himself. Later I will find a marriage for you. She is from my family. I heard that although she is only 15 years old, she is not much worse than the concubines in the palace. I also heard from your great aunt a few days ago that there were officials who came several times and wanted your cousin to go to the palace. But I stopped them. The old lady said excitedly, How can I give such a good granddaughter-in-law to others? We are all family, of course we have to. Grandma. Zhang Feng was ashamed, and he felt even more uncomfortable in his heart. He hurriedly interrupted the old lady, Grandma, the teacher said that a man should put his studies first. The dean also said that 3 years later I will definitely be a Jinsher. That's why your grandson wants to wait until we've brought glory to our family before sitting down and waiting. When the old lady heard this, her eyes narrowed into slits. After a while, under the old lady's guidance, Zhang Feng pried open a loose stone. The old lady fumbled around and took out a palm-sized wooden box. She carefully opened it and said, "Wanli, this thing is a keepsake from when your grandfather and I first met when we were young. Rumor has it that it's an antique that has been passed down for hundreds of years. It's also a family heirloom of our Chen family. You also know what your father does, so I've never been willing to take it out. I've been thinking of giving it to you when you become successful and get married. But after hearing what you said, Grandma's memory is getting worse day by day. So, Grandma wants to give it to you now. I'm just afraid that we won't be able to wait for that day. That would be troublesome." This was an antique. Although Zhang Feng didn't know much about jade, this piece of jade that was as white as sugar and as transparent as glass was still shocking. This was definitely an antique, but the guilt in his heart was even more indescribable. "Grandma, are you confused again? You're in such good health. You'll definitely wait until your grandson gets married. Moreover, your grandson wants you to hold your great-grandson." "Really?" The old lady smiled even more kindly. She grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and leaned on Zhang Feng's cheek. She talked about Chen Wanli's childhood until the old lady fell into a deep sleep. Seeing this, Zhang Feng heaved a deep sigh of relief. He put the jade in the old lady's hand and covered her with a quilt. Then he walked out of the room quietly. He looked at the farm tools in the yard. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little frustrated. Today he wanted to avenge Chen Wanli. Although it was said to be impulsive, this was what he wanted to do. He wanted to tell the world that he, Zhang Feng's people, even if the heavenly king Lao Tzu came, he couldn't touch them. He really didn't dare to bear this kind of life and death parting. Leaning against a stone roller, Zhang Feng lit a cigarette and pondered. And at this moment, suddenly, a stone was thrown from a thatched cottage towards Zhang Feng. However, it didn't hit him. Instead, it fell beside Zhang Feng's feet. But this time it scared Zhang Feng half to death. He hurriedly took out the tri-edge bayonet and was on guard. He remembered. The entire Chen mansion, as well as the surroundings of the Chen mansion, should have been sorted out by old Ma and the others. What was this situation? Could it be? Was there an assassin hiding in this place? Zhang Feng didn't dare to talk nonsense, but he also didn't dare to make a move. He didn't practice martial arts. At this time he was already in a panic. But it was to the extent that Zhang Feng didn't have an instinctive reaction. He also wanted to see who could avoid the detection of old Ma and the others. Zhang Feng waited for a moment. He only heard some rustling sounds, but he didn't feel any danger. Then, he gathered his courage and slowly stood up to look at the place where the sound came from. However, when Zhang Feng stood up, instantly he was dumbfounded by the scene that he saw. Almost at the same time, Zhang Feng and the person opposite him asked in unison, "Who are you?" Chapter 1401. Not far in front of Zhang Feng, next to the sheep shed, a young man in tattered clothes was weaving straw sandals. It seemed like it was his first time seeing a stranger and he was a little scared. The young man looked similar to Chen Wanli, but he looked a little silly. This made Zhang Feng a little confused. What was going on? Zhang Feng asked carefully, "Who are you?" The young man saw the strange thing in Zhang Feng's hand and bit his fingers suspiciously. "Are you a bad person?" Zhang Feng was stunned. "I'm not." The young man nodded and continued weaving straw sandals. Zhang Feng gathered his courage and approached the young man, but the young man didn't mind. Zhang Feng sat beside the young man and watched him weave straw sandals. He asked curiously, "Everyone went to the front yard, why are you here?" "Grandma said that I should live here. The people in front are too fierce and always like to bully me. It's good here. With Grandma here I can eat my fill." Zhang Feng asked curiously, "What's your name?" "My name is String." "String?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. He asked suspiciously, "Your surname is Chen? You even know this? Did Chen tell you?" "Right, I just heard from Grandma that Chen is bringing his teacher to the mansion today." "Are you Chen teacher?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. "You said? Chen Wanli is called Chen? The young man nodded and said, "Yes, but Chen hasn't been called this name for a long time. Grandma told me." "Chen Tong. Chen? What kind of name is this? What kind of name is this? It's really a weirdo." The name Chen aroused Zhang Feng's interest. He asked, "Chen are you Chen Wanli's little brother? But why haven't I heard him mention it before?" When Qian Xiang'er heard this, she stomped her legs on the ground in grievance and said, I had always been outside with mother. 2 years ago, father sent someone to bring me back and said that mother went somewhere else. But father couldn't lie to me. Mother had always been lying there. She couldn't bear to eat the food I gave her. Zhang Feng's eyes stung. He chatted with Qian Xiang in detail. Only then did he understand everything about this kid. Qian Xian'er was the child Qian Tong had with a woman from Tongzhou when he was out doing business, but he had always been opposed by his family, especially by Qian Tong's sisters. It was also because of that incident that Zhang Feng had almost no contact with his sisters, and this time, Zhang Feng could basically imagine that it was all for the sake of money. The heavens would not give a person a surname for nothing. This was also the reason why the Qian family loved money so much. On one hand, it was because of the county baron title. On the other hand, the most important thing was that Zhang Feng had heard it before he entered the door. It was all to get benefits from him. As for Qian Xian'er's mother, before she fell seriously ill, she sent a message to Qian Tong, but by the time Qian Tong arrived, Qian Xian'er's mother had already been dead for a long time. There was nothing he could do. In addition, Qian Xian'er's mother had been careful. She had asked a merchant in Chang, and who knew Qian Tong to pass the message. If Qian Tong didn't go, then Qian Tong would definitely bear the infamy of being ungrateful and abandoning his wife and child. So Qian Tong had no choice but to take Qian Xian'er back to the house. If it weren't for Qian Xian'er's mental retardation, the old lady would have definitely added him to the family tree. However, this child was born somewhat mentally retarded, and even the soft-hearted old lady had a headache. Let him go. This was the Qian house, and the Qian family was considered a famous family in Chang'an. Moreover, those children always bullied him. Even the servants liked to bully him. With no other choice, Qian Xian'er moved to the old lady's house and relied on her for survival. This courtyard originally didn't have any sheep, but Qian Xian'er desperately wanted this sheep, so Qian Tong got a sheep to accompany Qian Xian'er. Zhang Feng curiously asked, Xian'er, what do you want a sheep for? Also, why are you making these straw sandals? Qian Xian'er mysteriously smiled and said, You don't know, right? Our sheep will be able to give birth to a litter of lambs in half a month, and 1 lamb can be sold for 10 strings of coins. If they grow up, 1 lamb can be sold for 30 strings of coins. Take a guess, if I raise a large flock of sheep, how much can I sell them for? Zhang Feng was a little surprised. He pointed at the straw sandals and asked, Then why are you making these straw sandals? To exchange for fodder. A lot of brothers don't have any shoes to wear. Moreover, last time when the sheep were in heat, I asked them to help me steal the sheep next door, so I have to help them. Besides, these sandals aren't for free. They promised to cut grass for my sheep. A pair of sandals and a basket of grass. Isn't it worth it? Zhang Feng was shocked. He couldn't help but pinch his thigh. God, this joke of yours is really too big. This is a talent bestowed by the heavens. Is this the so-called, when the heavens close a door, they will open a window for you? Chapter 1402. In the eyes of the world, Qian Xiang'er was a bit of a fool. But this was all on the surface. This was because this child had been isolated from the world since he was a child. Coupled with the fact that he lacked fatherly love since he was a child, and in this era, this kind of child was the most despised by the world. Because he was casual, he closed himself off. What he showed was not because he ate something but because he was mentally immature. If such a person was properly trained, in less than 10 years he would definitely be a blockbuster to the world. Because he longed for recognition and love. In later society, this kind of personality was called autism. What Qian Xian'er had unintentionally displayed in front of Qian Tong was simply to gain Qian Tong's approval. After all, his father was a person who played with money. This was the best way to get Qian Tong's approval, but Qian Tong seemed to have labeled Qian Xiang'er as a fool from the beginning. So, thinking of this, Zhang Feng subconsciously asked, Xiang'er, let me ask you something. Qian Xiang'er asked indifferently, Is it about Guan'er? No, let me ask you, if you had 3 white sheep, how much could you sell them for? Qian Xiang'er looked at Zhang Feng suspiciously and asked, If I had 300 sheep, why would I sell them? Zhang Feng was stunned. He asked, I'm just asking, tell me, what do you think? Qian Xiang'er heard this and said, If it was me, I would only choose the best and strongest sheep among these 300 sheep. Even if there were only 50 sheep, I would still have 300 sheep next year. As for the remaining 250 sheep, I would sell their sheepskin to the Hu merchants. I heard my mother say that a sheepskin sold for 20 copper coins. When the time comes, I will rent a butcher shop in Chang'an. I will sell 1 jin of meat for 5 copper coins. Even if there is only 30 jin of meat in a lamb, I can sell it for 150 copper coins. If there are 250 sheep, I can sell them for 37,000 copper coins. Including the bones and offal, I can sell the lamb for 40,000 copper coins, which is 40 taels of silver. If one piece of sheepskin is worth 20 copper coins, 250 pieces of sheepskin can be sold for 5,000 copper coins. And this is only in Chang'an. If I were to go to the Tufan Turks, the price would be even higher. When talking about this, Qian Xiang was abnormally excited. It was as if at this time in front of him was not a field of grass, but a field of silver coins. This made Zhang Feng even more curious and asked, Xiang, who did you learn this from before? Qian Chuaner looked at Zhang Feng suspiciously and said, do we still need to learn this? This time Zhang Feng was stumped. At this time, Zhang Feng wished that he could drag Li Gan and the other idiots here and let them see what kind of prodigy this was. Compared to Qian Xiang, what the hell was Li Gan? What the hell was Du Bing? Those were all trash. This was simply a natural-born fortune-teller, and a natural-born merchant god. After losing Chen Wanli, Zhang Feng felt very guilty. This was because as a brother, he had always wanted to help the Chen family, but he could not find a way. But now, seeing Chen Xiang like this, Zhang Feng could not help but have a bold idea. Xiang, don't you want to go somewhere with me first? There are many brothers at my place and there are many delicious and fun things. No. Chen Xiang, shook his head and rejected Zhang Feng without thinking. This was somewhat unexpected to Zhang Feng. Prince Zhang. President Zhang? At this time, Qian Tong's low voice sounded at the door of the small courtyard. It interrupted Zhang Feng's thoughts. Zhang Feng shook his head helplessly and glanced at Qian Xiang. The moment Qian Xiang heard this voice, his eyes flashed with excitement, but a moment later, it dimmed down. Zhang Feng's heart ached. Don't you want to see your father? Qian Xiang shook his head fiercely. Father said that I'm not allowed to go out of the courtyard. After saying that, Qian Xiang lowered his head in grievance, not daring to look at Zhang Feng. Seeing this, Zhang Feng shook his head, stood up and walked towards the courtyard door. As soon as he saw Zhang Feng, Qian Tong was instantly relieved. But when he saw Zhang Feng coming from that direction, he could not help but worry. President Zhang, how could you stoop to such a desolate place? This old man was rude. Uncle, what are you doing? Zhang Feng hurriedly helped Qian Tong up. As the two walked towards the front yard, they discussed the next steps. Zhang Feng said, Uncle, the matter of Wanli is still my academy's fault. I also heard that the Ministry of Justice will send some of the Tang family's wealth to you soon. After the Ministry of Justice checks the properties of the four families, someone will send them to you, but, while speaking, the two paused. Zhang Feng said, the academy is after all just the academy. I don't want to take care of other things right now. I'll leave them to Lao Li and the others. When the time comes, I'll send someone to personally talk about the future of the white paper business. I've decided before Wan Li's business will still be handled by your Chen family, President Zhang. Qian Tong knelt down in front of Zhang Feng and sighed, President Zhang, my Chen family is unable to repay the kindness you have shown to my Chen family. Now that Wan Li's revenge has been avenged and we've given you enough, if you continue to give this old man more, I'm afraid you'll remember it. Zhang Feng helped Qian Tong up from the ground. Qian Tong was right. After thinking about it for a while, Yang Kai gave up. Fine, since Uncle says so, I'll drop the matter. But there's something I want to ask, Uncle. Is that Qian Xiang in the backyard your young master? Qian Tong naturally knew that Zhang Feng and Qian Xiang had met for the new year and was shocked. I frightened Dean. My unfilial son was born stupid. I hope sir can forgive him. Zhang Feng said, No, I mean I want to accept him as my direct disciple. Chapter 1403. Qian Tong was stunned and hurriedly asked, Dean, what did you say? Zhang Feng patted Qian Tong on the shoulder and said, Giving a man a fish is not as good as teaching him to fish. I have been thinking about how to compensate you and brother Wan Li. Coupled with the fact that old madam is so good to me, I was deeply moved. Before seeing Qian Xiang, I really didn't know what to give you, but after seeing Qian Xiang, I made up my mind to accept Qian Xiang as my successor. What do you think? Qian Tong was stunned. He hastily turned pale with fright and said, Sir Dean, I know that you are affectionate and loyal to my family's Wan Li. You are a rare man who values affection and loyalty. If it weren't for you today, Wan Li's hatred wouldn't have been avenged. But now Wan Li's hatred has been avenged. In addition, I now have a noble title. This old man is perfectly satisfied. How can I accept Sir Dean's kindness? If this were to spread, how would the world view me, Qian Tong? The world will say that I, Qian Tong, took the opportunity to extort Dean, and I will be despised by the world. Moreover, I know my son's temperament. He is so stupid. If he were to follow Dean, then, no. This absolutely cannot happen. It wasn't that he didn't want Chen Xiang-er to take over his mantle. After all, at this time Chen Wanli, the only hope of the Chen family, was gone, and Chen Xiang-er was the only son of the Chen family. Chen Tong naturally hoped that Chen Xiang-er could achieve great things. However, Chen Xiang-er had suffered the pain of losing his mother in Tang province and had been ridiculed and ostracized since childhood. Under these two conditions he had become completely stupid. Even the famous doctors in Chang and city had no way to cure him. This was a brain disease. Moreover, how could Chen Xiang-er understand the ways of merchants? This was undoubtedly Zhang Feng trying to comfort him. Therefore Chen Tong would never agree. If he agreed, then how would the world view his Chen clan? How would he, Chen Tong, face the people of Chang and city in the future? When Zhang Feng saw this, he knew Chen Tong would say this, so he sighed and said, "Martial uncle, don't worry, today is not the time to talk about this, but you also know that I have a lot of things to do, plus today's incident, I may not be able to leave the mountain for a long time. However, I also see the dispute in uncle's family today, and I sincerely want to help uncle, but money will only bring disaster to disaster uncle. As for Chen Xiang's words, I sincerely want to accept it. If you don't believe me, let's ask Chen Xiang's and have him calculate the accounts. Chen Tong, you know he's. I previously believed that Wanli would have a brilliant future in the field of merchants, but, after seeing Chen Xiang, I'm even more certain that within 10 years Chen Xiang-er will be unmatched in the art of merchants in my great Tang, no, even in the borders of my great Tang. How could Chen Tong have known that Zhang Feng would give Chen Xiang-er, a child he had almost forgotten, such a high evaluation? Now that he saw Zhang Feng again and saw how sincere he was, Chen Tong felt even more complicated. Looking into Zhang Feng's eyes, Chen Tong asked seriously, "President Zhang, is what you said true?" Zhang Feng pointed to the backyard and said, "Why don't Uncle Chen call Chen Xiang-er over? Let's go." Since Chen Wanli went to the academy, Chen Tong had basically never stopped inquiring about Zhang Feng. From Chen Wanli's mouth, Chen Tong learned that even Li Gan and Du Debing, the smartest people in the academy, had never received such a high evaluation from Zhang Feng. Before this, Chen Tong had wondered what kind of person Zhang Feng considered a genius. So today, when he learned that Zhang Feng actually had such a high evaluation of his stupid son, how could he believe it? The two hurried back to the small courtyard. Chen Xiang-er naturally noticed Chen Tong's arrival and hurriedly hid behind the sheep house, secretly watching the two. Seeing this, Chen Tong immediately shouted angrily, "Come out, come out." Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped him, "Uncle, don't do this, you'll scare him." Chen Tong hurriedly said, "Dean, how could my son receive such treatment from you?" Zhang Feng ignored him and instead waved to Chen Xiang-er, "Come to Big Brother's side." Chen Xiang-er was still a little frightened and didn't dare to move. Seeing Chen Tong about to get angry again, Zhang Feng quickly squatted down and said, "Xiang-er, tell your father about the 300 sheep your big brother just told you about. Wait for Big Brother to take you to eat something delicious." Something delicious? Hearing this, Chen Xiang-er's eyes lit up, but after glancing at Chen Tong he shrank back. Chen Tong said with some resentment, "The dean told you to speak, so just speak. Father won't scold you." Seeing this, Chen Xiang-er slowly let down her guard. She fearfully told Zhang Feng about what she had just said, as well as the plan that she hadn't finished talking about. This time, Chen Tong was dumbfounded. He seriously doubted that the timid boy standing next to him at this time was still his stupid son. After a long time, Zhang Feng asked, "Uncle, now you know Xiang-er's ability, right? But, after all, no buts. You should know that in addition to merchant skills and teaching, I, Zhang Feng, also know some medical skills. What's more, Divine Doctor Sun is also on my mountain. If you don't believe me, do you not believe in Divine Doctor Sun?" Chapter 1404. After Zhang Feng dealt with the affairs of the Chen mansion, then he hurried back to the academy with Chen Xiang-er, Ma Zhou and the others. The moment they went out, the gate of Chang and city was locked. Looking at the brightly lit Chang and city, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Back to the mountain." Since they parted at the gate of the Tang mansion, he hadn't seen Li Qingqian, Cheng Chumo and the others. Zhang Feng also knew that although he had taken revenge today, the mess he left behind must be cleaned up by someone. So he didn't think much about it. Along the way, Gao Ken was on alert all over the city. No one knew where he got a sky piercer in his hand. Coupled with his hoarse and burly figure, he looked like a general. Behind Gao Can, a group of people also followed Zhang Feng's carriage and went up the mountain. Although no one said a word along the way, everyone's eyes were rather strange. The reason was that ever since they left the Qian manor, Zhang Feng's side was always followed by a timid, skinny and tanned young man. This boy looked a bit like Chen Wanli. But no matter how people asked, he seemed to be frightened. He clutched Zhang Feng's robe tightly and hid behind Zhang Feng without saying a word. And Zhang Feng didn't explain much. After all, it was useless to explain anything now. And Zhang Feng was also thinking hard about the next countermeasures and the way to go in the future. Such a big thing happened today, but the big hand behind the Tang family still didn't come out. Even the people of the Wang clan didn't have much reaction, let alone the big families behind the Bai family, the Gao family and the Mi family. It seemed that they didn't know anything about what happened today, and it had nothing to do with them. But the more it was like this, the more Zhang Feng felt that things were a bit tricky. At this time, no one came out to say a word of justice for the four families. What did it mean? It meant that they had already thought of all the consequences. That was to say, they had already thought of the countermeasures for all the consequences of what they did today. This was the scariest part. They had been planning from the beginning. What were they planning? Phosphate fertilizer? This thing was just an excuse to deceive the world. This thing was bound to be implemented in large quantities, and whoever dared to stop it would be defying the decree and becoming the enemy of all the people in the world. No one dared to do such a thing. Then, what were these people planning? This was what Zhang Feng didn't understand the most. It was said that this was the best time to deal with him. The reason why Zhang Feng dared to come to the Qian residence was because he wanted to use himself as bait to see if these people would take the bait. However, the result disappointed him. These people still didn't move. Then what exactly were they plotting? Medical skills? Steel smelting? Or was it his business path technique? The reason why Zhang Feng thought of the business skills was mainly because of Qian Wanli's death. If Qian Wanli wasn't dead, Zhang Feng wouldn't think too much. But Qian Wanli was dead. That meant that the key now was to find out whether Qian Wanli was killed by accident or deliberately set up. This was the breakthrough point. There was also the Mi family. Why would Granny Mi Ji let all the important people in the family die before he went? As long as someone confessed, the Mi family wouldn't die. But everything was buts. At this moment, it was like a huge mountain pressing down on Zhang Feng, making it hard for him to breathe. However, there was one thing that Zhang Feng knew. What he did today would definitely serve as a warning. Those who wanted to kill him or coveted Pyrolite Mountain would definitely not dare to come here again. The following dangers would definitely be more dangerous. This time, all his plans, from firearms to crossbows to composite bows to armor, had to be sped up. Zhang Feng also thought of an even more important point. That was the little idea he had in mind before. Now it was time to arrange it. That was to form a special battle team. When he thought of this, Zhang Feng lifted the curtain and was about to call Old Ma to ask him. But before he opened his mouth, he heard Old Ma say, "Dean, we've arrived at the academy." With this, Zhang Feng realized that they had unknowingly arrived at the entrance of White Deer College. At the entrance of the academy, Yu Shernan and the others were already holding lanterns and torches, waiting with all the students of the academy. The light of the torches lit up the entire Mount E red. Turning around, it was the same in the marketplace at the foot of the mountain. All the merchants, as well as the Hu merchants, seemed to spontaneously hold up their torches and stood on both sides of the dark road. At this moment, Zhang Feng slowly lifted the curtain of the carriage. When the crowd saw Zhang Feng, they heaved a long sigh of relief. The Dean is back. Welcome back, Dean. Welcome back, Dean. Excited and loud roars exploded on Mount E like thunder. Even the soldiers guarding the city on the top floor of Chang and city could faintly hear them. Chapter 1405. Reporting. Your Majesty, President Zhang and the others have safely returned to the academy. In the Imperial Study. Xiao Gizi's report instantly caused the stifling atmosphere in the Imperial Study to slowly recover some of its warmth. Li Shimon's cracked lips opened slightly. Did you notice anything unusual along the way? Nothing at the moment. The branches of the big families in Chang and near Chang and are under constant surveillance by the Imperial Guards. There is nothing unusual with these people at the moment. Leave. Li Shimon waved his hand. Xiao Gizi hurriedly left. After Xiao Gizi left, Li Shimon looked around and asked Qing Yaojin, Wei Zheng and the others, "What time is it now?" "Your Majesty, it is now Sushur." Li Shimon nodded and looked at Zhang Sun Wuji. "The Ministry of Justice, haven't you gotten anything out of the interrogation?" Zhang Sun Wuji's face tightened. "There is no news yet. Lord Li is personally in charge of the Ministry of Justice. I believe there should be no problems. Li Shimin heard and sighed. Such a big thing happened to the four families, but you didn't know anything beforehand. You should be punished. Hearing this, Wei Jing, Yu Qigong, and the others hurriedly got up and knelt. We are guilty. Li Shimin continued, Qian Wanli's matter is small, and this was an accident. But have you ever thought that the one who died today was not Qian Wanli but us or your children? What would you think? Yu Qigong, Niu Jinda, and Cheng Yaojin were shocked and hurriedly said, Your Majesty, it is our fault, Enough. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Let the crown prince in. Outside the imperial study, Li Qingqian and the others were all kneeling neatly. Hearing this, Li Qingqian's face changed, but he hurriedly bowed and entered the imperial study. Once inside, Li Shimin glanced at Li Qingqian and said, I remember that the tea house in the East City is your property, right? Also, you have a group of spies in Chang and City who are responsible for collecting information and spreading rumors. What do you think of this matter? Li Qingqian's face changed instantly and he hurriedly said, Father, I was careless. But I've been busy with the phosphate fertilizer on the mountain during this period of time and forgot about it. Please punish me, Father. Wait, go to the Ministry of Justice to receive your punishment. Li Shimin waved his hand. What do you think of this matter? Did your people gather any useful information today? Yes, but they are all kneeling outside Taiji Palace. Announce it. As his voice fell, little Gizi hurriedly announced the decree. A moment later, more than 10 people of different ages and sizes appeared at the door of the imperial study, trembling. Looking at the people kneeling in the imperial study, they couldn't help but panic. Greetings, Your Majesty. More than 10 people knelt down as soon as they entered the door. Li Shimin waved his hand in annoyance. Xiao Gizi understood and said, Tell His Majesty everything you found out today. Don't hide anything. How dare they hide it? The people kneeling outside the imperial study were people who could make the entire Tang dynasty tremble with a stomp of their feet. Who were they? How dare they hide anything? They didn't want to live anymore. Your Majesty, today in Chang and how could they dare to hide anything? He even told her what time he was going to shit, what time he was going to eat, and what he was going to eat. But there was nothing useful about the abnormality. This made Li Shimin's expression turn slightly cold. Your Majesty, when I came to the palace today, I saw a blacksmith shop that hadn't been open for a long time open today. Does this count? Li Shimin, who was already a little disappointed, heard this and his eyes instantly lit up. He asked, Which blacksmith shop are you talking about? Tell me the whole story. Seeing this, the man hurriedly said, Your Majesty, earlier today, this lowly one ate fermented glutinous rice at the entrance of the blacksmith shop, but I didn't see anyone. However, when this lowly one passed by the blacksmith shop at the entrance of the gourd alley in Xinhua Square, this lowly one found that it was already open for business. Many people were inside organizing something, and there were also people carrying large amounts of ironware in and out of the shop. This shop originally belonged to a person surnamed Zhou, but I didn't see the shopkeeper today. Surnamed Zhou? Li Shimin frowned slightly. At this time, another spy hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I know this blacksmith shop. My brother worked here for a short time before. I heard that the shopkeeper's wife seemed to be surnamed Wang, and I heard that the shopkeeper's wife's accent was from the direction of Taiyuan. Taiyuan accent. Surnamed Wang. The shop that hadn't opened for a long time actually opened. What did this mean? This meant that there was a big problem. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Send an order to thoroughly investigate this matter. There can be no mistakes. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly knelt down and said, Yes, Your Majesty. Chapter 1406. After everyone exited the imperial study, Li Shimin stopped Fang Xianling. After everyone had left, he walked to the bedchamber and asked, Master Fang, do you know if there's any news from Mount Longzhou? Oh, Your Majesty, there's no news for the time being. Does Your Majesty suspect that the people who went to Mount Longzhou have found the ore? Li Shimin nodded. That's possible. Otherwise, why would the Wang family choose this time to restore the iron mine? Li Shimin stamped his feet and said, Little Gizi, immediately send someone from the Minister of Internal Affairs to ask if the iron mine in Chang and has been restored, and if there's still coal. Yes, Your Majesty. Li Shimin didn't leave. Instead, he called Wei Zhang and the others back to the imperial study. As soon as they entered, Li Shimin asked, Yu Qigong, did the people you sent to Mount Longzhou have any news? No. Yu Qigong shook his head and said, But we haven't returned home for the time being. Does Your Majesty think that the iron mine on Mount Longzhou has been found? Li Shimin nodded. That's right. Otherwise, there really isn't such a coincidence in this world. You all just heard that the Wang family actually reopened the ironware shop that had been closed for half a month. Moreover, it wasn't as good as yesterday, not tomorrow. Why must it be today? With this question, Yu Qigong and the others instantly sensed the problem. Why today? Why not tomorrow? Was it a coincidence? Or was it premeditated? In an instant, the imperial study fell into silence once again. Groups of palace maids were trembling in fear as they poured sweet tea for the few of them. Occasionally they would bring in boxes of cigarettes. The imperial study was once again shrouded in fog. Cheng Chumo and the others escaped from the palace as if they were running for their lives. After they left the palace gate, they breathed a deep sigh of relief. Just now they had knelt for more than 2 hours and almost lost their knees. But in the end they didn't know if the emperor forgot or what, but he didn't punish them. It would be strange if they didn't run. Once they left the palace they couldn't help but be stunned. After looking at each other, Wei Shiyu asked, "Are we going back to the mountain or going home separately?" Why don't we go back to the mountain? Right now, none of our family members have left the palace. Who knows what happened? If we don't run now, we will inevitably become a punching bag when we return. Cheng Chumo agreed, yes. Although the insect's words are a bit harsh, it makes sense. Besides, Fengzi made such a big noise at the foot of the mountain today, so he must be very angry now. If we go up and accompany Fengzi, we will be disobeying the emperor's order. Everyone basically hit it off and then hurriedly rushed out of the city. Other people might not be able to leave the city at this time, but who were they? They were the sons of the Duke and had the Academy's token to enter and exit the city. As long as they had the token, they would turn a blind eye and let them out of the city as long as there were no major incidents. The moment they hit it off and hurriedly ran away, a team of Jianghu guards in golden armor rushed out of the palace. Then they scattered and rushed to the mansions of the Duke. Teams of imperial guards shuttling between Chang'an City and the imperial city were still like hawks shuttling back and forth in Chang'an City. This kind of thing didn't stop until it was almost midnight. But just as the clock was about to ring, the clock was ticking. At the Tonghua gate of Chang'an, a rider holding a torch galloped over. When the guard on the city gate was about to speak, the rider on the horse shouted, "Open the gate quickly. Good news, good news." On the mountain, in Zhang Feng's villa, Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu stopped crying when Zhang Feng came back, and then went to the room on the second floor. In the living room on the first floor. At this time a group of big shots on the mountain gathered together. Although the old village chief and he had already explained the matter clearly, Scholar Lai and the others still asked Zhang Feng to explain the matter again. Everyone furrowed their brows and slowly walked away. But when they reached the door, Scholar Lai noticed Qian Xiang, huddled in the corner of the door and asked, "Fengzi, his name is Qian Xiang, Qian Wanli's half-brother. Xiang, come and greet your teacher." Zhang Feng hurriedly introduced. However, everyone was also stunned by this name. It took them a long time to react, but when they saw Qian Xiang's timid expression, they thought that he was frightened today. Moreover, they were too lazy to ask about the person Zhang Feng brought back. After all, this mountain belonged to Zhang Feng. How could they ask about it? They were too lazy to ask. After such a big thing happened today, they had been tense and wanted to rest early. After all, the results would only be out tomorrow. After the few of them left, Zhang Feng immediately called Old Ma in and asked seriously, "Old Ma, you saw what happened today. I want to get a special force. Go back and pick a few smart people for me." Old Ma was stunned and asked, "What soldiers are you talking about? You want to raise a private army?" No, it's a special force. It's similar to the security guards on the mountain. But they're just there to learn the new military tactics and fighting methods that I came up with. But the prerequisite is that they have to be young. Chapter 1407. It was not the first time that Zhang Feng had such an idea. He had had such an idea a long time ago, but because of some things he had not decided until now. Until today, Zhang Feng was really sure. Today, the mastermind behind the scenes did not make a move, which meant that there would be a bigger move. This was what Zhang Feng was most worried about. After all, if this bastard really did something, it would be really troublesome. Zhang Feng was not afraid of trouble, but he was also afraid of being annoyed. Instead of waiting for others to come, why not take the initiative himself, Zhang Feng? Take the initiative to lure the mastermind out? However, Old Ma did not know this, nor did he know the meaning of special forces. He quickly asked, "Dean, what do you mean by special forces? What's the use of it?" Zhang Feng knew that Old Ma would ask this, so he said, "In fact, special forces are also a kind of soldier. This kind of soldier actually has the ability to fight together and has quick reaction. However, in the case of an individual soldier, they can also complete a 1,000-mile raid alone or scout the enemy camp at night. This kind of soldier has very strict requirements for the soldier's physical fitness and endurance. As for tactics and fighting, I don't know much about these, so I'll have to rely on you. However, it's best to have some foundation. This old Ma was instantly in a dilemma. Dean, these people you mentioned can be found in the military camp, but if you look for retired veterans, it's really based on the current manpower in the academy and the public house. We can gather at most 30 people. However, if you look for people who were screened out by the military due to some things, this is not a problem. However, don't get your hopes up. It's not easy to find such people. Zhang Feng raised his eyebrows and asked, are there very few people like this? Not very few, but none at all. Most of the people who came out of the military, as long as they are good and not disabled, have gone to those rich businessmen's houses to guard the house. How many of the remaining people do you think are good enough? Zhang Feng had really forgotten about this. Although ordinary people hated military personnel, to the rich and influential families, such people were the most suitable to be guards. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng suddenly thought of old Niu. Didn't this batch of people instigate a few hundred guards and servants when they were in Lantian? Presumably, the people who were chosen by them were all experts, right? Moreover, he had promised Qintiniu and the others that he would forge the 4 of them. Now it seemed that it was time. Old Ma, let's not consider your men for now. Let me ask you, what do you think of Iron Bull, Idiot Wei, Sun Chong, the Yubaolin brothers, and Gao Ken? Speaking of which, Old Ma also remembered these little fellows. His eyes couldn't help but light up as he said, if these fellows were in the army, they would definitely be fierce generals. Could it be that you want to? Zhang Feng nodded. Old Ma's expression changed instantly. He asked suspiciously, Dean, you really don't know Tai Niu's identity? Zhang Feng was stunned and asked, what other identities do they have? When Old Ma saw Zhang Feng's expression, he instantly knew that Zhang Feng still didn't know the real identity of Qintiniu and the others. This was easy to handle. If Zhang Feng really knew their identity, then Zhang Feng's arrangement would be problematic. After all, these fellows' fathers except for Gao Ken were all high dukes. Letting them do this at this time? If the dean hadn't discussed this with the high dukes in advance, then it would be strange. In fact, in the Chang and military camp, Zhang Feng had already known about the training method that he had come up with. Not to mention training, just hearing about it made his scalp tingle. Carrying dozens of kilograms of stones on their backs every day, they couldn't even sleep well. This was simply the devil's training method. In the Chang and military camp, there were at least 50,000 soldiers stationed there. Those who could stay in the Chang and military camp were basically the elites of the elites. However, there were not even 5,000 people who could pass the training method so far. From this, one could see how terrifying it was. But once they got through this level, it was really like what Zhang Feng had said. It was not a problem for them to be able to fight 10 people at once. Besides, they were not given any tools or food, not even a fire starter, and were asked to fight with the beasts in the Qinling Mountains for 10 days. The person who could come up with such a training manual was either crazy or a god. At first, old Ma Huanzi had lamented that this thing had been created by that perverted general. However, when he found out that this thing had been created by Zhang Feng, he was completely dumbfounded. With Zhang Feng's weak body, how could he come up with such a thing? Now, when Zhang Feng said this, he suddenly understood that this thing was really made by the dean. Was it just for this moment? Old Ma was dizzy listening to this. His mind was still thinking about this matter. After talking for a long time, Zhang Feng found that old Ma was in a daze. He couldn't help but ask, Old Ma? Old Ma? Hey old Ma, do you want a wife or not? After hearing the word wife, old Ma finally reacted. Zhang Feng rubbed his head and said, you go down the mountain tomorrow morning. Call Jia Daoren up. Those guys are naughty. The 2 of you will be responsible for their training from now on. Also, find those guys for me tomorrow morning. Seeing that Zhang Feng really intended to train Xing Chumo and the other young dukes, and that he would train them in the future, old Ma was so scared that his legs went soft. He hurriedly said, okay. Chapter 1408. Early the next morning, old Ma hurried down the mountain. Last night he thought about it all night. Let's not talk about Wei Shuyu. Wei Shuyu was Prime Minister Wei's son. Although Prime Minister Wei gave people the impression that he was unapproachable, he rarely came to the mountain. This was easy to handle. Lord Zhang's son was also fine. But the most uncomfortable were the 2 young masters of the Yuqi family and the son of General Cheng. Damn it, they were all famous bastards. Asking him to train them? Wasn't that courting death? Would they be able to endure such hardships? But Zhang Feng had given the order, so he had no choice but to do it. Therefore Old Ma thought about it for a whole night. When the sky was still dark, Old Ma found all his old buddies and told them about it. When they heard it, their heads instantly exploded. Asking them, a group of nameless soldiers, to train Commandant Qing? This was not courting death. This was courting death. But they couldn't refuse. In the end, everyone slapped their thighs and agreed that they had to go to the military camp and ask one of the generals first. After all, it was extremely difficult for them to find a few dukes. But the military camp was different. This was General Cheng's territory. Even if they couldn't find him, as long as they found his personal guards, it would be fine. As long as they passed the message, as for the consequences, they could completely push it to General Cheng. Not only would they not have any responsibility, after all, Cheng Chumo made a scene at the training ground. That was the civilization and the military. It was also because of this matter that Cheng Chumo and the others were transferred out of the military by the emperor, in the military camp. Although the sky was still dark, groups of men were roaring and running around Shao Mountain crazily. What was even more frightening was that everyone's arrowheads, necks, calves, waists and backs were tied with a large bag of bulging things. No one knew whether they were filled with stones or sand. But no matter which one it was extremely terrifying to Old Ma, who was staring blankly at them. And in Old Ma's eyes, this group of lunatics was shouting without blushing or panting, as if it was an ordinary thing. This made Old Ma feel terrified. Stop. The military camp is an important place, no one is allowed to enter. At this moment, an angry roar sounded. At the next moment, a general wearing radiant armor and riding a large horse came before the old horse. Old Ma hastily took out his identity card and said, "I have been ordered to look for the generals." "What is it?" "The dean wants a few disciples to participate in the training of the new art of war." "I'm here to ask." The general had just asked casually. He hadn't expected Old Ma to say anything. However, he was taken aback by Old Ma's words. "Are you saying that Zhang Feng wants to train his disciples?" "No, it's Iron Bull. It's Tainyo and the others," Old Ma hurriedly explained. The general's expression froze when he heard this. He pulled on the reins and asked, "Are you talking about Commandant Tainyo?" Seeing Old Ma nod, the general was shocked. He hurriedly led Old Ma into the commander's tent. The commander's tent was actually a house. In the front hall of a spacious house, there was a sand table of the entire Chang'an and the surrounding mountains. Behind the sand table was a large screen. On the screen was a map, but it had long been drawn with ink marks. There were old and new ones. When the two of them passed through the front hall of the commander's tent, they heard a rhythmic coughing sound. Old Ma found this rather novel, but the general didn't seem to find it strange. He led Old Ma into the rear of the tent. "General, someone is coming from the mountain." Yuchi Gong had been reading a military report with a frown. When he heard this, he hurriedly put it away. However, when he looked up and saw Old Ma, he asked in surprise, "What is it?" Old Ma didn't dare hesitate. This was General Yuchi, one of the 4 war gods. He hurriedly said, "General, the dean wants to find some people. He says he wants to train these people individually." Yuchi Gong didn't mind. "Pass down the order. Pick a few good seedlings from the army and send them to the mountain." Seeing this, Old Ma quickly interrupted Yuchi Gong and said, "General, the dean wants to train Commandant Cheng and the others." "Chem?" Yuchi Gong was surprised. He looked at Old Ma in surprise. "When did this happen? When did he say anything about this?" Old Ma hurriedly told him everything. The more he spoke, the more agitated Yuchi Gong became. Of course, the cigarettes in his hand also changed one after another. His coughing became more and more severe. It wasn't clear whether it was because he was agitated or because he was choking on the smoke in the room, but Old Ma's throat felt like it was on fire. Old Ma couldn't help but feel impressed by Yuchi Gong. No wonder he was called the war god. Just this boldness, this ferocity of smoking, this throat and eyes, could it be that they were all made of iron? What the hell? He deserved to be called the war god. Yuchi Gong wasn't thinking about anything else. Instead, he thought about something Zhang Feng had said a long time ago. He vaguely remembered that Zhang Feng had said that he wanted to train Qing Chumo to become a heavy cavalryman and Zhang Sun to become the strongest light cavalryman. At this moment he was looking at the situation. Yuchi Gong couldn't help but slam the table. "It's done. Haha, old Black Fengzi has finally thought it through." Chapter 1409. Old Ma naturally knew that Yuchi Gong's words weren't meant for him. However, when he saw how happy Yuchi Gong was, he couldn't help but congratulate him excitedly. "Congratulations, General. Congratulations." Yuchi Gong laughed heartily when he heard this. Then he waved his hands and said, "Don't be in such a hurry to flatter Lao Tzu. Is Fengzi going to let you train them this time?" Old Ma froze for a moment before he hurriedly said, "What the principal means is that I will accompany them in their training. The rest will be personally trained by the principal." All right. Lao Tzu knew that Fengzi would make this move. Yuchi Gong stood up and paced back and forth in the commander's tent. After a while he told the guard, "Hurry up and invite General Cheng and Yo Jijier over. Tell them about this matter." He had no choice but to be happy. His two sons would be together. Although he didn't know how Fengzi would train his two sons, compared to Old Black and Old Nyo, he would wake up smiling even in his dreams. If the cow saw that the tiger's leg was broken, it naturally wouldn't be able to do anything. All it could do was watch helplessly. How could Ching Chumo compare to his two darlings? Compete in strength? His second son could lift a millstone with one hand. What could Ching Chumo do? All these years, he had already been King stripped of his virginity by those little girls. Those two brats were the best. Although his upbringing was stricter and he was more obedient, he still had some strength. When the time came, as long as the emperor gave his approval, the Yuchi family would still benefit the most from this matter. How could he not be excited? Their official positions had basically reached their limits. They wouldn't be able to get promoted any further. In any case, they were still most concerned about their sons and nephews. This was the real battlefield where they would fight. Which family's son would be able to accomplish something if he had a promising future? A small matter was enough for them to brag about for an entire year, so how could Yuchi Gong not be excited about such a big matter today? However, before he could get too excited, Qing Yaojin and Yo Jinda rushed in with red eyes. As soon as they entered, they saw Yuchi Gong's annoying look. They glared at Old Ma and asked, "Lao Tzu has seen you before. In the Liangzhou military camp, your name is?" Replying to General Cheng, "I, Ma Xinliang, am the instructor of the new recruits of the Liangzhou military camp." Upon hearing this, Qing Yaojin's expression instantly relaxed. He was really afraid that Yuchi Gong was trying to trick him. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin narrowed his eyes and carefully sized up Ma Xinliang. "I heard that Fengzi wants to turn our son into some special forces soldier?" "Yes." Ma Xinliang stood as straight as a ramrod. He couldn't help it. This man was the military god who would beat up anyone who disagreed with him. Among the three of them, his temper was the most unpredictable. It would be strange if he wasn't afraid, even though he was no longer a member of the military. However, this was a fear that was engraved in his bones. Right now he couldn't help but be afraid. Nyo Jinda hadn't said a word from the start to the end. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak, but that he was sullen. When he thought of his son lying at home, he was filled with anger. How could he be in the mood to speak? Now that such a good thing had happened, he could only watch helplessly. How could he feel comfortable? When he saw Yuchi Gong's smug face, Nyo Jinda's heart turned cold. He wanted to kill someone. After Qing Yaojin asked him about the details, Yuchi Gong stepped forward and patted Qing Yaojin's shoulder smugly. "Old hey, let's make a bet. Believe it or not, this special forces soldier, my son, and I will definitely..." Fine. You're so cocky, okay? TSK. Lao Tzu only has one son, but didn't Fengzi say that he wanted 50 people? You want 50 people? Just these few people aren't enough. Isn't that clear enough? When he heard this, Nyo Jinda seemed to have grasped the main point. He hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Ma Xinliang, let me ask you. Did Fengzi really say that he wanted 50 people? And he didn't allow people from the military to be used?" "The dean wants you to decide for yourselves." Before he said this, he asked me to find some veterans. However, when he found out that Sean was better and had gone to guard the house, he asked me to find a few young dukes. When he heard this, Nyo Jinda slapped his thigh and said, "Old Yuchi, your sons are involved, but our son is still lying at home." When Qing Yaojin and Yuchi Gong heard this, alarm bells went off in their hearts. They asked suspiciously, "What do you want?" "What I mean is very simple. I'll take all the remaining people. My Nyo family only has one descendant. And this time it's also because of the military training that your poor nephew broke his leg, so, scram, don't talk about it. If you dare to talk about this again, we won't be brothers anymore." Yuchi Gong and Qing Yaojin said almost at the same time. Ma Xinliang was so scared that his whole body trembled. He subconsciously slipped out of the door. However, he was stopped by Nyo Jinda. This is what he said himself. "Don't go back on your words. When my son broke his leg, the two of you were stingy and didn't give him anything. Instead, you secretly forced my son to drink. Don't think that I don't know. You promised to see the tiger and said that if there were any benefits in the future, you would all think about it. Fine, now I don't want anything. I just want the remaining quota. Qing Yaojin grinned and said, you can dream a little better. Chapter 1410. Niu Jinda was stunned. Instantly his face twisted. Qing Yaojin, what do you mean by this? Back then, when you were in my manor, that child Jianghu was closer to you than to me when he was in Longyu. He poured tea for you and called you uncle. Now you're starting to act shamelessly? Seeing Niu Jinda explode, Yu Qigong hurriedly comforted him. Old Niu, calm down. About this matter, I think Feng Zi should have other arrangements for Jianghu. Can you just wait? You see, even if we agree, do you think those old things will agree? Qing Yaojin rolled his eyes and agreed. That's right. Think about what His Majesty is thinking. Think about it, Du Ruhui. Let's not talk about this. If you go to Jiangsun, do you think that old thing will agree? Think about it. Why don't you think about it? Although we all have children involved in this, not everyone can persevere in the special forces. My son might be pulled down in a few days. You also know that our children are all spoiled and pampered. Fengzi will definitely know about such an important matter. They don't see that kid who can endure hardships. So, let's put our children aside for a while and talk about these 50 people first. How about it? After all, no matter how good we say it here, it will be His Majesty who will make the decision. Don't you think so? In an instant, the atmosphere in the tent became tense. Ma Xinliang's legs and stomach were twitching. He wanted to leave, but at this time, his sleeves were torn by Niu Jinda. He didn't dare to speak or move. The cold sweat on his face couldn't stop flowing down. Finally, he couldn't bear it anymore. Ma Xinliang shouted bitterly, Generals, I still have to go find a few young dukes to quickly go up the mountain to report. This matter is still early. Can't you talk in private first? Hearing this, Yu Qigong hurriedly said, Old Niu, why are you pulling his clothes? After all, Feng Zi has other arrangements. All of you shut up for Lao Tzu. Niu Jinda was furious. How could he not know that at this time, if Ma Xinliang went to find someone to go up the mountain, then his son would really be fine? Seeing this, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin rolled their eyes and tried to persuade Niu Jinda, but Niu Jinda didn't listen to anything they said. Lao Tzu just wouldn't listen. The two of them couldn't help but get angry. Yu Qigong pointed at Niu Jinda's nose and said, Old Niu, do you have any shame? Just because your son can't go, you want to take up so many spots? What are you trying to do? What am I doing? Niu Jinda glanced at Lao Tzu and said, Since Feng Zi wants to make this thing at this time, he must want to deal with that thing. Do you think Lao Tzu cares? Lao Tzu just thinks that my soldiers are all good. Look at your family, you. Without waiting for him to finish, Qing Yaojin said sourly, But I heard that when you went to look for a mine, most of your men died on Longzhou Mountain. How can you gather so many people at this time? Even if we have enough, the quality is still worrying. Seeing this, Yu Qigong hurriedly poured cold water on him and said, Yes, yes, yes. Look, both of us are doing this for your own good. You also said that Feng Zi wants to train this thing this time because he wants to do that thing. That will cost him his life. Don't you want to keep people at home at this time? How could us old brothers watch this happen? So, you just stay calm and don't talk about this anymore. Bastard. Are you seriously ganging up to bully Lao Tzu? Niu Jinda angrily grabbed Qing Yaojin's beard. The pain made Qing Yaojin burst into tears. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Old Niu, are you King crazy? Hurry up and let go of Lao Tzu. Otherwise, when Lao Tzu gets angry, even I am scared. Come on. Lao Tzu is not afraid of you. Old Yuchi, are you done laughing? Why aren't you helping? Are you asking for a beating? F***CK, what are you trying to do? In the end, in the midst of a fierce battle, Ma Xinliang scurried out of the battle in a daze. He could only hear the earth-shattering sounds of fists hitting flesh, as well as the sounds of things shattering. In the next moment, within the entire camp, within a radius of 30 feet from this tent, not a single person could be found. Everyone ran away, leaving not a single trace behind. It seemed that this kind of thing happened frequently here. No one dared to be unlucky at this time. After Ma Xinliang calmed down a little, he hurriedly borrowed a horse and fiercely whipped the horse to gallop away. When the people in the tent heard the neigh of the horse, they also showed a rare pause. Then, the three of them hurriedly rushed out of the tent with their clothes disheveled. When they saw that Ma Xinliang had actually run away, the three of them were instantly shocked. They hurriedly got a war horse and sped away while cursing and quarreling. It seemed that they were going to find the emperor to reason things out. After the three of them left, only then did the soldiers emerge from the sheepskin barracks with lingering fear. After ascertaining that the three of them had left, a few of the generals scolded loudly, "What are you all standing there for? Go do what you need to do." Chapter 1411. In the palace. Li Shimin looked at the reports on the table about the blacksmiths that suddenly appeared in Chang, and these 2 days with a worried face. Since yesterday afternoon, the original 12 blacksmiths in Chang and city had reopened one after another. What did this mean? It meant that they were instructed by one person. The person who instructed them was Wang clan? It was possible that Wang clan was involved. However, the premise was that the pair of hands behind him had not appeared. At this time there was still no news from the iron ore on Mount Longsho. No one knew whether the iron ore had been found or not. If it had been found, why hadn't he received any news until now? It should be noted that it was already 9 o'clock today. There was still no news. Li Shimin couldn't help but feel a little upset. Because the pair of big hands showed him the 4 big families in Guangzhou who suddenly attacked yesterday and the forces behind them. These forces must know what happened yesterday. However, until now he didn't see any abnormality in the people in the court, nor did he see any abnormality in the properties and secret sentries of these nobles in Chang'an. Did they really not know? Or did they do it on purpose? Or was it that these things were arranged in advance and all this was a plot? In fact, there was nothing between the 4 big families in Guangzhou and these nobles? Just when Li Shimin was upset. Little Gizi walked into the imperial study with a strange face, but Li Shimin didn't notice him at all. He was still rubbing his forehead and thinking about it. When little Gizi approached, Li Shimin noticed him and asked, "Little Gizi, tell me, does this have anything to do with those big families?" Little Gizi was stunned and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, forgive me for not telling you. I let you tell me so you tell me. I forgive you for everything." There were strict laws that forbade the imperial harem and eunuchs from participating in politics. If other ministers saw this, they would be impeached. Moreover, there were many people who coveted his position. Moreover, these people were basically people from those big clans. The reason was that they wanted to know the emperor's every movement at all times. In addition, yesterday's incident had not yet passed and was still causing a stir. At this time, there were definitely many people who were looking at the emperor's imperial study. At this time, if someone broke in or if the eunuchs and palace maids heard it and spread the word, it would not be good for him. Therefore little Gizi chose to play dumb. "Your Majesty, this servant thinks that this matter should be unrelated. Otherwise these big clans would have come running here long ago." Hearing this, Li Shimin nodded. At this moment, Li Shimin seemed to have thought of something and asked, "What's the matter?" Replying to Your Majesty, General Yuqi, General Cheng, and Yo Jijia have been making a ruckus all the way here. Li Shimin frowned and scolded with mild anger, "Aren't we in the military camp at this time? What were they doing in the palace? Go, let each of them go to the Ministry of Justice to receive their punishment and get them back." Hearing this, little Gizi twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "Your Majesty, I'm afraid that's not possible. Just now, I heard that Prince Zhang wants to do something and wants all the young dukes to participate in it. Nyo Jijia has been quarreling all the way to the palace because of his son's broken leg." Li Shimin was stunned. But then a look of horror flashed across his eyes and he said, "Let the 3 of them get in here." After a while, 3 half-grown old men stood in front of Li Shimin angrily. However, at this time these 3 generals who were feared and revered by everyone, made Li Shimin have the impulse to beat them in public. The 3 men's clothes were disheveled and even damaged in many places. Her hair bun and hair band were nowhere to be seen on her face. Her messy hair fluttered with the wind at the door. Li Shimin could even see strands of fleas falling from their hair to the ground. Li Shimin was furious when he saw this. "Look at you, where are your manners?" When the 3 of them heard this, none of them were willing to admit defeat. One after another, they told Li Shimin the whole story without missing a single word. Li Shimin was startled and asked, "Then do any of you know if Crown Prince and the others went up the mountain today?" When the 3 men heard this, they remembered the most important thing. Where was their son? After arguing for so long, they didn't seem to have seen their son since last night. When Qing Yaojin heard this, he asked carefully, "Your Majesty, was the Crown Prince in the morning court today?" Li Shimin frowned slightly and said, "He was in the morning court." "Why are you asking this?" Qing Yaojin and the other 2 men looked at each other strangely and said, "My son went up the mountain after hearing that he left the palace last night." "Mine too." "Mine seems to have disappeared last night?" In an instant, how could the 4 men not know? They were so angry that their beards blew and their eyes widened. If there were people on the mountain, would Fengzi send people down the mountain to look for them? He must have gone to the brothel to spend the night again. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Leave them alone. You have seen Zhang Feng's new Mitsubishi knife. I just got the news that the iron mines and ironware shops in Chang, and are all open again. At this time Fengzi chose to do this. What does it mean? It means that Fengzi wants to take the initiative to attack. Although Qing Yaojin and the other two men knew it, they were still in an uproar at this time. Seeing this, Li Shimin sighed speechlessly and took the lead to walk out. When he reached the door of the imperial study, he said, "Accompany me to the mountain to ask Fengzi clearly." Yes. Chapter 14:12. Prince Zhang, have a cup of hot tea first. In Zhang Feng's villa. Jing Shu looked at Zhang Feng quietly and handed him a cup of hot tea. Zhang Feng thanked her and put down the brush. He picked up the teacup and took a sip gently. The tea had been cold for a long time. Coupled with the tea leaves that Zhang Feng personally picked from the mountain, it was even more refreshing at this time. Zhang Feng smacked his lips and said, "Good tea." Jing Shu pursed her lips and smiled. She pointed to the papers full of words in front of Zhang Feng and asked, "What are you doing? I saw that you've been sitting for 4 hours. It's time to eat. Just a little bit more. It'll be done in a while." Zhang Yuyao looked at the two of them from afar. She pouted and said with some jealousy, "It's already midnight. Can't you do it after eating? You didn't even have breakfast." Zhang Feng smiled faintly. He got up and pulled Zhang Yuyao over. Then he took Jingshu's hand and said, "This is very important. You all know about what happened yesterday, right? I've also thought about it clearly. I don't have any desires. I just want to follow my heart and live a rich life. Although it's a little tacky, this is my dream. The reason why I want to be an official is that only when I'm high enough can I have enough deterrence and power. When the time comes we won't fight for it. After we settle down we'll retire. Then our family will stay in Mount Shao, grow vegetables and teach students. Isn't such a good life?" Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu took the opportunity to sit next to Zhang Feng and asked, "Aren't you doing it now? And it seems that it's not far away." Zhang Feng sighed and said, "Sigh. I want to live a quiet life without any desires, but the prerequisite is to earn enough money, influence and reputation. But as you can see, I, Zhang Feng, really don't care about ordinary business. But it's also because of this that the things I made were a little rushed, and that's why there's a conflict." Zhang Feng smiled. "That's right. That's a good thing. Us sisters often hear people praising them." Zhang Yuyao asked doubtfully. Zhang Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Wrong." Jing Shu asked in surprise, "Why?" Zhang Feng stood up and pressed on the two women's shoulders. "Actually, what I targeted before was the common people. From pork to improving the quality of the pig's meat, it was nothing more than wanting to make cheap meat affordable for the common people. This was actually all for the sake of outsiders. I, Zhang Feng, am not such a saint." Zhang Yuyao was stunned and asked, "What is the Holy Mother?" Zhang Feng smiled and said, "It's nothing." Jing Shu thought for a while and said, "You mean to help the world?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Almost, but I don't think so. My thinking is very simple. I don't know who I told this to at the beginning, but I forgot. I just thought that when I go out one day I can eat or use the things I make at any time. That's all." Zhang Feng pointed to the teacup in front of him and said, "The things people eat in this era are basically cooked in a pot. Even tea is basically added in some random things. What is this? In my eyes this is simply vulgar behavior. Of course, I'm just complaining in front of the two of you." Jing Shu nodded and said, "Prince Zhang's words are true. Previously, this little girl has even eaten the imperial banquet, the emperor's favorite national banquet dish, Hanyang Mohu. But compared to the delicious food that young master made now, it really tastes like chewing wax, not to mention such elegant and quiet tea. But, young master, what's with your medical skills? You said that this food is for the convenience of traveling in the future, and you can still eat such delicious food. Then, how do you explain your medical skills?" Zhang Feng smiled and shook his head. "Nothing can escape your eyes. Well, I'll make red braised pork for you to try tonight. I can guarantee that it's really delicious." When Zhang Yuyao heard this, her eyes instantly widened. She subconsciously glanced at the door and said, "Prince Zhang, keep your voice down. If they hear you, it won't be peaceful again." Zhang Feng pinched Zhang Yuyao's nose, teasing Zhang Yuyao until her face turned red. Then he said, "Actually, this medical skill, to put it bluntly, contains many things such as medical hygiene, physical hygiene, and so on. I know that this has long been deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people, and it's difficult to change anything. But if you start with a doctor, it will be much easier. Look at the food on the street, those people's hands, and then look at the food. I really can't swallow it. They don't even know the principle of washing their hands before eating and after eating. And what's even more hateful is that after wiping their snot and wiping their buttocks, they put their hands into your bowl. Can you eat it? In an instant Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu's faces turned pale. They repeatedly vomited and said, "Then according to what you said in the future, we won't eat the food in the cafeteria on the mountain anymore. We'll cook our own food." Zhang Feng laughed and said, "That's not necessary. I've already made a set of standard cafeteria for the people on the mountain, and there's also a special kind of gloves. So, I can't guarantee the hygiene of other places, but I can still guarantee the hygiene of my academy's cafeteria. At least it's acceptable. However, this can only be considered passable." Chapter 14-13. Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao didn't know what medical hygiene was, nor did they know what physiological hygiene was, but in their opinion, it was just about cleanliness. But thinking about what Zhang Feng said just now, they instantly felt that everywhere was dirty. Those chefs, which one of them didn't have a handful of salt, a handful of vegetables, a handful of meat and then a handful of sweat and snot? They didn't notice it before, but at this time, Zhang Feng said so. At this time, the two girls were scared and didn't dare to go outside to eat. Even outside of this villa, they didn't dare to eat anything in other places. For example, the barbecue made by Zhang Feng on the street. That thing, now that they thought about it, they even wondered how they ate it in the first place. Zhang Feng saw that the two girls' faces were extremely pale, so he couldn't say anything more. He hurriedly said that, in fact, this thing is to pay attention to hygiene to avoid bacterial infection. The space we live in is full of bacteria, and all the diseases we know, such as fever, cold, headache, cough, diarrhea, and so on, are all bacterial infections. In order to not be infected by bacteria, we have to do something else, such as disinfection, alcohol, wine, salt, vinegar. They are all good things for disinfection. Zhang Feng explained the physiological hygiene knowledge to the two girls in detail. In an instant, the two girls shrank into a ball in horror and said, "Prince Zhang, why don't you get some mugwort and realgar to smoke the house? I see a lot of things." Zhang Feng looked and saw a beam of sunlight shining on the ground through the gap of the window, and in that beam of light, a little bit of dense dust flew up and down in the beam of light. Seeing this, Zhang Feng laughed and said, "This thing can't be helped. The things I said can't be seen with the naked eye. Forget it, I'll get some soap later. With that thing it will be much better to wash and bathe every day. That thing can also make the skin tender." These were two words that they had never heard of. This made Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao extremely mad. They even had the impulse to bite Zhang Feng to death. In his eyes, why was everything he saw poisonous? At this time, a whisper came from the gap of the window, making Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao, who were playing with Zhang Feng, blush to their necks. Originally they just wanted to make Zhang Feng happy. After all, such a big thing happened yesterday. Zhang Feng must be very uncomfortable. But who knew that these people dared to eavesdrop and let them see such a shameful thing? The two girls stomped their feet, turned around and rushed to the second floor. Zhang Feng was also speechless. But more than that, he was annoyed. He glared at the door and said, "Are you all here? Get in here. I've been waiting for you since last night. Where did you go?" Li Qingqian and the others were stunned. They looked at Cheng Chumo and the others and said, "Fengzi, I just came up the mountain. There were too many things last night. I didn't finish until this morning." Zhang Feng knew this. After all, there were so many things. It would be strange if they weren't busy. He pursed his lips and looked at Cheng Chumo and the others, who were avoiding his gaze, and asked, "What about you?" We were also busy last night." Zhang Feng looked at them. How could he not know that these people must have gone to visit prostitutes last night? But he had no evidence. He could only say helplessly, "Since you're here, let's talk about the next thing." Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't continue to harp on it, they nodded hurriedly. Then they returned to their original nature, smoking and lying on their backs. After they were all in position, Zhang Feng said speechlessly, "From tomorrow onwards, Tainyo, Chongzi, Desha, and the two brothers Yu Baolin and Gao Can will start military training." Gao Can, who was outside the door, heard this and ran in excitedly. Shiwa also ran in and asked, "Fengzi, what about me?" Zhang Feng looked at Shiwa and said, "I have other plans for you." Seeing that Li Qian, Du Bing and Fang Yai also wanted to ask, he hurriedly said, "I have other plans for you guys. Also, with your bodies, can you withstand the torture?" Ching Chumo and the others were very excited. They had heard from Zhang Feng that he wanted to train them to be the elites of the elites. However, ever since Gao Can and Yuchi Baolin went to the barracks to learn military training, there was no more news. At this moment, Fengzi finally remembered this matter, thank the heavens. However, this wasn't a good thing for Li Qingqian and the others. At this moment, they looked at Zhang Feng with some resentment. Zhang Feng stared back at them embarrassedly and said, "I said don't look at me. You guys have more important things to do. Do you want the explosives I mentioned? If you want, then make them yourself. Hearing this, Li Qingqian and the others finally calmed down. Qing Chumo and the others didn't care. Zhang Feng pointed at Yuqi Baolin and Gao Can and said, "Wait, the two of you should let them familiarize themselves with this military training method first. Tomorrow I will have Old Ma and Jia Daoren teach you the military's joint attack technique, as well as the individual combat ability. As for the rest I will personally teach you. Tonight I will give you one night and tomorrow at most one day." Qing Chumo and the others were already very excited. However, seeing Zhang Feng say these words so calmly, they couldn't help but ask curiously, "Fengzi, what do you mean?" Zhang Feng looked at Qing Chumo with a faint smile and said, "Because after tomorrow your doomsday will come." Chapter 14:14. In an instant, Qing Chumo and the others felt their hair stand on end. From what Yuqi Baolin had told them, what they had seen when they sneaked into the military camp, and the unspeakable pain of their friends in the military, they had thought that this was the worst they could do. However, they could accept it if they had to grit their teeth and become what Zhang Feng had promised to give them. However, looking at Zhang Feng now, it seemed that this was just the beginning? This was the reason why they were so scared. Qing Chumo was furious. He hurriedly squatted beside Zhang Feng and massaged Zhang Feng's legs while asking, "Fengzi, what are you planning to do?" How could Zhang Feng not know what they were planning at this time? He looked at them with a smile and said, "Actually, it's nothing much. I'm planning to form a special forces team. Yesterday's incident was a lesson. I, Zhang Feng, am not a pushover. I don't like to be watched and led by the nose. Therefore, I've decided to train you into a team of kings who walk in the dark. In the future, you will be able to find the big hand outside and get rid of them quickly. From now on, Li Qian and the others will be mainly responsible for the development and creation of weapons and new things, as well as experiments and so on. I'll give you priority to use all the good things they come up with. However, there's only one condition, and that is to hide yourselves well, use your strengths and stir up the world for me." In an instant, everyone was aghast. This time, Zhang Feng was really going to be serious. Li Qingqian seemed to have thought of something. He said in surprise, "So this is why you modified the crossbow, the composite bow and musket you mentioned, and why you wanted to train them to become the strongest heavy cavalry, the strongest light cavalry, and the king of assassins?" After Li Qingqian said this, Qing Chumo and the others realized in horror. Had Zhang Feng already planned everything when he promised to teach them how to become the best troops in the world? Oh my god. How big of a plan and how terrifying of a setup was it to accomplish all of this? Although Yuqi Baolin and the rest didn't know what they were talking about, Qing Chumo and the rest's expressions made them realize that something was amiss. Come to think of it, none of this happened when Zhang Feng set up this workshop. However, after what had happened at that time as well as what had happened today, they were horrified to discover the crux of the problem. It was as if Zhang Feng was setting up a huge trap. At the thought of this, Zhang Feng's villa was instantly filled with gasps. However, at that time, Zhang Feng really didn't think so much. At that time, his target was the Guanlong group as well as the 5 surnames and 7 great clans. But who would have thought that there would be such a terrifying force behind these two forces? This was simply beyond the scope of Zhang Feng's understanding. Zhang Feng even searched through every corner of his mind, but could not find anything related to this in the known history. This was the scariest part. At one point, Zhang Feng even thought that this was caused by his transmigration, which caused the space to distort. And this world was different from the world he knew, so there were some differences in the 99% similarity? He couldn't figure it out. Why was this happening? This was what he found most inconceivable. That was why he used the original plan to deal with Guanlong and the 5 surnames and 7 great clans here. Zhang Feng nodded. Then he shook his head and said, "Back then I didn't think so far ahead. I only targeted Guanlong and the 5 surnames and 7 great clans, but who would have thought that such a thing would happen?" And Zhang Feng's answer also made Li Shimin and the others, who had just arrived at the door, hurriedly stop and listen carefully. Zhang Feng said, "In fact, it's very simple. I don't like to be watched by others and I don't like to be manipulated by others. Instead of waiting to play tricks and schemes, it's better for me to do it myself, and return peace to all the people I care about. Therefore, in the next 1 month or even 2 months of urgent training, I will squeeze out all your potential in the shortest time possible, and then let you truly love you and find the fighting method you are best at in the shortest time possible. For example, Iron Bull, you must not only display your own brute force but also your stubborn nature, you must display it to the extreme. Public opinion is the most fatal weapon. You should have seen it yesterday. In fact, those methods of theirs were used by us, but we were not that shameless. It was also because of yesterday's matter that gave me a hint. If you want to stand firm, you have to be more shameless than the enemy. Sometimes shamelessness is an extremely terrifying weapon. This made the faces of Li Shimin and the others turn black. They were about to enter the room but were stopped by Wei Zheng. Li Shimin frowned, but after hearing Zhang Feng's next plan, he was even more shocked. He couldn't help but ask, "Fengzi, is what you said true? If it's true, I will fully support you in this matter. I heard that you want 50 people for the whole team? I think it's a little too little. I'll give you 500 experts, how about it?" Chapter 14-15. Hearing this, Zhang Feng suddenly looked at the door and said in surprise, "My goodness, when did you get here? Have you found out anything about yesterday's incident?" As Li Shimin spoke, he hurried into the room with Wei Zheng and the others. He waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about it for now. Tell me about your plan." Zhang Feng repeated what he had said before. Li Shimin's eyes narrowed slightly and said, "According to what you said, you want to set up a spy in the Tang dynasty? Not just one spy but a spy network." Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Wei Zheng hurriedly said, "No. Absolutely not. This is the Tang dynasty. If the emperor finds out about this or if others find out about it, it will be a crime that will lead to the extermination of the whole family. Fengzi, you have to think about it carefully. The emperor may not care about the special forces you want to set up, but have you ever thought that the emperor, the ministers, or those big clans don't have spies? Do you know what we found out about yesterday's incident?" Li Shimin was also a little confused at this time. He ignored Wei Zheng. Seeing this, Wei Zheng said, "Fengzi, I know you have ideas and thoughts, but you should know that such a thing is not allowed in any dynasty or country, let alone in the Tang dynasty." Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted Wei Zheng. He was almost led astray by Old Wei. He hurriedly said, "Old Wei, why does everything you say have something to do with the imperial court? My special force is actually the security team on the mountain, but it's for the outside world. Our industry is now spread all over Chang, and in many places near Chang'an. Moreover, the opening of the waterway also needs some security guards to maintain the normal business order, right? We don't participate in other things. We just want to prevent people from targeting us. What's wrong with that? Besides, it's not like we haven't done such things in Chang and city before." Wei Zheng asked suspiciously, "What are you talking about?" "It's the method that I mentioned before. We used to promote deep-fried locusts, bone-strengthening powder, and so on. What's more, what Tang Yo and the others need to do now is to focus on the rumors of the 5 families and 7 major clans, Guanlong and Shandong landlords, and draw out the pair of big hands behind them. Only in this way can we ensure that Shao Mountain and even Chang and city won't fall into chaos. Actually, this is also called diverting the disaster." Fang Xianling was a little confused and asked, "Then why did you let them do this?" "That's right, Fengzi. If it's just creating rumors, these kids are all talented and can do it easily. Why do they need to learn these things?" Yu Qigong and the others asked curiously. Zhang Feng nodded and said, "You're all right. In fact, that's what this thing means. However, have you ever thought about it? Is it just to create rumors? What's the purpose of creating rumors? We're doing this because we want to find out the real culprit behind this. In the next quarter of an hour, I'll train them on their ability to resist attacks, their endurance, their reaction speed, their ability to distinguish positions by listening, and their ability to react quickly. These are all necessary skills and they'll be able to settle down in the future. I don't need them to kill people. In fact, I'm doing this for them to protect themselves." "Yes. Give them the ability to protect themselves." This time, everyone was in an uproar. Cheng Chumo and the others felt even more uncomfortable. These things seemed very simple. He knew all about sensitivity and so on. But what did it mean by protect themselves? Could it be, at this time, Li Shimin's expression became a little solemn. At the same time, he was also a little conflicted. This group of people, if successfully trained, would be very important to the imperial power in the imperial court. But the only bad thing was that if these people's identities were discovered, what would happen to the imperial court? What would happen to the big hand behind this? If all these were discovered to be Zhang Feng's idea, or if these people's faces were seen by others, then, "Fengzi, why don't we do this later? I think it's too risky. Think about it, if these people are recognized, what will happen?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "I know this." Li Shimin was stunned. "If you know, then why do you still do it?" "Because I know, that's why I have to get them out. Have you ever thought about why I only want 50 people and not more?" Li Shimin really didn't know about this. Zhang Feng looked around and said, "In fact, I want to divide them into 5 teams. Tang Yo and the others will be the team leaders, and I'll specially make clothes, equipment, masks and so unsuitable for them. I want them to be the most terrifying existence in the world. Have you ever thought about how the emperor will feel if he knows about this? Li Shimin's voice fell. In an instant, everyone looked slightly surprised. They subconsciously looked at Zhang Feng, waiting for his answer. This time the emperor seemed to be really angry. This was really a difficult thing to do. If it was not done well, the world would be in chaos. Zhang Feng spread out his hands and pointed at Cheng Chimo and the others. That's why I arranged 6 of them. The extra one will be the team leader of the special forces, and the team leader will be rotated every 3 months. Most importantly, why did I choose retired soldiers? Do you know the reason? Chapter 14:16. Who could guess what Zhang Feng was thinking? Hearing Zhang Feng's words at this time, Li Shimin was unhappy, but he still asked, "What's your plan?" Zhang Feng smiled faintly and said, "These people have good qualities and are loyal to the emperor and patriotism. Although they have retired, they are still in contact with people in the army such as superiors, brothers and so on. Their existence will inevitably be passed to the emperor's ears. And if my guess is right, the emperor will not touch our people for the time being." Li Shimin's expression became a little strange and said, "Are you so sure?" "So sure. You don't believe me, Lao Li? Go and ask old you. This guy almost choked me to death last time when I wanted to build a fully automatic textile factory. Why did he do that? Don't you know that he sends a lot of materials to his brothers in the army every year?" Hearing this, Li Shimin suddenly understood. Although he had known this for a long time and knew that this matter was fake, it was fake after all. At this time Zhang Feng was telling the truth. Zhang Feng didn't wait for Li Shimin to ask and continued, "In fact, they will think that they are just passing on the materials between brothers. But what they don't know is that these generals are the god of war of the Tang dynasty. How can they escape from their eyes and ears?" Yuchi Gong, Niu Jinda, Cheng Yaojin, and the others heard this and couldn't help but feel a little happy in their hearts. But the next moment Zhang Feng said again, "And if they know these things, who will they tell? Of course it will be the emperor. These people are loyal to the emperor, which is not comparable to ordinary people. But these people also have a disadvantage, which is that they like to drink too much. When they drink, they like to quarrel, and when they quarrel, they like to scare and brag. If we want to keep this matter a secret, we'll have to rely on His Majesty's actions. Everything we've done has been done from the perspective of the Great Tang, so you can be at ease. His Majesty won't blame us and will only support us even more. Moreover, once we defeat this major clan, the one who will benefit the most will still be His Majesty. Do you think His Majesty is a fool? Does he really want to rush up and fight these big aristocratic families?" Li Shimin wanted to laugh. "Is this how I am in your heart?" Li Shimin was speechless and asked, "This is just your guess. If the emperor knows this, why do you think he will choose to believe it? And what if other ministers such as the civil officials know it? Then you're thinking too much." Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Lao Li, you just don't pay attention to the court. Think about it, how many people in the court are profiting because of the salt, the trade with Jinla, the beer, barbecue and other things? These are all our things. At this time they have long been used to this way of eating. Brewing beer, making salt, making braised meat, and removing the smell of pig's meat are all in our hands. How can they not think of the pros and cons? We're dealing with a common enemy. Only by killing all these guys can we truly make a fortune together. Old Li, do you think you'll end up like you because of those old foxes? There's also Lao Li." Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin on the shoulder and said, "You are really not suitable for business. But fortunately you have Lao Li. Also, I found a good seedling for you. If you train him with all your strength, I believe that in less than 10 years, even if you don't want any title, you can stomp your feet in any country and the emperor will come running to invite you. Do you believe it?" "Ah." Li Shimin laughed with a fake smile. Hearing this, Zhang Feng wanted to slap him. Of course he was talking about the money string. However, this guy needed to be properly trained. He definitely couldn't do it here. With 2 beautiful fiancées around, others might not feel at ease, but he, Zhang Feng, couldn't. So at this time, teaching Chen Xiang was difficult. He thought he could use this opportunity to push him to Lao Li, but this old thing was too cunning and didn't take the bait at all. Zhang Feng could only say helplessly, "Actually, these are not important. The most important thing is that if the emperor wants to hold power and defeat these big clans, he has to stand with me. It's that simple. In addition, the Great Tang's economy is currently flourishing. How could His Majesty allow these great clans to sway? For example, during the autumn planting this time, the Wang clan suddenly cut off the ironware supply. If something like this happens again, then it will be an extremely terrifying existence." Hearing this, Li Shimin coughed confidently and said, "Fengzi, let me tell you a piece of good news. In Chang and City, more than a dozen ironware shops and blacksmiths were all opened yesterday afternoon and today morning. Ah. Zhang Feng couldn't wrap his head around it. After a while he asked, "What you said, is it true? They really opened all of them?" Li Shimin spread his hands and said calmly, "Do I need to lie to you?" Zhang Feng heard this and was instantly dumbfounded. What the F***ck is this? Chapter 14-17. The ironware workshops in Chang, and were basically managed by the Ironware Bureau of the Agriculture Department of the Ministry of Works. No one knew whether it was good or bad that such a big problem occurred at this time. Shut it down. Then shut it down. But why would it be opened again at this time? What kind of operation was this? Everyone saw clearly what happened in Chang and City yesterday. At this time, to open this thing in Chang and City was to court death. What was the meaning of this? Was it deliberately aimed at them? Zhang Feng really didn't understand. At this time, to get all these people out, there was no doubt that there was a problem. Did the Wang family really want to confront them? Li Shimin saw Zhang Feng's doubts and gently waved his hand. Fang Xianling said, "Fengzi, do you know what the emperor found out since these shops opened yesterday and when we went up the mountain today?" Zhang Feng naturally didn't know, so he asked, "What did he find out?" Fang Xianling smiled faintly and inadvertently glanced at Li Shimin. Seeing that Li Shimin didn't speak, he said slowly, "There are other people behind these shops, but some of them are local people in Chang'an. When the farming season comes, these people will bring things to the fields to sell their farm tools, so... But not everyone is like this. This is just a part of them. Some of them also have farms in their families. I think there are strict rules in their laws. During the autumn planting season, no matter what happens, they can't affect or delay the planting. Those who violate the rules will be severely punished. And 5 of them are from the Wang family, but they are all collateral relatives of the Wang family. They have nothing to do with the Wang family." The last sentence was the key point. Zhang Feng couldn't help but frown deeply when he heard that. You mean the Wang family really doesn't know what happened in Chang'an City? That's too strange, isn't it? Think about it, this is the Wang family. And where was this place? After investigating so many things, almost all of them have the Wang clan's shadow. Look, after returning from Nantian, it was the iron mine that suddenly ran out of stock. Then they went to the 4 major clans to cause trouble. Which one of them didn't have the Wang clan's shadow behind them? Now you're telling me that this wasn't done by the Wang family? Is this a joke? Zhang Feng suspected that Lao Li had been bribed by the Wang family. Who couldn't see such an obvious thing? Most importantly, the Wang family had always been in contact with them the most. They were also the most suspicious. At this time, no matter who it was, the Wang family had nothing to do with this matter. Zhang Feng could only respond with a chuckle. However, he never thought that it would be Lao Li's son who told him about this. This was what surprised him the most. "Lao Li, what benefits did the Wang family give you to make you speak for them like this?" Li Shimin shook his head and sighed. If only that were the case. Think about it, what benefits does the Wang family get by targeting us, the emperor and the people of the world? This is a criminal law that even a 3-year-old child knows about. Do you think the Wang clan's people don't know? At first, I also suspected that the Wang clan was behind all this. However, when Lord Jiangsun personally showed me the results of the investigation last night, I realized that the Wang family seemed to be pushed out by someone just like Kang Yingda. Ha! Zhang Feng's hair stood on end when he heard that. The Wang clan was pushed out to be a shield? How was that possible? Who was so charming that the Wang clan was willing to be a shield? For a moment, Zhang Feng felt that this hand seemed to be too big. From the war at the border, to some people in the imperial court, to the 5 families and 7 clans, to the nobles in Shandong, could it be? Zhang Feng's expression changed instantly. Could it be that the people in Guanlong were also instructed by them? But they were unintentionally destroyed by him, and he even got his allies, which made this mysterious person angry out of humiliation. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng suddenly understood. It seemed that everything made sense. From the incident in Nantian to the return to Chang, and these things seemed to have just begun to brew. All of this really seemed like revenge. When he thought of this, the question returned to the original starting point. Was this manipulated by someone? Or what? Otherwise, why would these shops that didn't belong to the same power choose to open at the same time overnight? It didn't make sense at all. And most importantly, after what happened in Chang and City yesterday, no one would choose to open at this time, right? Zhang Feng's face gradually became gloomy. He said lightly, "I understand. This is a threat." Li Shimin nodded. "You're right. I didn't notice it before, but this morning I figured out why these people chose to open at the same time yesterday, and why the power behind the Mi family, Bai family, Tang family, and Gao family didn't do anything. As he spoke, Li Shimin said with a grave expression, Fengzi, have you ever thought that these people might have been fabricated by someone? In fact, how could there be any nobles behind them? Chapter 14:18. In fact, Zhang Feng had already thought of Li Shimin's idea just now. However, this matter was too mysterious. Zhang Feng himself didn't believe it. How could such a thing happen? But now that Li Shimin said this, Zhang Feng's expression couldn't help but stagnate. Zhang Feng's expression was extremely solemn. He didn't speak. He sat there and smoked while thinking about things. After thinking for a while he said, "You're right. I also thought about it. But don't you think that if this matter is really as you said, it's too scary?" What are you talking about? Why are you so anxious? Fengzi, just tell me, who do you want to beat up? I'll find someone to beat him up now. Qing Yaojin couldn't stand it. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to beat someone up. Fang Shenling hurriedly pulled Qing Yaojin back and said, "Old Hey, calm down first. This matter has to be done slowly. Now we don't even know who is causing trouble. How are we going to deal with it? Who do we beat up? Tell me about it. You can't beat up whoever you don't like, right? It's still better than being cooped up here. This is 2F** King frustrating," Qing Yaojin said indignantly. Zhang Feng didn't know that this was a provocation. He said speechlessly, "I say, old Qin, if you want to find an excuse, can't you find a better one? It's not fun to play like this." "Well, since you said this, then I'll explain it to you. In fact, this matter will be solved eventually. But as for how to solve it, that's secondary. Aren't I building a special team now? When my special forces team is done, there won't be any monsters to hide." Qing Yaojin curled his lips and said, "With your people, the dishes will be cold by the time you're done." Li Shimin nodded slightly and glared at Qing Yaojin. Qing Yaojin immediately shut up. In fact, Li Shimin had been worried about this for a long time. When he was outside the door, Li Shimin heard his conversation and knew some of the ways and means. 2 months. Within these 2 months it could happen at any time. It couldn't wait for 2 months. Seeing this, Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin and said, "I really underestimated you. Yes, I do have a plan that I haven't told you." Li Shimin guessed that Zhang Feng had other plans. He hurriedly asked, "Then tell me, what do you think?" Zhang Feng gestured for everyone to sit down, then slowly said, "Actually, Tainyo and the others really need to go and train. This is the last step, the last step. They will only be used as a last resort. At the very least, they will be able to form a fighting force after 2 months. Only then will they be able to determine victory and defeat. During this period we have to find the mastermind behind this. I have a terrible intuition that this mastermind's plot may not be simple." Li Shimin's face suddenly changed. From the border issue to the arms smuggling, and to some things that could be manipulated in Chang, and it seemed that this mastermind's plot was not small. But it didn't seem to be a big deal, right? But this matter revealed a hint of strangeness. Everything was too coincidental. Coincidentally, right after the Tang dynasty dealt with the food shortage, there was a border war, which scattered most of the Tang dynasty's forces. Even more coincidentally, India and the Turks suddenly formed an alliance at this time, not to target the Tang dynasty, nor Tubo and other countries. Instead they chose a remote place, Zhenla. What was their intention? Zhenla was surrounded. He had guessed that the emperor would send troops to help. If the emperor didn't send troops, Zhenla and the Potato Kingdom would think that they had no ability to estimate their allies. Once this idea was formed, it would instantly damage the reputation of the Tang dynasty. In this case, it could easily cause the prestige of the Tang dynasty to be damaged. Shirwei, Goguryeo, Zhenla, Tubo, Tuyuhun, and other countries in the north would instantly panic. If anything happened to the Tang dynasty, they would definitely send troops at the first moment. What was his intention? As he thought of this, Li Shimin hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, what do you think this mysterious person or mysterious thing is scheming?" Imperial power. Zhang Feng really didn't want to say this word. However, after thinking about it, he decided not to say it out loud. After all, if the emperor were to find out about it, or if other people with ulterior motives were to hear it, he would be completely finished. This wasn't talking about imperial politics, it was courting death. The current crown prince, Li Qingqian or Li Tai, could be the culprit. But he had heard that Li Tai was only 6 or 7 years old. What would a child like him know? As for Li Qingqian, although there was indeed a case of Li Qingqian usurping the throne in history, it was because of Li Tai. But there was no need for him to make preparations so early, right? and that Ho Junji didn't seem to be doing much at this time. Zhang Feng had seen Ho Junji before, so he paid close attention to him. This man was the main culprit behind Li Qingqian's coup. But given the current situation of the Tang dynasty, as long as Ho Junji wasn't a fool, he wouldn't allow Li Qingqian to jump out at this time. Moreover, these matters were far too complicated. Zhang Feng had thought that the mastermind behind the scenes might be Ho Junji. After all, this man had once been a famous scholar, and his son had a rather high prestige in the military. The reason he had bravely retreated to protect himself was because he wanted to support Crown Prince Li Qingqian. But, at present, Ho Junji didn't seem to have the ability to make the people of the 5 clans and 7 clans and the nobles of Shandong listen to his orders. And there was also the problem of the border. He was Ho Junji. What ability did he have to lay down such a terrifying net? Was he worthy? Chapter 1419. Alas. Zhang Feng rubbed his head with a headache. He really couldn't figure out who had such great ability to do such an awesome step. Damn it, it was impossible to succeed. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that all of this was really impossible. After all, the probability of success was almost zero. Could it be that several forces joined forces? Just like Guanlong and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans supported Li Yuan to overthrow Yangguang? Zhang Feng had an even bigger headache at this time. He rubbed his temples and said, forget it. Let's not think about it. It's not good for us to guess blindly here. After all, even if the sky falls, there are still tall people to hold it up for us. Li Shimin didn't like to hear this. Why did you stop at the critical moment? I've already prepared and you're telling me this? Li Shimin said speechlessly, Fengzi, just say it. Although there is a tall person to hold it up. Could it be that the tall person you're talking about is the emperor? Zhang Feng nodded. Yes, who else do you think has such ability? Li Shimin was immediately unhappy. What the hell was this? He hurriedly said, don't be like this. Tell me, what is your guess? Fang Shenling and the others also looked at Zhang Feng anxiously. If Zhang Feng could really guess the person or direction, then they would have a direction to pursue. They wouldn't be led by the nose like now, right? Zhang Feng looked at everyone strangely and said, I think there's something wrong with your heads. The emperor hasn't said anything. What are you shouting for? And wasn't yesterday's lesson enough? You want to find trouble for me again today, right? Li Shimin's face stiffened when he heard this. While coughing, he kicked Fang Shenling and Wei Zheng, making them pretend that they didn't notice. They lowered their heads and pondered. Li Shimin had no choice but to bite the bullet and say, aren't we just chatting for fun? Besides, what's the big deal if you say it roughly? We still have some precautions, don't we? It's better than not knowing anything, right? If we really encounter a problem at that time, it will be too late even if we want to pull down our businesses. This lost sight. Li Shimin poured out a lot of bitter water. To put it bluntly, he just wanted Zhang Feng to say 1, 2, 3. He knew that Zhang Feng must have known something. But this was also a coincidence. Zhang Feng really wasn't acting tough this time. He really didn't expect this. But Li Shimin didn't believe it. Zhang Feng couldn't help but want to slap himself. Alright, don't think too much. This time, I really didn't know what went wrong and I really didn't know who was behind it. If I knew who was behind it, do you think Zhang Feng, would still be sitting here right now? Li Shimin sighed in disappointment. Things were back to square one. This undoubtedly made him feel even more depressed. He thought that Zhang Feng really knew who was behind it, but now it seemed that Zhang Feng didn't know the specifics. It seemed that this kid didn't know as much as I did this time. Li Shimin was a little happy. After all, it was rare to see Zhang Feng suffer. Looking at Zhang Feng, Li Shimin smacked his lips and said, Fengzi, didn't you just say that you wanted Li Gan and the others to get some gunpowder? What kind of operation is this? Right. At the mention of this, Li Shimin instantly remembered that Zhang Feng seemed to have said that there was still something to do. He hurriedly said, didn't you just say that Tai Nyo and the others were the last step? What about before that? It can't be that you want Gan and the others to use gunpowder, right? Zhang Feng wanted to say something, but seeing Li Shimin's annoying look, he finally held back. After a while, he said, do you think that gunpowder is a wild vegetable by the roadside? That it will come as you say? That thing is prepared for Chiotzi. Once it is delivered to Chiotzi, it will set the beginning of our plan for the trade route. And the decisive power of this war has nothing to do with our plan. Don't even think about it. This thing is a hot potato. Whoever holds it will suffer. Later, I will make this thing and you will send it to the palace tonight. This thing will be a headache for the emperor. Also, during this period, I remember that Li Gan has a group of powerful people under him. Do you know Lao Li? Hearing this, Wei Zheng and the others were secretly shocked. Could it be that the crown prince was gathering power in the imperial court? Li Shimon's expression gradually became serious. He glanced at Wei Zheng and the others, then looked into Zhang Feng's eyes and asked, Fengzi, who told you about this? Why don't I know about it? What ability does he have to gather a group of powerful people? It is nothing more than a group of stubborn sons. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, You misunderstood. I know that he can't hold a court meeting. What I mean is, does he know some hooligans in Chang'an City? I say, you mean Qian'er or those spies in the city? Zhang Feng nodded and said, That's right. Same old rules. If Li Gan has such connections, I believe that your connections are even wider. What I want is your connections. Use the old ways to spread rumors about me. Chapter 1420. The eyes of Li Shimon and the others lit up in an instant. That's right. An eye for an eye. In this case, as long as the momentum was built up, they really had a chance to get something out of these people. After all, villains were hard to guard against. Zhang Feng said again, In fact, it's easy to understand. Everyone is very tight-lipped, especially about this kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that everyone will be so tight-lipped. And the most important thing is that they always have a maid or some subordinates, right? As long as we change the direction of the spearhead, it's easy to get some clues. In the past we always looked at the sky. Now let's not look at the sky anymore. The things in the sky have already been killed by them. Now we only need to look at the ground. The water on the ground and the mud will leave a trace of their footprints, right? As long as we follow the footprints, it will always be easier. But this is also a matter of risk. Li Shimon was listening with great interest. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng's words, he couldn't help but feel as if he had fallen into an abyss. He already had some ideas. At this time, when Zhang Feng said this, Li Shimon asked subconsciously, What's the risk? Isn't it just a matter of a sentence? For him, this was not even an imperial edict. Not to mention the crown prince, there were hundreds of spies in Chang, and under his command. And this kind of rumor had been around since the locusts. At this time, it seemed to be the best way to use this. What these people did was somewhat similar to what Zhang Feng said. If they could find clues, they would basically erase them. Now it was really impossible to find clues from this. Thinking about it, Li Shimon said anxiously, Fengzi, are you worried that if this matter gets out of hand, it will arouse the emperor's anger? Zhang Feng nodded and said, Indeed. After all, this is under the emperor's rule. We have to be careful if we do something here. If someone tells the emperor and impeaches us, then, even if we have the support of Lord Zhang's son, the emperor will probably be angry. It's fine. Lord Zhang's son told me about this method today. His Majesty seems to have the same idea, but it's just an idea. Now that you said it, I think it's feasible. Zhang Feng was surprised. You mean the emperor also has the same idea? Yes. Then why didn't you say so earlier? Zhang Feng glared and said, All right, since we've discussed it, there's no need to continue. After all, I don't know if there are any spies on the mountain. I'm prepared to make a big deal about Tang and the others. At the very least, I want everyone on the mountain to know that they are just a cover. They are the ones who are stirring up trouble on the surface. The ones who spread the rumors in Chang'an City are the main ones. Once they find clues, I will let Tang and the others take action. Didn't you say that the iron mine has recovered? If that's the case, it means that our people on Mount Longsho have found the ore. This is a good thing. This way I can speed up the forging workshop on the mountain. At the same time, I won't let Li Gan and the rest leave the mountain for the time being. Once the phosphate fertilizer technology is confirmed and the phosphate fertilizer factory is set up, they will devote all their efforts to the research and development of this technology. The Research Institute. This was the lifeline of White Deer College. Rather than saying that Zhang Feng had built an academy, it was more accurate to say that the entire academy was a channel for the Research Institute to provide fresh blood. It was also a pretense. Once these people focused their attention on the academy itself, they would not be able to do anything. Only then would he have the chance to stir up trouble under their noses. For example, this bomb. This was the most important thing at the moment. Once he confirmed it, at the very least, there would be no wars at the border for the time being. Once it was delayed until the next spring when the grains were harvested, everything would be much easier. With grains in hand, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for them to attack wherever they wanted? Now all the food was concentrated in the hands of the wealthy families. There weren't many fields that belonged to the commoners. Zhang Feng didn't want to reform the farmland system. That would be courting death. Think about how Wang Mang died in history. This was a lesson learned from the mistakes of the past. This phosphate fertilizer project almost caused him to fail. When the time came, would he have to change the farmland system? Even if His Majesty agreed, would the other civil and military officials agree? It wasn't impossible to get them to agree. As long as their granaries were filled and their food became common goods, they would only worry about having more fields. To put it bluntly, it was still a lack of food. Once there was more food, how could there be such a problem? 10,000 miles? How could such a thing happen? Once he thought of Qian Wanli, Zhang Feng's expression darkened. Li Shimin also noticed the change in Zhang Feng's expression. He didn't know how to comfort him. He only sighed and said, "Don't think about this anymore. We'll talk about it when we find the mastermind." "Alright, Fengzi, tell me, this phosphate fertilizer really has such a miraculous effect. Also, what exactly is that thing you planted in the East Court?" Chapter 14:21. Zhang Feng was stunned. His expression changed in an instant. "You went to my East Court?" Li Shimin shook his head again and again. He pointed at Niu Jinda and said, "I don't know. Ask him." In one sentence he completely betrayed Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda was depressed. But who asked him to be the emperor? Niu Jinda had no choice but to bite the bullet and say with a smile, "Well, last time when he saw that the tiger leg was slightly better, he wanted to go and thank you. But we heard that you went down the mountain and thought that you were in your residence, so we went to visit you. But we didn't know what gift to bring, so we brought you a calligraphy and painting." That kid was very curious. He couldn't sit still and wanted to wander around the courtyard, saying that he wanted to breathe fresh air. In the end, he saw the old man at the entrance of the East Court. Niu Jinda knew that this matter could not be hidden, and he also wanted to know what that thing was. Even the imperial physician did not know what it was. It showed how precious this thing was. It had already happened. What could Zhang Feng say? He glared at Niu Jinda speechlessly and said, "Old Niu, I really didn't hide this matter. That thing is actually an experiment. I don't know if it will work. And the seed of that thing, as far as the current situation is concerned, there are only a few of us in the entire Tang dynasty. As for whether there are other places, I don't know. In short, I got it from a merchant in the western regions. I heard that it floated over from the other side of the sea." At this time, if Zhang Feng's history was true, then the magical potato should still be in America. And there was only one place that could float over from the sea. It must have come from the Strait of Sherway from North America all the way across the sea, or because of a typhoon. This was the only explanation that could be found now. Then it was obtained by these merchants as a treasure. But this thing was bitter raw, so no one knew what it was. It floated all the way to the western regions. In the end, it fell into Zhang Feng's hands. How many coincidences must there be for such a miraculous thing to happen? What if this thing got soaked in the seawater and became rotten? What if this thing sprouted along the way? That was the most amazing thing. After a series of coincidences, it fell into Zhang Feng's hands. It would be strange if Zhang Feng didn't treat it as a treasure. Zhang Feng explained, "This thing's scientific name is potato. It's a rare treasure in number 1 middle school. As for how precious it is, I can't tell you for the time being. Anyway, I'll give you a surprise when the time comes." Seeing that Zhang Feng was unwilling to say, Li Shimin had no choice but to treat him as a treasure. Something that Zhang Feng treasured so much must be a treasure. But as for how precious it was, that was unknown. But in Li Shimin's opinion, no matter how precious it was, it shouldn't be like this, right? He didn't take it seriously and shook his head. "That potato, did it also use this phosphate fertilizer?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Didn't you all see it? Since you've seen it, why are you still asking me? Okay, don't ask anymore. If I say that phosphate fertilizer is useful, it's really useful. If there's nothing else, I'll go and do the experiment now. I'll try to get this thing done in a short time. Alright, Lao Li, have you found the factory I asked you to find?" Li Shimin saw that Zhang Feng brought the question back to the main topic and sighed. "It's done. Didn't old Niu find the phosphate stone mine at the south foot of Longzhou Mountain? I'm going to build the factory there. Behind that place is the royal plantation. Further south is the Daming Palace in Chang'an City. It's also the most heavily guarded place in Chang'an. Under normal circumstances, there won't be any problems. As for the factory, I've already found someone to build it. But that place is too barren. There's not even water. Are you sure you want to put it there? No water?" Zhang Feng was stunned. Water was an important step in the extraction of phosphate fertilizer. If there was no water, it would be troublesome. Zhang Feng thought for a while and asked, "I remember that there's water on Longzhou Mountain, right? I have a map here. Take a look at it first." Li Shimin took out a map from his arms. This was a detailed map of the entire area from Daming Palace to Longzhou Mountain. However, this was a map that Li Shimin redrew after removing some important military advisors. Zhang Feng looked at the mountains and ravines on the map and couldn't help but frown slightly. The map was very detailed. The names and directions of the mountains were clearly marked on it. The area with the phosphate stone in the south foot of Longsho Mountain wasn't big. It was just a mountain that extended to the royal plantation on the main peak of Longsho Mountain. Perhaps it was because the soil and water here was too fertile that the emperor chose to build the royal plantation here? As for the area where the phosphate stone was located, although it was a stretch of sloping land, there wasn't a single river or canal. Perhaps this was why the emperor didn't choose to build the royal plantation here even though it was more fertile. Instead, he chose another place. This was difficult to handle. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel somewhat distressed. Chapter 1422. However, there was no water, so there was no way to make it. Moreover, the toxicity of this thing was too great. This piece of land was a wasteland. There was no trace of people within 100 miles. It was a natural barrier. It was a good choice to build the phosphate fertilizer factory here. If the factory was moved and the poisonous gas leaked out, it would be bad. It might even give people a reason to talk about it. Seeing Zhang Feng frowning, Li Shimin came forward and asked, "Take a look. What do you think of this place? If it doesn't work, just move it 10 miles south to the Longsho Canal." "No." Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin and said, "Lao Li, this thing can only be here. You know how important this thing is. Once people know too much about it, it will be fatal. Moreover, the raw stone of this thing is poisonous. If something happens to the palace, none of us will be able to handle it. Moreover, although the place is good and the transportation is convenient, this is also the drawback. Actually, this method of making phosphate fertilizer is not complicated. Anyone who learns it will be able to do it. Do you think that this business will be learned by others?" At this moment, Li Shimin suddenly came to his senses. "Then, tell me, without water, what do we do?" Zhang Feng snapped his fingers and said, "Actually, there is a way to do this thing. Think about it, who am I? I am Zhang Feng." Li Shimin rolled his eyes. "If you have something to say, just say it. What time is it now? Are you still bragging?" Zhang Feng was shocked by Li Shimin's words, but he was not angry. He chuckled and said, "Now you know why I asked Li Gan and the rest to stay and do this, right?" As he spoke, Zhang Feng shouted at the door, "Shiva, go and call Li Gan and Du Bing over. I have something to tell them." Not long after, Li Qingqian and Du Go came in, but they looked reluctant. They had just heard everything from Shiva. Why was he calling them over now? Wasn't it because he wanted them to go to that place? Who would want to go to such a desolate and uninhabited place? However, he still had to enter the door. The emperor and other officials were present, so he did not dare to act rashly. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng said with a smile, "I remember that I asked you guys to make me a water wheel when the workshop just started, right?" Li Qingqian was shocked when he heard this. If Zhang Feng hadn't mentioned it today, he would have forgotten about it long ago. Moreover, he had thought that Zhang Feng was joking about it. And how long had it been since Zhang Feng had mentioned it? Who would take it seriously? Besides, wasn't that a joke? If this thing could really be set up from the ground and made the water flow from the bottom to the top, would they still be here? Furthermore, this thing, damn it. How could this be done by a human? Li Shimin was also confused. They all stared at Zhang Feng, wanting to see what tricks he was going to play. Seeing Li Qingqian and Du go like this, Zhang Feng said, "During this period of time, you guys have learned about physics and air and water resistance, right?" Li Qingqian did not know what Zhang Feng wanted to ask, so he nodded subconsciously and said, "Almost? Then I'll rely on you guys. How does water move?" "It moves according to the natural laws of gravity and geology." "What's water pressure?" "Water pressure is... What's atmospheric pressure?" Zhang Feng interrogated them carefully. Li Qingqian and Du Go could answer fluently, which made Du Ruhui and Li Shimin very excited. They stroked their beards and nodded calmly. It was as if this was how it was. After Zhang Feng interrogated them, he asked, "Since you guys have understood this principle, I'll give you a task now. Bring water from the lake to all the villas and complete this project within 10 days. How about it?" "The water I'm talking about is to pass through the second-floor balcony of the villas, and then the water will have to return to the lake. Are you confident?" This, Li Qingqian and Du Go were sweating profusely. If you were talking about ordinary water diversion, you could just dig a canal and complete it in less than 10 days. But you want to pass through the second-floor balcony of the villas? The two of them subconsciously looked at the second floor of the villa opposite the window. Then they looked at Hu in the distance and were stunned. Although this seemed simple, it was more difficult than passing water to the workshop. Li Qingqian said with a sobbing tone, Fengzi, why don't we go and connect the water to the workshop? This is too difficult. Think about it, although the lake is high up, this villa area is at least 10 feet above the lake. How can this work? Zhang Feng ignored Li Qingqian's complaints and said, Oh right, I forgot one thing. That is, from the lake to here, you are not allowed to dig a canal on the ground. Moreover, you have to bring a separate canal to the academy's dormitory area. The time limit is still 10 days. If you can complete the test, I'll give each of you a composite bow. No, I can't do it. This is not something a human can do. Li Qingqian and Du Go could not help but complain. Li Shimin coughed and said with a cold voice, These are the things you learned in the mountains during this period of time? This is also my test. If you can complete what Fengzi said within 10 days, get lost to Longyu Road. Chapter 1423. Li Shimin didn't understand what Zhang Feng was going to do at first. Sometimes, it was to draw water to the workshop. Sometimes, it was to ask them about aerodynamics, hydrodynamics and so on. Although he didn't understand these things, he always felt that it seemed to be something very awesome. And Li Shimin was quite satisfied with Li Qingqian's answer just now. This was his son. This was what the crown prince of the Tang dynasty should have. But when Zhang Feng asked them to take action, they were stumped. What was the difference between this and an embroidered pillow? This was what made Li Shimin angry the most. As long as you guys put in a little more effort, how is this thing difficult? How was it difficult? You understood the things in the book, but you still didn't know how to tinker with that thing. What was the difference between this and an armchair strategist? After all this time, this finally happened. How could Li Shimin not be angry? Qin Yaojin and the others also looked at Li Qingqian with smiles, but when they saw Li Shimin looking over, they hurriedly put on a straight face and said in a serious voice, This is a good thing. Although I don't know what this thing is, once it is made, it will definitely be a good thing that will leave a mark in history. Think about it, since ancient times, who can make water flow from a low place to a high place? So, just now I was thinking that since Fengzi asked you to do it, you must have a certain degree of confidence. Didn't you just say that this thing doesn't seem to be difficult for you? Don't make your father uncomfortable. The sooner you make this thing, the sooner the phosphate fertilizer factory can start working. This is all money. Yes, old He is right. Qin, do you still remember what you said to me when you came to Fengzi? Li Shimin also gave advice. In an instant, Du Ruhui, Wei Zheng, and the others also gave advice to Li Qingqian and Li Qingqian. Their meaning was clear. They had to do this thing whether they wanted to or not. Moreover, from the few words spoken by these people, the meaning that flowed out was already very clear. At a time like this thing is a lifesaver. Once it's produced, it will benefit everyone. In any case, the entire Great Tang will be yours. If you create this wonderful thing that benefits both the country and the people, your prestige in the court will soar. Once you ascend to the throne in the future, you'll be able to do so. That would be a lot of benefits. Anyway, to put it bluntly, even if you want to go, you still have to go. Everyone said so, and Zhang Feng, who deserved a beating, didn't say anything. He just looked at them with a smile. What could he say? Li Qingqian could only cup his fists and clench his teeth as he said, Then this student will go and prepare now. As they spoke, Li Qingqian and Du Go hurriedly slipped away. If they stayed any longer, they would be driven mad. Although they also knew that this thing was definitely related to the phosphate mine on Longzhou Mountain, how could such a thing be produced? Wasn't this a fantasy? Once they went out, the two of them looked listlessly at the lake under the waterfall in the distance, and couldn't help but sigh again. Debing, do you think this thing is King Fengzi, that bastard, tricking us? Du Go looked behind him. After seeing that there was no one, he said bitterly, I suspect that this is a trap set by them. How could they do this? I have something to say. At this time, a timid voice sounded weakly behind them. The two of them were so scared that they trembled. Turning his head to look, he saw the kid that Zhang Feng brought back squatting at the corner of the wall, weaving straw sandals. Beside him was a fat goat licking his straw sandals. Moreover, it had even bitten a hole in it. This person was Qian Wanli's silly younger brother. He was picked up by Zhang Feng. He was very quiet, as if he didn't exist. At this time, seeing him speak, Li Qingqian waved his hand impatiently, and didn't intend to pay attention to him. At this time, Qian Xiang said, Actually, water can flow upwards. I remember that on the Longzhou Canal in Chang'an City, there's a big water wheel. What do you know? What does that thing have to do with this? Li Qingqian's voice couldn't be lowered. He was already upset. Previously, when Zhang Feng arranged that kind of training, he was already unhappy. He also wanted to go. But Zhang Feng arranged for him to do this troublesome experiment. All he had to do was deal with these bottles and cans. How could it be as cool as brandishing a knife and wielding a gun? And the conversation between Li Qingqian and Qian Xiang'er was clearly heard by the few people in the living room. At this time, seeing Li Qingqian speak, Zhang Feng was a little surprised by Qian Xiang'er's behavior, but he still couldn't help but walk out of the room. He squatted beside Qian Xiang'er and asked, "How did you know?" "I heard about it. And I also heard that there are Marines. When people were in Tangzhou they saw this thing in the farmland. When you mentioned it just now, I guessed it." Zhang Feng patted Qian Xiang'er's shoulder, then looked at the listless Li Qingqian and Qian Wanli. He said with a smile, "Li Qingqian, I order you now as the dean. In these 10 days, listen to Qian Xiang'er's opinion on everything related to this thing. And from now on he's your brother. Within a month, teach him how to read and teach him the basic knowledge related to physics. Once you do that, I'll agree to one of your requests." Also, Zhang Feng smiled and said, "Qian Xiang'er has already told you the answer. That's right, the thing I'm talking about is actually linked to the water wheel. Think about it carefully. 10 days is plenty of time." Li Qingqian smacked his lips. He looked at Qian Xiang'er, then looked at Zhang Feng who had entered the room. He suddenly felt like crying. Chapter 14:24. Li Qingqian wanted to cry. Looking at Qian Xiang who was squatting in the corner, he felt like he was in Tesco. "I am the crown prince, okay? I am Li Qingqian, the current crown prince. You want me to learn from a fool? Learn what?" Sigh. Li Qingqian slapped his eyes, took a deep breath and waved his hand. "De bingo. Invite your junior brother back to our villa." After Li Qingqian and the other two left. In the room, Wei Zheng and the others looked at Zhang Feng strangely. Then they looked at Li Shimin, who looked a little unhappy and did not dare to say anything. Let the current crown prince communicate with a fool? This is probably the first time in history that such a weirdo has happened, right? Even storytellers would not dare to say this. Li Shimin was a little embarrassed. Looking at Zhang Feng, who was in a daze while making the customized map, he asked, "Fengzi, I know that you have been a little upset recently because of that Qian Wanli, but you don't have to push his younger brother away like this, right? If you think it's okay, I'll go find someone and let him live a rich life. How about that?" Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin and said with a faint smile, "If you don't want your family to fall, then you can choose this. Do you think that I, Zhang Feng, am blind? That I can bring anyone to the mountain?" Li Shimin and the other dukes' faces suddenly changed. Zhang Feng's words were simply disrespectful. Li Shimin asked, "What do you mean by this?" Zhang Feng put the map into his pocket. It was obvious that he had no intention of returning it to Li Shimin. He said, "Qian Xiang, I have a feeling that in less than 10 years the entire Tang dynasty, at least in the business world, will not be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. What's the point of having a family name? When that time comes, we won't even be able to see his back. That's why I brought him up the mountain. Li Gan and the others aren't interested in the business world, so it's understandable that you want Li Gan to take over your legacy. But have you ever thought that you're handing over such a big business to someone they don't like? Even if I'm there to support it in the future, what if I go somewhere else when the time comes? What will happen to him?" Li Shimin's eyes narrowed. He looked at the door and asked, "So you're saying that this kid is a prodigy in the business world?" Zhang Feng nodded his head. "Yini." Li Shimin was shocked. This was the first time he had received such praise from Zhang Feng. He had indeed seen Zhang Feng praise people before, but he had never seen Zhang Feng praise a person as a unique existence. Even Qian Wanli had not received such high praise. When he thought of Qian Xiang'er's silly look, Li Shimin could not help but go crazy. How could such a person be considered a business genius? That was simply the injustice of the heavens. Zhang Feng also saw the confusion on Li Shimin and the others' faces. He smiled and said, "Don't be fooled by his appearance. Although this kid looks a little foolish, this kind of person is the most terrifying. Previously, when I was in the Qian family, I also inadvertently discovered his talent in business. Perhaps this is the reason why people who don't walk the same path will not enter the same house? This kid wasn't born properly. He's an illegitimate child. However, he learned from his mother that his father is a businessman. If he wants to return home, he must be recognized. Moreover, his mother's life is actually quite miserable. Moreover, this kid was born with some brain problems in the eyes of others. So naturally he would be forgotten by the Qian family. In addition, this kid was stimulated by the death of his mother in his early years. This is even more incredible. But as the saying goes, when God closes a door for you, he will open a window for you. This kid is like this. Although he is a little silly, but in the business world, it can be said that Yu Laoli will be hung up and beaten if you were to ask him now. Although Li Shimin was not a real businessman, he also planned to firmly grasp the business power in his hands. Was this kid really as terrifying as Zhang Feng said? If this was the case, there was one thing that Zhang Feng did not say but everyone understood. That was this kid was a little silly. This was the easiest to control. Once he recognized a person, it was almost impossible for a second person to walk into his heart in this lifetime. This was also a point that Li Shimin slightly realized after studying Zhang Feng's psychological book and adding this time. At this time, Li Shimin was really looking forward to it. After 10 days, would it give him a surprise? If so, then in the future. Chapter 1425. Li Qingqian and Du Go spent a lot of effort to convince Chen Guang'er and invite him into the villa. This kid was stubborn. Other than Zhang Feng, he didn't believe anyone else. However, Zhang Feng had given them a strict order. They had no choice but to invite Chen Guang'er into the villa as if he was their ancestor. Inside the villa, Cheng Chumo and the others were really excitedly discussing the training this time. They were even shirtless. The entire living room was foggy, mixed with the smell of sweat. That feeling felt good. However, when they saw Li Qingqian and Du Go bring Chen Guang'er in with a gloomy face, they couldn't help but instantly quiet down. Cheng Chumo also hurriedly put on his clothes and asked, "I say, didn't you guys go to see Feng Zi? What's the situation?" Du Go pointed at Chen Guang'er and said, "Do you still remember the time when Feng Zi asked us to get water for the workshop? Who didn't remember this?" Everyone remembered. However, it had been a long time and they had forgotten. Now that Du Go said this, they suddenly remembered. Cheng Chumo widened his eyes in surprise and asked, "What? Feng Zi, do you still remember this?" Du Go looked at Li Qingqian's gloomy face and hurriedly called the timid Chen Guang'er to the side. He let him sit in the corner and eat snacks. Then he said, "Yes. However, this time he asked us to connect all the water in the villa area and the school dormitory area from the lake." When Cheng Chumo heard this, he didn't have much reaction. He nodded and said, "This is very simple. Tomorrow I'll find a few people to dig a canal. Isn't that enough? You're so worried just because of this? Simple?" Du Go was speechless as he stared at Cheng Chumo. Cheng Chumo sniffed and said, "Isn't that simple? If it's so simple, would he still be Feng Zi?" Li Qingqian sighed and said, "What he means is that we're not allowed to dig enough canals. Within 10 days we have to connect the water in the lake to the second-floor balconies of all the villas. Then we have to go around the dormitory area and return to the lake." Hearing this, in an instant everyone exploded. Bad day? Crazy? F***ck. Instantly, Cheng Chumo and the others were dumbfounded. Mother***, are they crazy? How could he possibly succeed in this matter? Wasn't this intentional? Wei Shuyu pointed at the string of money and said, "Then what does this kid do?" Du Go sighed and said, "When we went out, this kid said something about using the water wheel. Feng Zi came out and told us to bring him along." Water wheel? In an instant, everyone was stunned. They had seen a lot of water wheels. And he thought of many things in an instant. But at this time, using the principle of the water wheel to bring water to the villa? Or the second floor? Everyone couldn't help but glance at the top floor of the villa. It should be at least 10 feet tall, right? Although the lake was higher than the villa, the height of the villa, how could the water be directed to the second floor of the villa? And on the second floor of all the villas? A water wheel was indeed possible, but how big would it have to be to do that? This was simply impossible to accomplish. They couldn't help but look at Chen Xiang, who was hiding aside and eating snacks while secretly sizing them up. Wei Shuyu slowly walked forward, squatted beside Chen Xiang and asked, "Just now you said that it can be done with a water wheel?" Chen Xiang instinctively shrank back, glanced at Wei Shuyu and then looked at Cheng Chumo in fear and stammered timidly, "Well, it can be done, and it only needs 2 water wheels and some water troughs." Water troughs? 2 water wheels? Could this work? In an instant, Li Qingqian's face changed. So did everyone else. They really learned a lot of basic physics knowledge such as aerodynamics and hydrodynamics, and they knew many of them like the back of their hand. The most important thing was that they all knew about water wheels. They all had such things in their houses. But at this time, thinking of this, in an instant, everyone was suddenly enlightened. Li Qingqian looked at Chen Xiang in shock and asked, "Xiang, tell me honestly, Feng Zi told you all this in advance, right?" Chen Xiang was trembling from Li Qingqian's expression and aura at this time. She shivered behind the chair and said, I didn't, brother didn't tell me, this is all my guess. Don't blame brother. Buzz? Li Qingqian's head exploded. At this time, thinking of what Zhang Feng said at the door and his expression when he said it, and then looking at what Chen Xiang said now, Li Qingqian had an illusion that he had lived for nothing. Obviously. He was the one who studied the hardest. But in the end, why couldn't he think of such a simple thing? In the end, it was a little kid who didn't know anything to explain to him? And this kid had some problems with his head. Li Qingqian's face was a little ugly. He looked up, but saw Wei Shuyu, Du Go and the others' constipated expressions. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Dabing, tell me, we've been on the mountain for so long, why do I seriously suspect that we've just arrived? Chapter 1426. Actually, not to mention Li Qingqian and Du Go, although everyone had just seen a little bit of Chen Xian'er, they could feel how terrifying he was. This guy. He was simply a pervert. If it was before, Li Qingqian, Du Go and everyone else really thought that this was an impossible task. But now, with this kid's words, everyone instantly felt that there was a slight possibility this time. It could be done. 2 water wheels plus a series of water troughs, using the principles of water circulation and dynamics, this could really be done. And they thought of more than one problem. But the problem was filling the mountain with water at this time. This seemed. Qing Chumo looked at the door cautiously and said, Li Qingqian, is there a problem here, Fengzi? As he spoke, Qing Chumo pointed at his head and whispered again, if there's no problem, what kind of water are they filling the mountain with at this time? And most importantly, isn't it a little superfluous to do this at this time? Li Qingqian rolled his eyes and said, you don't know this, but the phosphate fertilizer factory on Mount Longsho has no water source. I reckon we'll have to make a trip to Mount Longsho when the time comes. This water trough, to put it bluntly, is a test. If we can complete it this time, then there's no problem. If we can't, haha, not to mention Fengzi, even my father will skin us alive. Speaking of this, everyone was even more worried. Especially Cheng Chumo. Although he seemed very excited from Yuchi Baolin's words just now, he vaguely felt that this perverted military training seemed to make him a little apprehensive. This thing was still the simplest, but that bastard Zhang Feng actually said that this was still the simplest, that they still had to train their resistance to beatings, endurance and so on. At first, everyone thought that this was a joke. But now, after Li Qingqian confirmed the water trough, Cheng Chumo instantly felt that the end had come. What the hell, this was not something that humans could do. Resistance, hunger tolerance, reflexes. From their point of view, wasn't this just taking a beating without fighting back? Furthermore, after taking a beating, he wouldn't be able to eat and would continue on like this? Thinking of this, Cheng Chumo couldn't help but want to hug Wei Shuyu and cry for a while, but Wei Shuyu slapped him to Du Go's side. Li Qingqian ignored the grumbling Cheng Chumo and said enviously, why don't we switch? Hearing this, Cheng Chumo was instantly energized. He asked excitedly, are you serious? Li Qingqian nodded. I'm serious. Seeing this, Cheng Chumo immediately shook his head like a rattle drum and said, then I won't trade. Li Qingqian was so angry that he wanted to beat someone up. Damn you, are you looking for a beating? Seeing this, Fang Yai hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Now is not the time to talk about this. Let's think about what to do next. I just heard that Fengzi plans to use Li Qingqian's stubborn identity in Chang, and as well as the identity of those hooligans to stir up trouble. Why do I feel that Fengzi seems to want to do something big? Hearing this, only then did everyone's expression change. Every one of them basically had some lackeys in Chang, and these people had nothing to do. They usually did whatever they wanted to do. However, almost every month they had to take money to bribe them. The purpose was to find out some secrets for them. At first, it was to help them find some fun and interesting things such as something good coming out of Yanlai restaurant today, or Dongying people coming to Chang'an City, or barbarians peddling women and revealing clothes and so on. These were all the initial models. After the identities of the 4 great demon kings were confirmed, the stubborn world was also officially confirmed. At this time, the intelligence network of Li Qingqian and the others was basically completed. Li Qingqian knew that it was impossible for Li Shimin not to know about his stubborn identity in Chang'an City. The reason why he didn't say it was actually intentional. He also needed some information, and the identities of the 4 great demon kings seemed to be confusing. At least it could give those who knew them the illusion that the emperor didn't know about it, and the dukes were indulging in it. In this way their careful thoughts would be active. And this was their best person to gather information. However, they didn't know how Zhang Feng knew about it. Could it be that he found clues from the matter of paper and the bone-strengthening powder? But it didn't matter. The most important thing at this time was, when would they be able to have a real fight? They couldn't wait to directly rush into the homes of the 5 families and 7 clans and directly wipe them out. Wouldn't it be better? Why did they have to talk in circles here? Li Qingqian nodded and said, just now at Fengzi's place, I heard Fengzi's conversation with father and the others. It seems that Fengzi is indeed going to do something big. The most important thing is our bomb. Once we find out who is behind it, we will use the bomb I made to kill them. It's that simple.